Chapter 277. In his heart, Zheng Tan had already blacklisted this kid. Since he had bumped into him, Zheng Tan did not intend to let him go so easily. Besides, this kind of night was suitable for beating people up. When Zheng Tan went over, the man was making a call at a public telephone on the side of the road. He was different from when Zheng Tan saw him at Hengwu Plaza. Now the man was dressed differently. He was wearing very ordinary jeans, neither too unconventional nor too fashionable, and an ordinary hoodie. When he was on the phone, his voice was suppressed as if he was talking about something that could not be exposed. While he was talking, his eyes would occasionally pay attention to the surrounding movements. If he noticed someone walking past, he would pause for a moment and wait for the passerby to leave before continuing. Fortunately, there were not many people walking on this side of the road at this time. Occasionally there would be people riding electric scooters, so it did not delay the phone call. Zheng Tan stood on the wall next to the road. The streetlights could not reach him there. In addition, because of the color of Zheng Tan's fur, it was difficult to notice him. Besides, at this time, no one would pay special attention to anything on the wall. After listening carefully for a while, Zheng Tan speculated that the man had reached an agreement with someone and was going to do something. As for what it was, he did not know. He could not hear the voice on the phone, and Zheng Tan did not listen for long before the man hung up. Something was strange. This made Zheng Tan, who had planned to sneak around in the dark, change his mind. He wanted to see what the kid was going to do. After the call ended, the man stood by the public telephone in a daze for a while. He looked at the sports watch on his wrist and then walked toward the intersection. There was some irritation and anxiety in his steps, as if he was worried about something. Zheng Tan followed him on the wall and watched as the man walked out of the intersection and bought 2 cans of beer from a small shop that was about to close. Then he returned to the side of the road and leaned against the wall to drink beer. He stood between the intersection of 2 streetlights, and his figure was a little blurry. Drinking could boost one's courage. For some people it could even have a calming effect. Zheng Tan watched as the man finished the 2 cans of beer and leaned against the wall. He put his hands in his pockets and slammed his back against the wall. He didn't use much strength, but it seemed that this method could relieve the frustration in his heart. The person who was banging his back against the wall was only paying attention to whether there was anyone at the intersection. Perhaps he had something on his mind, but he did not notice that someone was staring at him from the wall not far away. The irritation in his heart made him want to smoke that thing. Unfortunately, because of the thorough police investigation last time, he was a little timid, so he usually did not bring those things with him. He searched his pockets and trousers, only to find half a pack of cigarettes. He took them out, lit them up, and leaned against the wall to smoke one cigarette after another. He smoked a lot and almost choked because he was too focused on his thoughts. He took a few deep breaths and waved his fist as if to encourage himself. Wealth comes from danger. Thinking of the benefits that the other party had promised, the fear in his heart dissipated a little. After this, he would not have to worry about not having a car and a beautiful woman. Zheng Tan saw that the man seemed to have made up his mind. He did not continue to lean against the wall and smoke. He raised his wrist to look at the time and threw the remaining half of the cigarette on the ground. He pulled up his hood and put his hands in his pockets. His back was slightly hunched as he walked towards the intersection. Zheng Tan saw this and knew that the man was going to do something bad, so he quickly followed him. The man was familiar with the place and the intersecting paths. Just as Zheng Tan was trying to figure out what the man was up to, he saw the man pick up his pace and head towards one of the paths. He waited at the junction, and about 3 to 4 minutes later, a slightly rotund man about 1.7 meters tall with a pair of metal-framed glasses and a briefcase walked past him. He looked like a normal office worker. When the young man saw the passerby, he immediately rushed over. A cold light flashed in his hand as he stabbed the man. Zheng Tan, who was standing on the wall, was stunned. He did not expect the man, who was only 2 years older than Jiao Yuan, to have the guts to do such a thing. He originally thought that the young man was only going to rob some unlucky guy and extort money. However, Zheng Tan had underestimated this person and was obviously going to kill him directly. The man who was attacked also reacted. When the man rushed over, he realized that something was wrong and instinctively dodged. However, he still hurt his side of his waist. If it were any other time, he would have a better chance of dodging or even counterattacking successfully. However, he had been drinking for the past few nights and his reaction time had decreased a lot. Just now, the man stabbed him and hit him hard, causing the back of his head to hit the wall. Now he was a little dizzy. He could see that the man was unfamiliar with the technique and was not decisive. He thought that the man was also a little timid and conflicted. However, after the first stab, the hesitation and conflict disappeared. The second stab was obviously more decisive. The man who was attacked saw this and knew that he was in trouble. Just as he thought that he would not be able to get away with it today, the man holding the knife seemed to have been kicked hard and staggered to the side. This moment was enough for the man who was attacked to find a chance to counterattack. Even if he was not in a good state, he was experienced and reacted calmly. After being kicked, the man with the knife realized that there were still people around. In addition, it was obvious that he did not have a chance in the current situation, so he took the knife and ran away. Seeing that the attacker had left, the man who was attacked stood in place and leaned against the wall, vigilantly looking around. He looked around and found that there was no one nearby. The attacker with the knife had fled. Who helped him just now? Although it was easy to make money in this line of work, it was also risky. It was not the first time that he had been attacked, and injuries were common. However, he thought that the order he took this time was relatively simple. He did not expect that the more he investigated, the more he felt that something was wrong. Today he talked to the employer about increasing the price. Now it seemed that the increase was too low. Xianxia hid on the balcony of the second floor of a small building not far away. He watched the man holding the side of his waist with one hand and taking out the phone from his pocket with the other. "Hello Liuba, this is Jianghu. Are you in Chuhua City?" "Yes, I have a problem here. If you are free, can you help me?" The man said. "This guy is Jianghu?" Xianxia was surprised. Wasn't this man helping Yang Per investigate something? How did he get stabbed here? Thinking of Yang Po's face after the last phone call in triumph, Xianxia guessed that something had happened and it had become more difficult. He could tell just by looking at Jianghu. "I can guess who ordered it, but I have to find the guy who did it." Jianghu looked at the hand that was holding the side of his waist with blood and cursed, "Damn it!" After hanging up the phone, Jianghu walked in the direction that the attacker had fled. Seeing so many forks in the road and the fact that he had just been stabbed, he was not in the mood to continue chasing. He quickly left the place. At that time, Jianghu did not see the attacker clearly. Moreover, the street lights were not very bright at that time. The attacker was wearing a hood, and there was a large shadow on his face. He could not see clearly. He only knew that it was a young man, but he could not accurately determine his age. He could only speculate further based on the attacker's general figure and the strong smell of alcohol and cigarettes on his body. However, this was also limited. Although Asians did not look as old as Europeans and Americans, and there was a clear difference between domestic and foreign high school students, that was only the majority of examples. There were also exceptions. The kid that was blacklisted by Xianxia was one of them. Although he was a third-year student, he was now expelled. Even if he looked a little immature, no one would doubt that he was 18 or 19 years old. It was hard for Jianghu to imagine that the attacker was a third-year kid. Xianxia looked at Jianghu, who was still calm. There was probably no fatal injury and the injury was not serious. After Jianghu left, Xianxia continued in the direction that the kid had just left. There were several forks in the road ahead. Jianghu might not know which way the attacker had left, but Xianxia could. Jianghu could not smell the residual smell in the air, but Xianxia could easily. Following the smell, Xianxia stopped at a corner, sniffed carefully and then walked over. There was a garbage dump over there. All kinds of smells mixed together, but Xianxia could still distinguish a trace of fresh blood. Although Jianghu's injury was not serious, he was still bleeding. The knife was stained with blood. When Xianxia went over, he saw a hooded sweater thrown in the garbage dump. In addition to the sweater, Xianxia found the blood-stained knife and the watch that the kid had worn. The watch's strap also had a little blood stain. The kid probably felt that it was an eyesore and directly threw the watch away. Looking around to make sure there was no one around, Xianxia used the sweater to wrap up the knife and watch. Then she hid the sweater in a shed built by an old residential building. It looked like no one had entered it for a long time, so no one would discover it for the time being. Xianxia did not know how long it would take for Jianghu to find out the identity of the attacker. He hid the evidence first. Every day garbage trucks would pass by. If he threw the evidence into the garbage dump, it would be gone in the morning. After rummaging through the garbage dump, Xianxia could still smell the garbage on his body when he returned home. Some unknown liquid from the garbage was stuck to his limbs. He was afraid that if he went home like this, Jiaoma would nag him again. 2 days ago, Jiaoma said that some people's cats like to fight with stray cats over garbage cans. She told Xianxia not to follow suit. When he passed by the community, Xianxia casually took a shower with the outdoor water pipe. The slightly cold water and the night wind made Xianxia shiver. It was better to go back and take a hot shower or else he would catch a cold. Over the next few days, Xianxia went to Triumph several times. He found that Jianghu went there almost every night to drown his sorrows. Sometimes he pulled people with him and sometimes he was alone. Zheng Tan shamelessly squeezed in. Jianghu looked at Zheng Tan and did not say anything. He even treated Zheng Tan as the only suitable listener, cursing Zheng Tan's father and some other people. Once, when Jianghu went to the bathroom, Zheng Tan took advantage of Jianghu's phone to look through his contacts and memorized Jianghu's phone number. People like Jianghu basically did not have a fixed phone number. As the saying went, after one shot, one would change location. They changed their phone number after one shot just like Lu Ba. Their phone was not fixed and their email was the only way to speak. On the other side, Jianghu was talking to Lu Ba, who he had painstakingly pulled over to discuss with him. When his phone vibrated, he took it out and looked at it. The smile on his face faded. "What's wrong?" Lu Ba asked. Jianghu handed the phone over. "Take a look." Chapter 278. Golden Tortoise knew that Lu Ba was not short of money. What he lacked was interest and fun. Now he only accepted jobs that he was interested in. This time he was in trouble and almost lost his life. He asked Lu Ba, who was traveling, to help him. Lu Ba did not agree or disagree. Based on his friendship with Golden Tortoise, he came over to check on Golden Tortoise's injuries. Then he learned about the job that Golden Tortoise accepted. However, after listening to the things involved in this job, Lu Ba lost interest. He had encountered this kind of thing many times. He had encountered the struggles between mistresses, and even the fights between illegitimate children. Once or twice he found it quite interesting. It was like participating in a large-scale TV series about palace fights. He was an important factor in controlling the plot and could even play a turning role. This could arouse Lu Ba's interest and let him experience the excitement and novelty. He could even watch the ugliness of the protagonists and supporting characters in front of others as a bystander. However, this kind of thing became boring after a lot of contact. Therefore, after interacting with Lu Ba for the past few days, Golden Tortoise had seen Lu Ba's obvious rejection. If Lu Ba was interested, how could he be lazy all the time? But now this text message could actually arouse Lu Ba's interest. Thinking about the content of the text message just now, it told Golden Tortoise the location of the evidence left by the person who attacked him with a knife that night. This was indeed the information that Golden Tortoise needed. In the past few days, he had used the excuse of recuperating to refuse some unreasonable requests from his employer. They were private detectives but not suicide detectives. Since they found that the people involved were not so simple, they needed to investigate more and even reorganize their thinking to figure out what could be investigated and what could be avoided. As for the number that sent the text message just now, Golden Tortoise only glanced at it casually. It was a number that he had never seen before. Golden Tortoise just thought that someone who knew him was trying to curry favor with him or that there was an internal conflict in the other party's camp. But obviously things were different from what Golden Tortoise imagined. Judging from Lu Ba's reaction, he knew that there was something wrong with this number. "Do you know it?" Golden Tortoise asked. Lu Ba shook his head. "No, but I heard someone mention it not long ago." Although Lu Ba was not in Chuhua City or even the province at that time, he liked to pay attention to some interesting things, and one of them was about the number 46. He had a feeling that there was a very interesting secret behind this phone number. He had planned to reveal it the next time this number caused some trouble, but he didn't expect to encounter it now. "Do you mind if I use your phone?" Lu Ba took out Jianghu's phone number and shook it. The golden turtle waved its hand and said, "Use it." Lu Ba looked at the number and dialed it. As expected, the other party's phone was turned off. Was it because of caution or was it because of other reasons? Since Lu Ba was also involved in the case of the milk tea powder and the problematic candy, she also paid attention to it. Otherwise, she wouldn't have discovered such an interesting thing. Even the police had paid attention to this number before, but they hadn't found any useful information. After ending the call, Liu Ba returned the phone to Jianghu and said, "I'll go with you to get the things mentioned in the message, and we'll go somewhere by the way." Jianghu had no objection. The reason Zheng Tan had sent the message was because he had heard Jiao Yuan and the others mention the problematic kid. Even though the kid had been keeping a low profile for the past few days, probably because he had done something wrong, and he did not cause any trouble for Jiao Yuan and the others, there was no news that anything had happened to him. Jiao Yuan even heard from a third-year middle school student that the kid was doing well. Knowing that Golden Tortoise had not found the person, to prevent the man from coming after Jiao Yuan and the rest, Zheng Tan immediately gave him the clue after he found Golden Tortoise's number. After sending the message, Zheng Tan turned off his phone and went out for a walk. He didn't believe that Jianghu and the others couldn't find the boy with the clues. Today, Zheng Tan was listening to Air Mao and Celestine's conversation at Air Mao's house. It was the weekend and Air Mao's girlfriend was busy these days. Celestine was going to pick up his wife at his mother-in-law's house at night. As for the time before that, he had stayed at Air Mao's place to chat. F***ck that hairy boy has been wandering around these 2 days, Air Mao said angrily. The hairy boy that Air Mao was talking about was Candy Peanut. Recently, Black Rice had been lying on the balcony of his house, and Candy Peanut would howl whenever he went to the eastern courtyard. Once he even fought with Sahara. After the fight he would howl again. Why are you stopping them? Just let them interact with each other for a while before they continue to give birth, Wei Ling said. Easy for you to say. Air Mao snorted. Anyway, I don't like that hairy boy. Senior brother Wei, you don't understand. You haven't experienced this feeling. What feeling? Tell me. The feeling of marrying off a daughter. Celestine laughed. You're talking as if you've married off a daughter before. Tell me what it's like. It's like, I raised a good cabbage with so much effort, but in the end it was taken away by a stupid pig. Celestine and Zheng Tan were speechless. These words were familiar, but the perspective of the speaker was different. As they were talking, a cat howl came from below. Air Mao squeezed the beer can so hard that it cracked. Here it comes again. Zheng Tan looked at Air Mao and knew that if Candy Peanut continued to tease him, Air Mao would probably run down and beat him up. Jumping off the sofa, Zheng Tan left the family building and patted Candy Peanut, who was squatting on the cement ground in the courtyard. Peanut Candy stopped howling when it saw Zheng Tan. It meowed twice, sounding quite aggrieved. It glanced at Air Mao, who was standing on the balcony on the 3rd floor, waving its mop in protest. Peanut Candy bared its teeth and turned to leave. Zheng Tan felt that the conflict between Air Mao and Candy Peanut was getting bigger and bigger. He just didn't know who would compromise first. Since he came down, Zheng Tan didn't plan to go upstairs. He walked out of the courtyard and planned to walk around. He also wanted to check his phone to see if there were any messages. As he was walking, Zheng Tan suddenly felt a pair of eyes on him. He looked up and saw a person who was dressed like the other students in the school. However, he had a short tail at the back of his head. Zheng Tan could tell who this person was even with a ponytail. Zheng Tan looked at the person. He didn't have a satchel or any big bags. When the person saw Zheng Tan, he even turned his shirt inside out to show Zheng Tan that he didn't bring a squirt gun this time. The person was Lu Ba. Even if this person didn't seem to be carrying any dangerous items, Zheng Tan still looked at him warily. Compared to Zheng Tan's vigilance, Lu Ba chewed the gum in his mouth and blew a bubble when he saw Zheng Tan. Then he smiled at Zheng Tan and said, "Hey, long time no see." Zheng Tan still looked at him warily. Lu Ba raised his hands and signaled to Zheng Tan that he didn't have anything in his hands. Then he walked towards Zheng Tan. When he was 4 or 5 meters away from Zheng Tan, he turned a corner and walked towards a nearby sports field. Zheng Tan thought for a while and followed him. However, he was more than 10 meters away from the guy in front of him. Otherwise, Zheng Tan would be worried. Until now, Zheng Tan still didn't know the guy's real identity. It was better to be vigilant. Lu Ba didn't walk far. He found a place to sit beside the sports field that was closest to the courtyard. He didn't sit on the stands but on the grass next to the sports field. It's so good to be a cat. You can play as you want without the pressure of life, Lu Ba said with emotion. Zheng Tan heard this from a tree not far away and sneered in his heart. Not every cat was free from the pressure of life. Some cats even had psychological problems, but it was hard to tell. However, Zheng Tan didn't care about other things. He was now thinking about why Lu Ba was here. Was he the person that the golden turtle asked for help that day? Just as Zheng Tan was thinking, a student who came to pick up the ball kicked it back to the field. After he sat down, he wiped his sweat and was about to take a rest. When he saw Lu Ba sitting there, he smiled and said, "Hey buddy, which courtyard are you from? Are you interested in playing a few kicks? There aren't many people over there and there are beauties watching." As he said this, he winked at Lu Ba and raised his chin to point in a direction. "That's the queen bee of our courtyard." Zheng Tan looked over there. He was a little far away, but he could still see a few girls standing on the side of the football field. From this distance they were all pretty good, but he didn't know who the queen bee was. The queen bee? Lu Ba was puzzled and there was some meaning in his eyes. The student didn't notice Lu Ba's strange expression, but proudly said, "She's the recognized beauty of our courtyard. Because there's the word Feng in her name, she was later nicknamed the queen bee by everyone. She's beautiful, has good grades, and is popular. She doesn't have to do anything in the courtyard, and naturally there will be people helping her. No matter if they're from our courtyard or from other courtyards, they all have to bow down to our queen bee." Then you must be working hard, Lu Ba said. Zheng Tan felt that there was a hidden meaning in Lu Ba's words. The student was a little careless and he was quite happy when he heard Lu Ba's words. Of course we do all the heavy and tiring work. There are also people who rush to run errands. How can we let our queen bee be tired? Zheng Tan stared at Lu Ba, and he felt that there was something wrong with his expression. Sure enough, after a few seconds, Lu Ba said faintly, "Brother, do you know the problem of the queen bee's nuptial flight, in a social insect like bees?" Zheng Tan was speechless. He had a bad feeling. The boy also shook his head blankly. They didn't study biology, so how would they know about these things? When the weather is good, the new queen bee will fly out and release some pheromones to attract drones. If the drones catch up with the drones, it proves that they are strong enough and the queen bee will have sex with them. After indulging to her heart's content, the drone will probably die of exhaustion. In short, he won't survive. Then the queen bee will continue to fly and have sex with another strong drone again. The drone will end up the same as the previous one, and then it will continue to do the same. Until she feels that there are enough little tadpoles, she will stop. This is the nuptial flight of bees, Lu Ba said slowly. Chapter 279. Zheng Tan had always felt that only academic people would use serious academic words to talk about things that would sound like hooligans to others. However, the listeners would not feel that this person was acting like a hooligan. Instead, they would feel that this person was really knowledgeable. These people were always able to twist a good and normal thing. It was obviously a romantic thing, but when they took it seriously, it was a little scary. Now it seemed that not only those academic people could do this, but other people could also do it, such as Lu Ba. This made Zheng Tan suspect that Lu Ba was like a general who came out to take revenge on society. Didn't she see that the student next to her was dumbfounded? After the student came to his senses, he laughed dryly and said, "Ahem, in fact, I have always thought that bees are a kind of insect full of positive energy. After all, they always appear in front of the public with a positive image." This is true. Some Enlightenment books portray bees as a hardworking insect. However, there are some facts in nature that you have to admit. Lu Ba's face was unfathomable. She shook her finger and continued, "I have always thought that bees are a very magical insect because the drones in their colony don't have a father. Moreover, they are born to find the queen bee. Not to mention those that die after doing that, the drones that don't have a chance to compete can enter any other hive at will. They are strong and handsome, eat a lot and don't work. However, when the seasons change and food is scarce, they will be driven out of the hive by the worker bees. Then their corpses will be exposed in the wilderness and become food for ants and other insects. Therefore, the drones were once given a very interesting name by people." "What name?" The student unconsciously scratched his arm as if he was scratching the goosebumps. Zheng Tan had a bad feeling. "Sad playboy," Lu Ba said. Lu Ba said, "That's why I've been wondering if the word playboy came from the male bees." Zheng Tan was speechless. He could no longer look at the word playboy seriously. Zheng Tan had been called a playboy in the past. You can't be too serious about anything. If you are, you will lose. The student chuckled, then stood up and patted his pants. "Well, they're calling me. I'll go over first." After saying that, he ran away and didn't ask Lu Ba to join them. Looking at the person who ran away, Liu Ba sighed. He ran away just like that. Glancing around, there was no one around. The sound of cheers from the soccer match at the sports field was endless, so no one would notice them. Lu Ba shifted her gaze to Zheng Tan, who was lying on the tree and yawning. Seeing this, Zheng Tan, who was halfway through his yawn, stopped yawning abruptly. "Black charcoal." Lu Ba looked at Zheng Tan and said, "Come on, let's continue our conversation." Zheng Tan was speechless. Lu Ba was probably in a bad mood. When she was in a bad mood, she would chat with others or go out to gain hatred points. What she said just now had traumatized Zheng Tan and the student who had run away. Therefore, Zheng Tan didn't want to continue listening. Ignoring Lu Ba's muttering, Zheng Tan jumped down from the tree and left. He didn't want to continue listening to Lu Ba's revenge. Zheng Tan ran to the woods and turned on his phone to see if there were any new messages. Sure enough, there were several text messages as soon as he turned on his phone. Most of them were from Golden Tortoise. One of them was from an unfamiliar number, and the other two were call notifications. Before he turned on his phone, the unfamiliar number called Zheng Tan twice. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan's phone was turned off. Looking at the number, Zheng Tan found that there were 4 8s in the unfamiliar number. The position of the 4 8s in the 11-digit number was exactly the same as the position of the 4 6s in Zheng Tan's phone number. Zheng Tan first thought of Zhang Dong, and then he thought of the people related to Golden Tortoise. After reading the messages one by one, Zheng Tan knew that Golden Tortoise had found the evidence. As for Golden Tortoise's questions about who Zheng Tan was, Zheng Tan glanced at them and didn't bother to reply. The phone number with 4 8s didn't ask about Zheng Tan's real identity. Instead it asked, "Are you interested in having more partners?" At first glance he thought it was a group chat message. As the saying goes, cast a wide net to catch a big fish. Zheng Tan had done this before. But after thinking about it, Zheng Tan felt that something was wrong. The message said, "More partners," and after sending the message it made 2 calls. If this person wasn't fishing or had a hobby of group sex, then this person knew what Zheng Tan had done with this number before. Should he reply? Zheng Tan didn't press the reply button. After thinking about it, he didn't bother about it. He didn't play games, so he turned off his phone and left. He knew that the police had paid attention to him in the previous case, but if this person wasn't from the police, then who could it be? Generally speaking, people who used 4 8s were mostly rich or successful people, but Zheng Tan's intuition told him that it wasn't that kind of person. A few days later, when Zheng Tan was chatting with Jiao Yuan and the others, he heard that the troublesome milk tea fanboy had offended someone. As for what happened to him, Jiao Yuan and the others had all kinds of guesses. As for the real situation, no one knew. In short, the troublesome kid never appeared again. Since the troublesome kid was dead, he wouldn't be a threat to Jiao Yuan and the others. Zheng Tan was relieved. That day, not long after Zheng Tan installed the rechargeable battery and turned on his phone, he received a call before he had time to read the messages from the Golden Tortoise. Looking at the 4 8s displayed on the screen, Zheng Tan, who was about to press the reject button, stopped. He didn't know if he should answer or hang up. He had too many guesses. He wanted to know the other party's identity through this phone call, but he didn't know how to answer the call. Should he howl? Zheng Tan set the phone to silent mode, so the screen was always on. He didn't answer the first call, but the next call came. It seemed like the other party was persistent. Zheng Tan pressed the answer button after the 5th call. He wanted to know the other party's identity. Even if the other party tracked down the location of the phone call, Zheng Tan wasn't afraid. He was a cat now, and no one would believe that a cat was behind this number. After the call was answered, neither party said anything. They listened carefully to the background noise from the other party. Both parties were in relatively quiet places. Zheng Tan could occasionally hear birds chirping not far away, and there seemed to be the sound of a computer fan on the other party's side. Both parties were silent for about half a minute. Just as Zheng Tan was about to hang up, the other party spoke. "Are you interested in having more partners?" Zheng Tan was familiar with this voice. "My name is Lu Ba. I work in many fields and have a little fame in the circle of private detectives. I think you should be able to find me with your means." He revealed his identity first to show his sincerity. Seeing that Zheng Tan didn't say anything, Lu Ba continued, "I know about your deeds. If you have something fun next time and it's not easy to deal with, you can consider inviting me to join. I guarantee my character and absolute conscience in the industry. If you don't believe me, you can ask the client. The first order is free. If you like it, the price is negotiable. In fact, I don't believe in text messages. I either call or email. Of course, it doesn't matter if you're still used to text messages." After a series of words, Liu Ba finally asked, "May I know how to address you, brother?" The few hairs above Zheng Tan's eyes trembled, and he directly pressed the button to hang up. "Call me your uncle." Liu Ba, who was decisively hung up by Zheng Tan, smiled helplessly when he heard the busy tone on the phone. He said to Jianghu, who had been silent, "The person behind this number must be bad-tempered." Liu Ba didn't know that it was because he had left a bad impression on Zheng Tan after several meetings. Zheng Tan was too lazy to listen to Liu Ba's nonsense. In the past he wanted to ask Liu Ba for advice, but now he gave up. Liu Ba might be in a bad mood and tell Zheng Tan an animal story. That would be a trap. As for email, Zheng Tan didn't have one yet. Even if he had one, Zheng Tan wouldn't send an email to Liu Ba. Although Zheng Tan's computer skills only stopped at some basic network operations, Zheng Tan knew that the network was not a reliable hiding place. Perhaps if he sent an email today, Liu Ba would come to him tomorrow. Ask him for help? Zheng Tan didn't think that he needed Liu Ba's help now. What could he use private detectives like Liu Ba and Jianghu for? Feud between rich and powerful families? A melodramatic family drama? Zheng Tan felt that it was too far away from the Jiao family. After turning off his phone, Zheng Tan simply tidied up the tree hole and put a bag of desiccant and his phone into a bag. Zheng Tan didn't know if this would work, but he just wanted to give it a try. Coming out of the tree hole, Zheng Tan stretched her body. She jumped and ran in the forest for a while to stretch her body. Then she lay down next to a tree not far from the side door and rested. She watched a guard play a frisbee game with his dog. While watching, Xianxia suddenly narrowed his eyes and widened them. He saw a man and a woman coming in from outside the door. The man was Jiao Pa, but the woman was not Jiao Ma. If they were colleagues, it would make sense. However, Xianxia often went to the Institute of Biological Sciences and had never seen this woman. Moreover, there were few female teachers in the Institute of Biological Sciences who dressed up like this. She looked good, at least with good makeup. Looking at the two of them, they seemed to be acquaintances. Xianxia, who had just thought that there wouldn't be a melodramatic family drama, was now nervous. Fortunately, he soon found that Jiao Fox's expression was not very good. He seemed to be alienated and seriously dissatisfied with the woman. Xianxia jumped down from the tree and quietly approached the roadside. He hid under the trees and then pricked up his ears to listen to what the two of them were talking about. As soon as he heard the word pomelo, which was very sensitive to Xianxia suddenly heard a shout when he was staring at the woman. Black charcoal. Xianxia looked at the Jiao Pa and found that the Jiao Pa was looking at him. Professor Jiao was very dissatisfied with the person next to him and didn't want to look at him. He would rather look at the tree next to him. Unexpectedly, he found his cat hiding behind the tree like a thief. It was fine if it was hiding, but it didn't even know how to hide its tail. Chapter 280. Xianxia's impression of little Pomelo's mother remained the same when he first came here. At that time, Xianxia felt that little Pomelo's parents were the same type of selfish people as his own parents. Perhaps it was because little Pomelo had spent so much time in the Jiao family that Xianxia almost forgot that little Pomelo had a mother. It was just that this mother rarely called little Pomelo throughout the year. Even when he went to the Jiao Ma's hometown during the summer holidays, Old Master Gu and Old Madame Gu did not mention little Pomelo's mother much. It was obvious how dissatisfied they were with little Pomelo's mother. However, no matter how dissatisfied they were with her, no matter how wrong they thought she was, and no matter how much they disliked her, she was still little Pomelo's biological mother. She had not come to see her daughter for 3 years, and she had not said anything about bringing little Pomelo over to play with her. Why was this woman here now? Xianxia was in a bad mood. He had already started to imagine all sorts of possibilities. If this woman wanted to bring little Pomelo abroad to spend the rest of her life with her, the Jiao family had no right to stop her. The more he thought about it, the more irritated he became. Xianxia followed beside the Jiao Pa and listened to their conversation patiently. Although the atmosphere was not very good, it could not be awkward all the time. If it was awkward, Xianxia would not be able to get any information. As he listened, Xianxia realized that Pomelo had a half-sister. In other words, not long after this mother sent little Pomelo back to China, she met her second love abroad and had a little daughter now. She was already a mixed-race child who was more than a year old. What made Xianxia angry was not that Pomelo's mother had left Pomelo to live her own life in China. It was that when this woman talked about her daughter, from her expression to her tone, Xianxia was so angry that he wanted to grind his claws. Xianxia was a little worried. To put it more accurately, when the cinnabar mole on Pomelo's mother's chest turned into a glaring chili sauce, should she wipe it off or not? After talking about her daughter with sparkling eyes, she realized that it was not a good topic to talk about. It was obvious from the Jiao Pa's rare dark expression. Pomelo's mother coughed awkwardly and changed the topic. Pomelo is in 4th grade this year, right? How are her grades? Can she keep up? I'm not optimistic about the education system in China, said Pomelo's mother. Father Jiao glanced at her indifferently. Pomelo was already in her 2nd year when she was sent back to China. Little Pomelo was sent back to China in 2003, and it was already the second half of 2006. Pomelo's mother's face stiffened. She counted the years and said, "So, he's already in the 5th grade. That's fast." The Jiao Pa glanced at her again. She'll be in 6th grade in September this year. She'll be in junior high next year. I remember she told you when she skipped grades. Pomelo's mother was speechless. All right, there was an awkward silence again. The Jiao Pa was usually tactful with his words. He rarely said such blunt words. Hearing the Jiao Pa's tone, Xianxia knew that he was not very calm at the moment. Xianxia looked at Pomelo's mother's expression and knew that she did not know what to say. She could not even laugh dryly. No matter what, she felt guilty when talking about her eldest daughter. Pomelo's mother had planned to leave after taking a look. She had come because she had a business matter to discuss. It just so happened that a professor she often worked with had come to Tsinghua University's medical school to give a report. After finding out about the relationship between Pomelo's mother and the Jiao Pa, he had contacted the Jiao Pa through Pomelo's mother. He wanted to go to the Institute of Biological Sciences to observe the red nest mouse. It would be best if he could get some samples or something. After all, the Jiaopa was the discoverer of the red nest mouse and had some say in it. The mouse was a model organism in mammalian embryology and developmental biology. Whether it was at the Institute of Biological Sciences or the medical school, the relevant research could not be done without mice. The red nest mouse was even more special. With the publication of a series of highly influential articles at Tsinghua University, it had caused quite a stir in the international field. As long as there was an opportunity, it had to be seized. The professor obviously knew how to do this. In this way, Pomelo's mother would inevitably have to face the Jiaopa directly. She could not avoid it even if she wanted to. She knew that she would be scolded, but she had to accept it. "Since you're here, why don't you come over and have a seat? Your sister found out that you're back in China yesterday. She said that she hasn't seen you in a long time. You two sisters should talk. Also, don't you want to see Pomelo?" "Alright, then I'll have to bother you." Pomelo's mother knew that she could not avoid it this time, so she could only bite the bullet. Jiaoma came back very quickly today. She had bought a lot of groceries. Even though she felt that her sister was not right in many ways, she was still her biological sister. They had not seen each other for 3 years. It was rare for her to come over, so she had to treat her well. Jiao Yuan had obviously received the news in advance. He was not very enthusiastic about Pomelo's mother. After greeting her, he ran back to his room to do his homework. Zheng Tan was in the room watching little Pomelo blindly draw on a piece of draft paper with a pen. After a few strokes, she started to stare blankly at her nails. Obviously, she was not in the mood to do her homework. Zheng Tan was lying next to her. Just as he was about to give her a hug to comfort her, he heard Jiao Yuan next door yell, "Black charcoal! Come over quickly. There's a big rat." Zheng Tan was speechless. How could he have the face to use such an excuse? In the living room, the Jiaopa was chatting with Pomelo's mother. He glanced at Zheng Tan, who had jumped out of little Pomelo's room through the window and then jumped into Jiao Yuan's room through the window. He did not say anything. "Your cat is really special," Pomelo's mother said when she heard the sound of someone jumping out the window. Jiaopa did not deny it. "Yes, this cat has a lot of energy and is different from the rest." Pomelo's mother was speechless. Wasn't it just a mongrel? Different from the rest? There was an awkward silence again. Zheng Tan, who had jumped into Jiao Yuan's room, saw Jiao Yuan anxiously walking around the bed. "Black charcoal, do you think Pomelo's mother is here to take Pomelo back? What if Pomelo really goes with her? I heard that her mother is developing her career overseas. Her mother doesn't care about her, and if she gets bullied, no one will protect her. I don't know what Pomelo is thinking. No, I have to do some work with Pomelo." Jiao Yuan immediately sat down and flipped open a blank workbook. He rolled up his sleeves and picked up a pen, writing something on the paper. This was much faster than when he was writing an essay. Zheng Tan jumped onto the desk to take a look. There were 9 big words on the first line. Details of the 18 crimes committed overseas. Below was a list of all the bad things that were done overseas. Between the lines, Jiao Yuan also did not want little Pomelo to leave. At the end, he even used a red pen to write a word that was obviously a size larger than usual. Think carefully and act with caution. It was rare that Zheng Tan did not complain that the paper was dirty. He held the folded paper in his mouth and flipped out. Then, he flipped back to little Pomelo's room and passed the paper to her. After reading through the words on the paper, the blank look on little Pomelo's face lessened. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she replied, "Okay." Jiaopa watched Zheng Tan flip back and forth between the 2 rooms. Although he made a lot of noise when he flipped through the window, he did not say anything and did not stop him. Although the food was delicious, no one was in the mood to eat. The atmosphere at the dining table was strange. Only Jiao Ma was slightly more talkative. The 2 sisters stood together. At first glance, no one would immediately think that they were sisters. Perhaps it was because of their temperament and attire. However, if one looked closely, they did look somewhat similar. Pomelo's mother did not have much confidence in front of Jiao Ma. Although she was better than Jiao Ma in terms of her career, she usually put on airs in front of others. Even if she put on airs in front of others, it was stiff and deliberate. As for Zheng Tan, who usually sat on a chair and ate at the edge of the table, he was now sitting on a small stool at the side. He looked at the bowl of food and could not eat. Perhaps her maternal instincts were aroused after seeing little Pomelo. Pomelo's mother said that she would be staying in Tsinghua City for a few more days. Since the weekend was the day after tomorrow, she wanted to take little Pomelo out to have some fun. This made Zheng Tan even more vigilant. If they were to interact with each other, they would probably be able to trick little Pomelo into leaving. Pomelo's mother already had a daughter. If Pomelo went over now, she would definitely be unhappy. Moreover, there was a stepfather that she had never met. However, Jiaopa and Jiaoma did not mention this in front of little Pomelo. They were probably afraid that little Pomelo would overthink. It's good to let the mother and daughter talk. Pomelo matures early. She's not an insensible child, Jiaopa said that night. Jiaoma was a little worried. What if Pomelo chooses to go with them? I don't think that's a good idea. This child might not be happy if she goes. Why don't I accompany them this Saturday? After thinking about it, Jiaoma sighed and said, forget it. Since she said that she wants to spend some time alone with Pomelo, she doesn't want me to interfere. Sigh, if only someone was there to remind little Pomelo. Jiaoma knew her sister quite well. She could speak beautifully today, but tomorrow she could make you want to bang your head against the wall. It's not like there's no other way, Jiaopa said. What way? Black charcoal. Indeed, Pomelo's mother did say that she wanted to spend some time alone with Pomelo. However, this alone definitely referred to the person and did not include Jing Tan. Jing Tan was also worried about letting little Pomelo face her mother alone. What if little Pomelo was set up? Pomelo's mother was willing to part with her, but Jing Tan was not. Saturday. Little Pomelo carried her backpack downstairs. Jiaopa drove her to the agreed place. The place was a restaurant. It was a little classy, but for a child it was a little restrictive and could not be relaxed. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he watched little Pomelo enter the restaurant. After seeing her mother sit down, Jiaopa drove away. Little Pomelo's little face was stern. This made the already tense atmosphere between mother and daughter even more stiff. Without Jiaopa and Jiaoma's supervision, even if she felt a little guilty, Pomelo's mother's words and actions were a little smoother. She ordered a glass of juice and some desserts for Pomelo. She drank her coffee and smiled at the bag that her daughter was carefully holding in her arms. What's that bulging bag? Is it a present for mommy? Pomelo's mother tried to make her smile more amiable. Little Pomelo looked at her mother and bit her lip. Then she took out a small gift box from her jacket pocket and handed it to her mother. Pomelo's mother looked at the bulging bag, then looked at the gift box in little Pomelo's hand. She took it and opened it. It was a small doll. The material was not very new, and the workmanship was very rough compared to the goods in the shops. Did Pomelo make it herself? Pomelo's mother asked with a smile. Little Pomelo lowered her head slightly and nodded. It's very pretty. Mommy likes it a lot. Jing Tan sneered in his heart. Was she for real? Her tone sounded too deliberate. The doll was sewn by little Pomelo using the materials and daily necessities she saved from labor skills classes. The doll's appearance was based on a photo of Pomelo's mother. Jing Tan did not know if it was because he was too angry or something else, but he felt a little suffocated in the bag. There was not enough air coming in through the air vent of the bag. Jing Tan pulled open the zipper of the backpack seat and stuck his head out to take a deep breath. Chapter 281. When Pomelo's mother came back to her senses, she quickly looked around. When she saw that no one had noticed them, she looked at little Pomelo with a reproachful look. You shouldn't have brought your cat here. This isn't a pet restaurant. Little Pomelo pursed her lips and raised her head to look at her mother. But there's no sign saying that pets aren't allowed in here. That's still not okay. It's not right to bring a pet into a restaurant. As she spoke, Pomelo's mother noticed that the black cat was looking at her with a strange expression. Although she didn't quite understand what that expression meant, she felt that something was amiss. She didn't feel comfortable. Seeing that little Pomelo's expression wasn't too good either, Pomelo's mother thought that it was rare for them to be alone together. She didn't blame her anymore. Instead she said, use this to block it. It's not good to be seen. As she spoke, she handed over a shopping bag with a brand logo and a pink bow. On it was the logo of a children's clothing brand. Mommy bought you a present. See if you like it. When you go out wearing it, you'll be the envy of all the children in the courtyard. Jing Tan stretched his neck to take a look while little Pomelo was taking the gift. The tag said that it cost 1,200 yuan, and it was a dress. If Pomelo's mother hadn't said the last sentence, Jing Tan wouldn't have despised her so much. However, after she said the last sentence, Jing Tan felt that something was amiss. Did this person really think that the people living in the courtyard were all poor people? And they were envious? Most families wouldn't even care about such a small amount of money, especially those old professors. For example, Old Man Lan, who lived downstairs, definitely had more than 10 million yuan in their hands. It was just that they didn't show it on normal days. They even went to the cafeteria early in the morning to eat buns and porridge. Later on, little Pomelo's mother asked her about the clothes she usually wore. Judging from her reaction, it seemed like she felt that the Jiao family wasn't that well-to-do, so she didn't buy good clothes for little Pomelo. As for the standard of good clothes, that was a difference of opinion. Most of the children in the villa complex didn't usually wear expensive branded clothes. After all, they grew up too quickly, so there was no need to buy expensive clothes. Whether it was the Jiao family or the other families in the villa complex, they were relatively well off. However, no one had seen their children wear clothes that cost hundreds or thousands of yuan, unless it was a birthday party or some other important occasion. Usually, the Jiao yuan and the others were more mischievous. The clothes they wore were at most 100 yuan, so they didn't care too much if they were torn. Moreover, it was already October and it would be November soon. The weather would turn cold, so who would be bored enough to wear a skirt? Moreover, she was still a child. If she were to wear it out now, she wouldn't be envied. Instead, she would be ridiculed. After asking a few more questions, Pomelo's mother could tell that little Pomelo didn't want to continue the topic. She looked at the black cat that was staring at her and frowned. Then she said to little Pomelo, "Mommy has seen many people raise cats overseas. My neighbor over there has a very beautiful ragdoll cat. Mommy even took a picture of it before. I'll show it to you." Suddenly, she remembered that she didn't save a picture of the cat on her phone. Pomelo's mother took out her phone and put it back into her bag. "Ahem, I saved the picture on my computer. I didn't bring it with me. Mommy will show it to you when I have the chance. It's much prettier than this black cat, and it's also obedient." Zheng Tan's expression became even more unpleasant. Was this person despising him for being ugly and bad-tempered? Black charcoal is also very obedient. Little Pomelo adjusted her bag and defended herself. Pomelo's mother obviously didn't believe her. She had seen the cat climb through the window yesterday and knew that it was definitely not a well-behaved cat. After a series of meaningless conversations, Zheng Tan felt drowsy. The conversation between the mother and daughter was really stiff and awkward. There was no common topic, and the more they talked, the more Zheng Tan felt that there wasn't much strong emotion between them. "Pomelo, do you want to live in a big house?" Pomelo's mother asked. "Mommy bought a big house overseas. It has a big yard. You can raise flowers and animals that you like. When the time comes, you'll have a little sister to play with you." After a pause, Pomelo's mother continued, "Pomelo, are you happy to have a little sister? It's just that your little sister is still very young." Zheng Tan's eyes narrowed. Did this person know what she was talking about? Was she still happy? It would be strange if she was happy. Having a little sister meant having a stepfather. She didn't even know what his character was like. Was little Pomelo sure that he wouldn't dislike her if she went back home for no reason? Little Pomelo stopped stirring the cream. From Zheng Tan's angle, he could only see her tightly pursed lips. Zheng Tan wasn't afraid of being discovered. Half of his body came out of the backpack and rubbed against little Pomelo. He thought about the first half of Pomelo's mother's words. Was she complaining that the Jiao family's house was too small? Little Pomelo had lived overseas for a period of time before, so it wasn't like she didn't remember. Even the house they lived in overseas was much bigger than the Jiao family. If little Pomelo really cared about this, she wouldn't have shook her head when she was asked if she wanted to live in a villa. It was obvious that this mother didn't even know what her daughter wanted. "I'm not going back," little Pomelo said softly as she pushed Zheng Tan back into the backpack. "What?" Pomelo's mother asked again. She didn't hear clearly just now. "I'm not going back," little Pomelo said in a firm tone as she raised her head. The other party was silent for a few seconds. "Mommy respects your decision." Zheng Tan wasn't sure if he had heard wrongly, but he felt that there was a sense of relief in her tone. Zheng Tan sat up and looked at the woman sitting across from him. He didn't see much sadness or regret in her eyes. Instead, when she smiled at little Pomelo, her smile was a little wider and not as stiff as before. After they left the restaurant, Pomelo's mother planned to take little Pomelo for a walk. She asked little Pomelo where she wanted to go. After telling her a few places, little Pomelo shook her head. Pomelo's mother then took her to a nearby shopping mall to buy things for little Pomelo. Most of the items in the shopping mall were high-end goods, so those who didn't have much money on hand stayed away. The shopping mall wasn't too far from the restaurant, so the mother and daughter walked there directly. Before they reached the shopping mall, Zheng Tan walked beside them. In order to follow them out today, Zheng Tan also wore the cat tag. It was convenient and reduced the dislike of passers-by. After all, not everyone could tolerate an unidentified cat running around on the streets. Pomelo's mother was chatting casually when a familiar car with 4 circles approached from the side. It drove to the parking lot and slowly stopped. Black charcoal. Pomelo. Jing Tan heard the voice and looked over. It was Fang Xiaokong, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. It was rare for this busy man to have time to drive out by himself. He was probably chatting with an old friend. Fang Xiaokong got out of the car and strode over. He was wearing sunglasses, but the smile on his face couldn't be hidden. He didn't expect to meet Jing Tan and little Pomelo here. Just like before, Fang Xiaokong used his hands to hold little Pomelo's armpits and carried little Pomelo as if he was holding a child. Little Pomelo's solemn face was now filled with a smile. Uncle Fang. Pomelo, have you lost weight recently? Fang Xiaokong weighed little Pomelo before putting her down. Fang Xiaokong usually interacted with his daughter like this, so he had developed this habit. It didn't matter if it was when she was a little girl or now that she was a little girl who was over 10 years old. A few days ago, Ming asked you about her experience. She said she wanted to exchange experiences with you, Fang Xiaokong said. As for the experience, it was definitely the experience of raising a cat. Because of Jing Tan, Fang Ming asked her father for little Pomelo's number on the chat app. After adding her as a friend, the two of them exchanged their experiences of raising a cat from time to time. This is... Pomelo's mother interrupted. If she hadn't seen the car, she would have already scolded him. She didn't know Fang Xiaokong, but seeing that Fang Xiaokong and her daughter seemed to be very familiar with each other, and he was obviously someone of a certain status. This is Uncle Fang. Little Pomelo introduced him, then pointed at her mother to Fang Xiaokong. This is my mommy. Hello, Pomelo's mother introduced herself. While she said that she was little Pomelo's mother, she also mentioned some of her other identities and titles. From the company name to her position, there were several English words in one sentence. Jing Tan didn't know how to react for a moment. Fang Xiaokong said, "Oh," and said, "A Fortune 500 company in the world. Nice to meet you." Pomelo's mother took out a beautifully made business card from her bag and handed it over. Fang Xiaokong took it, then took out an equally beautiful business card from his pocket and handed it over. This business card wasn't Fang Xiaokong's personal business card. The phone number on it was definitely one of Fang Xiaokong's assistants or secretaries. Giving out this business card proved that Fang Xiaokong didn't care much about Pomelo's mother. Fang Xiaokong's business card was a much more low-key business card, which was in Jing Tan's drawer. The number on it was Fang Xiaokong's personal number. Looking at the business card in her hand, Pomelo's mother's pupils shrank. She was much more polite to Fang Xiaokong now. Fang Xiaokong had something else to do, so he quickly left. Pomelo, how do you know this? Uncle Fang? Pomelo's mother asked. He's Black Charcoal's friend. Pomelo's mother obviously didn't believe her. She guessed that it was because of Professor Jiao. After shopping at the mall, Pomelo's mother called for a taxi and went back to Jiao family's place. In the car, Pomelo's mother asked little Pomelo if she wanted to go back with them. Little Pomelo kept shaking her head. Then Mommy won't force you. Mommy gave Auntie and the others some money to take care of you. So, if you need anything or want anything, just let Auntie know. Okay, I know. If you're on vacation, you can call Mommy. Mommy will bring you over to play. Jing Tan wasn't happy to hear that. If I'm on vacation, I can't call? Jing Tan stood up and rubbed little Pomelo's chin. Don't be sad, I don't care. The same thing might not be important to some people, but to others, it was a treasure. Pomelo's mother didn't care much about little Pomelo, but Jing Tan cared, and so did the Jiao family. When they returned to school, they bumped into Old Man Lon, who had just come back from outside. The old man even grabbed a bunch of hawthorns for little Pomelo. It was a gift from someone else. On the lawn of the eastern courtyard, Sheriff was lying on his side at the edge of a flower bed that was slightly higher than the lawn. He reached out his paw to tease Huang, who was lying on the lawn and rubbing his back. After a while, the two of them started to fight. Depang was lying on his stomach not far away from them. His eyes were half closed as if he was trying to get sleepy. On the gravel road beside the lawn, a person was making a phone call. He jokingly scolded the person on the phone, Bullsh *T. 10 meters away, Niu Zhuang was being led out for a walk. It was pulling on the rope to lead its owner forward. When it heard the person's shout, its ears twitched and its small triangular eyes flashed fiercely. The face of the person on the phone twitched and he quickly ran away. Mom, Pomelo and Black Charcoal are back. Jiao Yuan, who was watching from the balcony on the 5th floor, shouted into the house. Chapter 282. Jing Tan had always felt that the two biggest frustrations in life were being stepped on by someone trying to show off, and being shown off by someone trying to show off. Not long ago he had looked down on Yang Per at victorious return. Who would have thought that today, there would be someone even more deserving of contempt than Yangpa. After dinner, Pomelo's mother and Jiaoma went out for a walk and chat in the courtyard. Zheng Tan followed them closely in order to find out more about the enemy. Most of the time, Pomelo's mother was talking about the fruits of her hard work abroad over the past few years. Now that she was a department manager, she had a lot of money on her hands. When she spoke, she was showing off. She also urged Mama Jiao to quickly buy a bigger house, complaining that the houses in the courtyard were old and small. She even compared them to the new house she bought abroad. Jiaoma obviously knew what kind of person her sister was, but she didn't have the energy to get angry. Not long after, they ran into the old lady who was taking Depang out for a walk. The old lady was stepping on the exercise equipment in the courtyard. Depang was squatting on a horizontal bar next to her. The horizontal bar was only 5 to 6 centimeters in diameter. It was unknown how the fat cat jumped on it and squatted there. At first glance, that round lump looked out of place, but this guy was squatting there steadily. Zheng Tan could only sigh in admiration. As expected of a cat that had undergone military training, it was as steady as squatting instant noodles. "Yo, black charcoal teacher Gu. You're out for a walk." The old lady smiled and greeted Zheng Tan and Jiaoma. Jiaoma introduced her sister to the old lady and chatted for a while before leaving. After walking for a while, Pomelo's mother sneered at Depang, saying that such a fat cat would definitely get XXX or something. Knowing that the old lady lived alone, she said, "Is it just the old lady by herself? Don't you have a nanny?" "Don't talk nonsense. Depang's health is good. He's even sent to the pet center regularly for checkups. The old lady treats him like a treasure." As for the old lady, her son did want to hire a nanny and even said that he would bring the old lady over, but the old lady never agreed. She said that she was used to the environment and atmosphere here. Everyone in the courtyard has been neighbors for decades, so it's not lonely. She said that she will consider the future when her legs are no longer able to move. People become stubborn when they get old. Her son is the same. Pomelo's mother disagreed. Jiaoma was afraid that her younger sister would say something inappropriate, so she quickly stopped her. The identity of Depang's cat father was a little more sensitive, and Depang's grandmother did not want to make it public. Therefore, Jiaoma only whispered into her sister's ear and briefly explained the identity of Depang's cat father. After that, Pomelo's mother fell silent. She stopped talking about Depang and his grandmother. With their wealth, if they really wanted to hire a nanny, they would be willing to hire 8 or 10 nannies. After walking for less than 2 minutes, they bumped into Sahara again. It was happily rubbing itself against the grass and wagging its tongue. It did not care about its image at all. Of course, it did not care about its image in the courtyard. "This dog is too crazy. It looks like it's a crossbreed, right? Are we going to raise a purebred dog in the future or a gentler one?" Jiaoma looked over and smiled. "Oh, you're talking about Sahara? I heard that it's a tri-breed dog from Academician Ruan's family. Although it's usually very playful, it has never hurt the children in the courtyard. Academician Ruan treasures it." She hit the bullseye. Pomelo's mother fell silent again. After running around in the business world for a long time, she would often think more from the perspective of benefits. It was common to flatter the powerful and trample on the weak. Similarly, when scolding a dog, one had to consider the identity and temper of the dog's owner. One had to know what to say and what not to say. It was said that the more arrogant a person was, the harder it was to control their temper. Pomelo's mother always felt that the more arrogant a person was, the harder it was to control their temper. Therefore, she had to be careful with her words and actions. When dealing with those arrogant people, even if she talked behind their backs, she had to find a place where there was no one around. Although she did not know Academician Ruan, once she heard the title of Academician, she immediately swallowed her words. Zheng Tan found it funny. Before this afternoon, this person had thought that the courtyard was full of poor people, but now she realized that there was a discrepancy. When he passed by the long bench area, Zheng Tan saw that the old men in the courtyard had gathered together again and were gossiping. When night fell, the old men in the courtyard would gather together and start bragging. They would criticize a certain school's leader, evaluate a certain new policy, criticize certain people who had a negative impact on society but did not dare to speak carelessly. Some famous experts and professors who appeared frequently on television would be discussed as if they were talking about dolls. They were not afraid of being overheard at all. Even if those people were standing in front of them, they would still say the same thing. When Zheng Tan looked over, Old Man Lan was bragging to someone about a pot of orchids that had been bought today. After hearing a few words, Pomelo's mother did not think much of it. Was a pot of orchids worth bragging about? How much can orchids sell for? Jiaoma thought for a moment and said, I'm not sure about the pot that Professor Lan was talking about today, but last year Professor Lan sold 2 pots of orchids for more than 600,000 yuan. There are quite a lot of people looking for Professor Lan. This year orchids are very popular. There are even more people looking for Professor Lan. Buyers are blocking people in the courtyard just to buy Professor Lan's pot of orchids. Based on this, the price today is probably higher than last year. Pomelo's mother's face was full of disbelief. Zheng Tan knew that 2 days ago, Old Man Lan had been blocked by people at the small flower bed. They wanted to buy 3 orchids called Rabbit for 1 million yuan, but Old Man Lan did not agree. Old Man Lan was not short of money. At his age he cared about his reputation. From time to time he would show off to some old friends about the orchids that he had cultivated or discovered outside. As for the few 100,000 yuan, Old Man Lan really did not care about it. At his level he had both fame and fortune. Now he did things according to his desires. Although he could not say something like, money is just a number, it was not far off. He agreed to sell the orchids only because Old Man Lan was annoyed with those people who always came to bother him. Moreover, he kept some of the orchids so even if he sold them he would still have 1 or 2 seedlings in his hands. Old Man Lan was talking to people about the orchids in the market now. Although it looked like a prosperous future, many people had started to rush into it. Moreover, someone said, take out a pot of orchids in the morning and drive a BMW back in the afternoon. This made the orchids even more popular. However, it was estimated that this popularity would only last for about a year. It would cool down later. If one was too impulsive they might hit their head and bleed. Jing Tan knew about this kind of thing. He used to have a friend who spent more than 500,000 yuan to buy an orchid when the price of orchids was hot. 5 years later, not many people would buy an orchid for 100 yuan. Seeing Jing Tan, Old Man Lan laughed. He was in a good mood today so he teased Jing Tan again. He pointed in Jing Tan's direction and said to his old friends, that little guy went to my flower bed and nibbled on an orchid. Oh, it made my heart ache. Bullshit. It was obviously the sheriff who nibbled on it. Jing Tan was angry. Old Man Lan had purposely put this crime on his head. Moreover, that pot of orchids was only a relatively ordinary plain heart orchid. Those more precious orchids were all well protected. How could they give the sheriff a chance to take a bite? Jianghu saw that the old professors were smiling kindly. Some of them even gave Jing Tan a thumbs up and said, good job. She knew that they were just joking. They weren't really angry. She smiled and greeted the old professors before leaving. After walking some distance, there was no one around them for more than 20 meters. Jianghu whispered to the people beside her, don't be fooled by the ordinary old people here. Although many of them don't look special, many of them are bosses of big companies and people in the political system who come to consult them. Some of them can influence certain policies. Pomelo's mother was silent for a while. She smiled and said, it's good that Pomelo grew up in such an environment. She had seen little Pomelo greet some of the old people yesterday. They were very familiar with each other. Jing Tan curled his lips in his heart. This person changed so quickly. Because of the previous few examples, Pomelo's mother didn't say anything to mock Ah Huang, who was even more stupid than Ah Huang, who could even roll down the stairs while walking. She was afraid that if she opened her mouth to speak, it would be even more embarrassing. It wasn't a weekend when Pomelo's mother flew back to the other side of the ocean. She didn't let Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma send her off. She left with some people from the company. She only made a phone call before boarding the plane and said, I'll leave Pomelo in your care. Jiao Pa replied, I've always treated her like a daughter. Since Pomelo's mother had left the country and Pomelo was still staying, Jing Tan felt a lot more at ease. He even felt like he was floating when he walked. He ran back to the forest at the edge of the neighborhood and turned on his phone. Since he was in a good mood, he wanted to check the game records again. However, when he turned on his phone, he saw dozens of messages and nearly 3 digits of missed calls. His phone kept flashing and the text messages flew in for a long time. Jing Tan was stunned. *CK. Was he being poisoned? However, when he stopped and looked at it again, he realized that he wasn't. There were dozens of messages from the same phone number. Most of the missed calls were from the same number as well. *CK Lu Ba, that idiot actually did such a wicked thing. Was he going to explode the phone number? Lu Ba had to admit that she was really obsessed with this number. Since she couldn't reason with him or recommend herself, and she was very interested in the identity of the person behind this mysterious number, Lu Ba decided to change her tactics after thinking for 2 days. She was shameless, and unreasonable enough. Lu Ba did not know whether the person behind this account was a man or a woman, old or young, but everyone had a limit of patience. Now, Lu Ba wanted to challenge the other party's patience limit. Even if the other party turned off their phone more than they turned it on, Lu Ba still had time. Jianghu's order was almost finished. Now that she had a lot of free time, she rejected some of the orders that she wasn't interested in. She specifically harassed this number. As soon as the phone was turned on, she would immediately call. "Master, I really want to be friends with you. Let's get to know each other. You can't even bear to send me a text message? Well, let's not use text messages. Let's change to another method. How about we talk? Just a few sentences is fine. One sentence is enough. Master, just say one sentence and I won't disturb you." Xianxia was scrolling through the messages and deleting them one by one. Immediately a call came in. Xianxia pressed the reject button. In less than 2 seconds another call came in. He pressed the reject button again and again. Even if Xianxia wanted to see if there was a blacklist function in the settings, it was inconvenient for him to do so. He was bombarded with phone calls and text messages. Finally, Xianxia pressed the answer button. This time Lu Ba didn't say anything. She listened to the other side of the phone and waited for the other party to scold him. There was a slight rustling sound from the other side of the phone. After that, there was a ticking sound. Lu Ba frowned and pushed away Jianghu, who wanted to eavesdrop. She took the pen and paper on the table and wrote a few letters according to the sound on the phone. Jianghu went over to take a look. On the white paper, a few letters were clearly written with a black pen. Chapter 283. When Lu Ba heard the beeping sound coming from the other end of the phone, he intended to use the same method to reply. However, before he could knock on the phone, the other side had hung up. Hearing the beeping sound from the phone, Lu Ba chuckled and said to Jianghu, "This mysterious expert is quite capable. He even knows this." In fact, Xianxia had only thought of using this method on a whim. After all, he couldn't speak now. Before this, no matter if it was Teacher Bai or the person who lost the dog, if Xianxia used this method, they would only think that Xianxia was playing with them. There was a higher possibility that they wouldn't understand. However, Lu Ba was a person with a wide range of expertise and knowledge. Therefore, Xianxia decided to give it a try. When he knocked on the metal piece he picked up, Lu Ba didn't interrupt him. This meant that Lu Ba might have understood him. Since Lu Ba understood him, Xianxia didn't intend to say anything more. He hung up the phone, turned it off and left. He decided not to turn it on for the next few days. If Lu Ba wanted to continue harassing him, he would just let him be. Out of sight, out of mind. It wasn't easy for him to feel better because of Pomelo's mother's departure. Xianxia didn't intend to be depressed because of Lu Ba, a psychopath. After wandering around, Xianxia threw a frisbee at the guard at the side door to tease the German shepherd. Then he walked back. He didn't go straight back to the courtyard. Instead, he walked along the winding road. When he walked to Old Man Land's small flower garden, Xianxia jumped onto the wall and looked inside. He immediately saw the sheriff squatting beside a pot of orchids and eating them attentively. At first, Xianxia was worried that the sheriff would get into trouble if he ate too many orchids. However, he only saw the sheriff spit out some furry balls and defecate in a large flower pot in the small flower garden. The rest of the time the sheriff was alive and kicking. Xianxia didn't care about him. A few days ago, there were 3 blooming flowers in the pot of orchids. Now none of them were left. Some of the green leaves around the pot were gnawed as well. There were many bite marks on them. When Old Man Lan said that he ate the flowers in front of his old friends, Xianxia was taking the blame for him. Old Man Lan had always been persistent in slandering Xianxia. It wasn't that the sheriff hadn't planted anything in his house before. He had even planted cat grass in a flower pot. However, the sheriff didn't give him any face. Every time he would take a few bites and lose interest. Xianxia heard the sheriff's owner complain a few times when he was chatting with the Jiaoma. He didn't know if it was the problem of the cat grass or the sheriff himself. However, Xianxia felt that it was most likely the latter. Xianxia used to think that the sheriff had a dog-like heart. He barked like a dog, was aggressive, and fought with the little Pekingese and Chihuahuas in the courtyard. Other than Yo Zhuangzhuang, all the other dogs in the courtyard had a thing with the sheriff. Now Xianxia would always catch the sheriff chewing on flowers. The sheriff chewed on orchid leaves like a rabbit. Someone once said that if there was any animal in the world that thought flowers were beautiful and fragrant and wanted to eat them up, it would be cats. In fact, many cats were nymphomaniacs, such as the sheriff. Last week, Xianxia heard from the Jiaoma that one of her colleagues had a cat. One day, her colleague's husband gave her a bouquet of flowers on their wedding anniversary. Her colleague's cat ran over and buried half of its head in the bouquet to lick. No one could stop it. People who didn't have cats wouldn't pay attention to their cat's obsession with flowers, and cat owners wouldn't necessarily pay attention to whether their cats liked to eat flowers or not. Cats were carnivores, there was no doubt about it. However, sometimes they could be seen chewing on grass when they were out walking. People attributed this to the cat's self-preservation, vomiting. Except for Jiangtan and some other special species and individuals, most cats spent a lot of time licking their fur every day. Their stomachs would form fur balls, and some non-toxic fiber-rich plants would stimulate their stomachs and cause them to vomit fur balls. However, sometimes people would overlook some things such as the fact that eating certain plants could make them sick. Many plants were poisonous to cats such as castor beans, rhododendrons, lilies of the valley, chrysanthemums, oleanders, hydrangeas and so on. However, the degree of toxicity varied. Different cats might have different preferences and tolerance levels. Some cat friends who had done research in this area were afraid of plants from the Liliaceae family. Perhaps to humans, Liliaceae plants were nothing, but Liliaceae plants could make cats very sick. According to veterinarians and toxicologists, Liliaceae plants could be one of the main causes of acute kidney failure in cats. Jiangtan heard this when he was eavesdropping on some old men in the courtyard. Old Man Lan also noticed the flowers in the small garden that weren't protected by fences. He found that the sheriff only nibbled on a few types of flowers, especially orchids. These types of flowers weren't listed as dangerous to cats, so Old Man Lan didn't care about it anymore. Animals like cats were very difficult to restrain, especially ones like the sheriff who had been left alone for a few years. The sheriff ran around outside all day, and according to this guy's behavior, he probably nibbled on a lot of flowers when he was wandering around the campus. However, he didn't get sick from nibbling on flowers, which meant that this guy didn't nibble on flowers that were dangerous to him. As for orchids, seeing that this guy had nibbled on so many, it should be okay, right? However, cats were carnivores after all. Nibbling on too many orchids wasn't necessarily a good thing. There had to be a limit to everything. Cats were one of the animals that loved to seek death the most. They were always curious about the world and didn't learn from their mistakes. Even the widely known 3 idiots of the sleigh couldn't compare to them. Many cats that ate flowers and plants might vomit, have convulsions, liver failure, or even die. However, these nymphomaniacs just didn't want to learn from their mistakes. Even if they were tricked again and again, many cats would still repeatedly eat the flowers and plants that sent them to the hospital. Some people said that cats liked flowers because they liked the sweetness of flowers, but others sneered at them. A lot of research and reports showed that cats had lost the ability to digest carbohydrates during evolution and couldn't taste the sweetness. As for why they loved to be nymphomaniacs, there were different opinions. Jiangtan had smelled many types of orchids from Old Man Lan. Old Man Lan had a lot of orchids in his house. For Jiangtan, he didn't feel that these flowers were very attractive to him, so it could only be said that he and the sheriff had different preferences. When Jiangtan looked over again, the sheriff was no longer nibbling on flowers. He ran to the big flower pot where he often pooped and started to poop. Jiangtan jumped down from the wall of the small flower bed and immediately left. He didn't want to be the sheriff's scapegoat. Even if Old Man Lan knew that Jiangtan was innocent, there were other people in the small flower bed. They might not think so. Things like pooping and nibbling on flowers should be left to the sheriff. When he got home, Jiangtan looked at the photo on the bedside table in the master bedroom. He was in a very good mood. When Jiangtan first came to the master bedroom, there were only 3 people in the photo on the bedside table: Jiao Pa, Jiao Ma, and Jiao Yuan. Now there were 4 people and 1 cat. There were also little Pomelo and Jiangtan. A family of 5. The Jiao family was in a good mood these days. The crisis had been resolved. After confirming that little Pomelo wouldn't leave with her mother, Jiao Yuan started to show off again. He didn't have the nervousness of a third-year middle school student at all. However, there was no need to be too nervous. Jiao Yuan's grades weren't bad. Even if his grades weren't ideal, they would definitely go to Tsinghua University's affiliated high school. Many children of Tsinghua University's teachers would receive preferential treatment. At night, Jiao Pa went to work in the yard after dinner. Jiao Ma was cleaning the house. Jiao Yuan didn't go to the evening self-study class. He stayed at home reading some magazines that Jiao Pa subscribed to. Jiangtan sat on the sofa and watched TV with little Pomelo. "Hey Pomelo, this article says that wearing metal-rimmed glasses will significantly increase the absorption rate of the phone's antenna to the human body. The absorption rate to the human eye will increase by more than double. Do you think this is true?" Jiao Yuan asked. Little Pomelo thought for a while and shook her head. "I don't know much about this." "Okay. We'll discuss it with Suan and the others. If it still doesn't work, we'll ask the old geezers from the physics department." Since there were many old geezers from the physics department in the courtyard, Jiao Yuan would ask anyone he could find. As they were talking, the phone in the master bedroom rang. Jiao Yuan didn't raise his head and said, "Black charcoal. It's probably your corruption." Jiao Yuan had always been envious of Jing Tan's corruption at entertainment venues. Jing Tan glanced at Jiao Yuan. This guy was just too lazy to get up to answer the phone. When little Pomelo was about to get up to answer the phone, Jing Tan moved. He ran to the master bedroom and jumped on the table where the phone was placed. He pressed the speaker button so that Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo could hear it in the living room. Little Pomelo also lowered the volume of the television. Jiao Yuan didn't raise his head, but his ears were perked up as he listened to the phone. Jing Tan felt that the number on the screen was familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was. After pressing the speaker button, he heard a sharp chirp coming from the speaker. Jing Tan was speechless. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo, who were sitting in the living room, remembered who it was. "Chidada." The two of them said at the same time. There was a pause on the other end of the phone. Then there was an even louder chirp. It was obviously happy that someone could call out its name. Jiaoma came over. She blocked Jiao Yuan, who was running over to pick up the phone, and picked up the phone. Jing Tan was listening to the phone. It was no longer Chi Dada's chirp, but its owner, Pei Liang's voice. Chi Dada had just finished filming a guest scene in a TV series. Pei Liang planned to take Chi Dada home first. They passed by Chuhua City and planned to visit. It was the weekend when they arrived. Jiaoma said yes repeatedly. She liked the monkey very much. The silly monkey wanted to come over. Jing Tan checked the cupboard where he hid his things and made sure that it was locked. This was to prevent the silly monkey from rummaging through it. That monkey had no moral integrity. Pei Liang didn't plan to call the Jiao family. He had come to Chuhua City to meet Celestine Er Mao and He Tao. When he turned around, he saw Chi Dada calling the Jiao family. Since he had already made the call, he decided to tell the Jiao family that he would visit them later. After the call, Pei Liang looked at Chi Dada, who was looking at him expectantly. "Are you going to invite that little friend to your house?" Chi Dada grinned widely. Pei Liang touched his chin. "Why do I feel that you are thinking about something else?" Chapter 284. Many people said that cats held grudges, but in fact, cats were not the only animals that held grudges. For example, Chi Dada, this silly monkey. Perhaps it remembered that it had a conflict with Jing Tan in the past, or maybe it didn't want to provoke Jing Tan, so when Pei Liang brought it to visit the Jiao family, this guy wore a new set of Monkey King clothes and played with the Jianghu bang in front of the Jiao family. Then it slipped and hit Jing Tan's drinking bowl on a chair not far away. The Jiao family's living room was not big. Originally, the Jiao Ma wanted to see Chi Dada play with the Jianghu bang, so she moved Jing Tan's chair to the side so it wouldn't be hit. Unexpectedly, it still got hit. This silly monkey hid behind Pei Liang as if it had done something wrong. The Jiao Ma comforted it by saying, "It's okay, don't worry about it." Jing Tan stared at Chi Dada from the sofa. This guy just grinned at him behind Pei Liang's back. The Jiao family also noticed this, but they didn't think it was a big deal, so they just smiled and let it go. Jing Tan didn't say anything, so Chi Dada showed off. However, when this guy ran to little Pomelo's room to play with the cat tree and wanted to open the hidden drawer, Jing Tan closed the door and beat this guy up. Jiao Ma was afraid that something bad would happen outside, so she called Jing Tan several times. Jing Tan opened the door. As soon as the door opened, Chi Dada ran to Pei Liang's side and showed its teeth to Jing Tan. This guy only remembered what he had eaten but not what he had beaten. It was said that a monkey's IQ was about the same as a 7- or 8-year-old child's. Jing Tan thought about the 7- or 8-year-old child's IQ and sighed in his heart. This monkey would probably be a brat for the rest of its life. He really deserved a beating. According to Pei Liang, they had stayed at home during the peak tourist season in November. After all, there were only a few times a year when business was booming. At that time there was a lot of income. In addition to Chi Dada's reputation, many tourists went there for it. Therefore, Chi Dada stayed at home during that time. Pei Liang waited until the golden Monday of the 11th and the peak period of travel was over before he brought Chi Dada out to continue earning money under the urging of a film crew director. This time it was his child's birthday. He was clamoring for Chi Dada to go back and spend it with him. The production team had also temporarily come to an end. Only then did Pei Liang decide to take Chi Dada home and rest for a while. Otherwise, Chi Dada wouldn't have cooperated. After receiving the call from home, it kept thinking about going home. During the last 2 days on set, it was also absent-minded. If it weren't for Pei Liang's supervision, it would have already thrown off its artificial tiger skin skirt and quit. Pei Liang didn't stay at the Jiao family for dinner. He and his fellow disciples had plans to go to Celestine's house in the evening for a gathering. Jing Tan was also invited to go with them. Celestine, Air Mao, Walnut and Pei Liang drank a little too much. That night, they stayed in Celestine's guest room to sleep. Jingtan also stayed there. When he heard Air Mao and Pei Liang's conversation, he knew that Air Mao wanted to go with them to Pei Liang's house to play. Anyway, he didn't have much to do on weekdays. Coincidentally, his girlfriend also happened to be free. Now that they had avoided the peak tourist season, they didn't have to worry about traffic jams and crowds. Pei Liang naturally didn't have any objections. However, the two of them were still thinking about whether they should bring Jingtan along. Pei Liang knew that Chi Dada had always wanted Jingtan to go with them. He didn't know what his monkey was planning, but if it was possible, it wouldn't be a bad idea to bring it along. After all, they wouldn't be back for too long. In November, they would be invited by a film crew to go to a coastal city in the east. If the black cat was really as sensible as everyone said, it wouldn't be a bad idea to bring it along. Air Mao was quite in favor of it. He had brought Jingtan out a few times. Although there were a few times when something happened from those incidents, there was no problem at all to bring it along. Besides, this time he also planned to bring Black Rice along. He didn't feel safe leaving Black Rice in the pet center. 2 days ago he saw that bastard cat called Peanut Candy again. It was safer to bring Black Rice with them. If Black Coal followed them, it could keep Black Rice company. If Black Rice was alone, Black Rice would probably be anxious. Moreover, Air Mao felt that Black Coal wouldn't pose any threat to Black Rice. Whether or not Jingtan could go with Air Mao and the others, they needed the approval of the Jiao family. When Air Mao and Pei Liang told the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma about this, the Jiao Ma objected as expected. She was worried about going so far away with no one from her family following them. As for the Jiao Pa, he asked for Jingtan's opinion. Jingtan really wanted to go on a long trip. Recently, little Pomelo's academic burden had increased. In addition to the usual homework and exams, there were also competitions on Saturdays and Sundays. Jiao Ma and Jiao Pa didn't actually give her much pressure. Competitions and things like that didn't matter to the Jiao Pa. It was completely based on interest. Participating in the competition training was little Pomelo's own idea. A few of her classmates who were good friends signed up for the training together. It was good to hang out more with other classmates. However, Jingtan spent a lot of time alone at home. Now that he didn't see anyone at home on Saturdays and Sundays, Jingtan was bored. Chi Dada even took out an invitation and placed it in front of Jingtan. The Jiao family didn't know what to say. Knowing that Air Mao was going with them, he could bring Jingtan along. After a few days he could bring Jingtan back together. After all, they were acquaintances. The Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma were a little relieved. In the end, the Jiao Pa agreed to let Jingtan go with them. However, the condition was that Jingtan had to bring his other cat tag. This was a new one made by the Jiao Pa. When Jingtan went on a long trip, he could bring this cat tag with a tracking device. After all, everyone was afraid that cats would go wild. With this tag, it would be easier to find them in time if they were in danger. Pei Liang asked the Jiao family to go to his house to play when they had holidays. This time, Jingtan was going to check out the place. The Jiao Ma prepared a lot of things for Jingtan. There was a big package of daily necessities. Jingtan also put in the small backpack. There were a lot of notes in it in case of emergency. Pei Liang drove his own car with Chi Dada, while Air Mao drove his new off-road car with his girlfriend and 2 cats, following behind them. At first, Black Rice wasn't very quiet in the car. It seemed a little anxious. If it wasn't for the familiar scent in the car, it would have gone crazy. However, gradually, probably influenced by Jingtan's calmness and Gong Qin's comforting, it calmed down. Jingtan decided to go out for a walk. First, it was really boring at home. Recently, he was too lazy to wander around. Because of Lu Ba, Jingtan didn't have the mood to play with his phone. So, he decided to go out for a walk. In the morning, they set off from Chuhua City. They took a few breaks along the way. After all, they weren't in a rush. They also needed to rest to avoid driving tired. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, they arrived at the county where Pei Liang's house was located. Jingtan didn't need to take care of much. As for Black Rice, Gong Qin was there. This professional took good care of Black Rice. Black Rice didn't feel anxious on the way back. Probably because it knew that they were almost home, Chi Dada became restless. It was so happy that it chirped. No matter how good it was outside, it was always happy to be back in its own territory. Jingtan looked outside. He had never been here before. He had only seen the advertisements of this place in some travel magazines. After seeing it with his own eyes, he sighed in his heart that this was indeed a popular tourist attraction. The scenery was indeed very good. The air quality was something that Chuhua City could not compare to. He didn't know if it was for tourism. Many of the surrounding villagers had built their houses in a uniform style with local characteristics. Along the way, Jiangtan saw many vendors selling souvenirs. Gong Qin had never been here before. She had been to another tourist spot in the same province. After all, every tourist spot had its own characteristics. The souvenirs were the same. After seeing them, she wanted to buy some. These don't need to be too rare. Also, the souvenirs here are not very authentic. They are all for scamming tourists who don't know anything. They had installed a wireless intercom device in the car. Along the way, Pei Liang had explained the situation here to them. Now that he heard Gong Qin say that she wanted to buy souvenirs from the vendors, he smiled and explained some inside information to Gong Qin. Hey, don't tell anyone what I said. Otherwise the villagers will take it out on me. Pei Liang joked. I know. Mao replied. He also looked at the scenery along the way. During the National Day, this place was full of people. Now it's empty. Pei Liang said. Jiangtan looked over. Some vendors didn't seem to be in good spirits. Now that the peak period was over, they came out to set up their stalls. They were chatting with each other. Some were directly lying there and taking a nap. Chi Dada was restless again. However, listening to the sound, it didn't seem to be all Chi Dada. Jiangtan looked out from the car window, which was 1/3 open. Sure enough, there was a monkey similar to Chi Dada at a stall over there. It was jumping on the stall and shouting at Pei Liang's car. Listening to the sound of these two monkeys, it didn't seem to be particularly friendly. It was more like enemies on a narrow road. There are many families raising monkeys in the village now. Although there are policies from above, there are also countermeasures from below. There are many monkeys in the nearby mountains. There used to be a lot of poachers. Isn't there a famous dish made with monkey brains? Later, the higher-ups sent people over to supervise. It was much better. The number of monkeys increased again. In fact, it's mainly because the villagers are good. They protect the monkeys. If the villagers don't cooperate, those illegal vendors still have a chance. This was true. Some wild animals in nature reserves were poached. The locals played an important role in it. In terms of protection, the locals also made a lot of contributions. Mao said in private that although Pei Liang and the people here looked very hospitable and kind, they were all good at fighting, regardless of whether they were adults or children. Perhaps it was because of the intentional protection of the people here that the monkeys here lived more freely than in many other places. As he was thinking, Jiangtan saw the monkey at the stall take something from the glass tank next to it and throw it at Pei Liang's car. Originally, Jiangtan thought that the monkey threw something like a fish because the stall also sold some aquatic animals. However, according to Pei Liang, the monkey just threw a bunch of seaweed, because throwing fish would cause them to be scolded. Being thrown something, Chi Dada in the car couldn't stand it anymore. He shouted and wanted to rush out to fight. If this was normal, these two would probably throw things at each other again. After Pei Liang scolded Chi Dada, he explained to Mao and the others. What do these two usually throw? Mao was curious. A lot. Throwing seaweed and mud is good. They have thrown all the pots and pans at home. These two are so funny. Mao was happy. This is nothing. These two used to throw shit at each other. Pei Liang didn't care. Chapter 285. The living conditions of Pei Liang and the others here were pretty good, both physically and spiritually. To use a cliché question, if you ask the people here, are you happy? Most people would probably say that they were happy, especially those naughty children who were accompanied by countless funny monkeys in their childhood. Along the way, Jiangtan saw the behavior of some of the children who were left to their own devices. They were definitely the worst of the bunch. She could imagine how Pei Liang must have felt when he complained about his own children being tormented by Chi Dada when they were young. Therefore, after Jiangtan arrived here, he made a list of 2 stay away for himself. First, stay away from the kids. Second, stay away from the silly monkeys. He didn't want to be targeted by the kids or hit by a pile of feces when he was walking around the hillside. Pei Liang's family had already received a call from Pei Liang and were waiting at the door. When the car arrived and the door opened, the people didn't move, the monkeys went first. The line of people welcoming them definitely didn't shout Pei Liang's name first. Chi Dada is back. Oh Chi Dada, Grandma missed you so much. Come Chi Dada, let Grandpa give you a hug. Looking at the family surrounding Chi Dada, Pei Liang counted. He left home after the peak of the National Day holiday. It had only been a month since then. Was this the so-called long time? After hugging Chi Dada, Pei Liang's children looked at the black cat that came out of the other car. Look, it's that cat, what's it called? Pei Liang's youngest son pointed at Jiangtan and shouted. Jiangtan glanced at the little kid. He heard from Pei Liang that the family had seen the photos he took of Qi Dada, Zheng Tan and He Jin. Therefore the family had an impression of Zheng Tan. However, Zheng Tan's name had obviously been forgotten and replaced by, what's it called? After being sick of Qi Dada, the Pei family finally became hospitable. They brought Air Mao and the others into the house. The guest rooms had already been arranged. Now that it was no longer the peak of the holiday season, the guest rooms were empty. There was no need to worry about not having a place to stay. The bedsheets were freshly washed and dried, not the old bedsheets that had been used many times in the guest rooms. From many details, it could be seen that the Pei family had indeed put in a lot of effort into the arrangements. Even Zheng Tan had a small room. When the Pei family first heard that a cat had to be given a separate room, they were quite puzzled. However, since Pei Liang had said so, it wasn't a big deal to give it an extra room. This cat looks good. An elder in Pei Liang's family looked at Zheng Tan and nodded. Don't underestimate that cat. If it wasn't for its family telling it to keep a low profile, its popularity might not be any lower than Bosch Cheese, Pei Liang said to his family. This was also to prevent his family from neglecting Zheng Tan too much. I can see that. An old man stroked his beard. A cat with intelligence should indeed be treated well. The elders believed in mysterious things, so compared to the younger members of the Pei family, the elders of the Pei family were much more amiable to Zheng Tan. Out of Zheng Tan's expectations, Bosch Qi didn't provoke Zheng Tan in his own territory. In front of the elders, Bosch Qi was very obedient. Zheng Tan looked down on him endlessly. He really knew how to act. However, this was also a good thing. If Bosch Qi didn't provoke Zheng Tan could also have a good rest. On the first day of their arrival at the Pei family, they didn't go up the mountain. Pei Liang and Air Mao needed a good rest. The drive was tiring. Heimi and Air Mao were in the same room. Air Mao and the others were busy comforting Heimi to adapt to the unfamiliar environment. In comparison, Zheng Tan was the most relaxed one. Zheng Tan's room didn't have a balcony. He didn't need one. He squatted on the windowsill and looked at the mountain and the surrounding scenery in the distance. To be listed as a tourist attraction, the scenery was obviously not bad. However, Zheng Tan didn't care about the scenery. He cared more about the monkeys on the mountain. If there were many monkeys on the mountain, would he be surrounded if he went up the mountain for a walk? However, from here he couldn't see how many monkeys there were on the mountain. From time to time, there would be some commotion because of some monkey or some naughty child. On the first day it was a good night. On the second day, Air Mao carried a big backpack and followed Pei Liang up the mountain to play in high spirits. Zheng Tan didn't carry a backpack. It was inconvenient to carry it. In the dense forest on the mountain, it was more comfortable to run, naked. As they walked up the mountain, Zheng Tan didn't see any other monkeys. Around him only Bosch Qi was active in the forest. Didn't you say that there were many monkeys here? I didn't see many, Air Mao said. We haven't reached the place yet. Pei Liang pointed in front. You'll see it after walking for a while. Just as Pei Liang said, after walking for another 10 minutes, Zheng Tan heard some sounds. A stream flowed down from the mountain. On a big rock next to the stream there were a few monkeys. There were 3 female monkeys, each with a little monkey. One of the little monkeys was nestled in the arms of the mother monkey and drinking milk. It didn't even look at Zheng Tan and the others. The other 2 little monkeys were curiously looking at Zheng Tan and the others. Zheng Tan wanted to say to those monkeys, "Guys, it's time to show off." Air Mao and Gong Qin took a few photos. Those monkeys weren't afraid of people. Except for some vigilance in their eyes, they didn't run away because of the sound of the photos. They probably encountered this kind of situation on a daily basis. Keeping a distance, Pei Liang didn't disturb the monkey's comfortable life. He continued to lead Air Mao and the others forward. Hey, what's that place? Air Mao pointed at a large building diagonally in front of them. A hotel on the mountain? No, that's the research base of a few universities. They provide some inspection programs. Usually, the villagers who have monkeys at home will come here regularly to give the monkeys a physical examination. Chidata is one of them. With these people's health certificates and medical records, it's easier to mingle outside. For someone like Chidata who often travels around the country, the physical examination is more stringent. For example, don't look at how friendly the crew is when they talk to you. If you don't have a health certificate or if you don't have a medical record for a period of time, those people will be on guard. I've heard a few crew members say that wild animals like Chidata carry some kind of virus or disease. After all, animals are different from humans. If Chidata wants to mingle in human society, he still needs to work hard. Chidata didn't know if he understood Pei Liang's words, but he chirped twice. When Pei Liang passed by with Mao and the others, there were a few people playing football outside the base. There were also a few monkeys watching around. It was unknown if they understood the rules. "Hey brother Pei, didn't you bring Big Star Chi around for filming?" A young man in his 20s said to Pei Liang. Judging from their tone and Chi Dada's reaction, Pei Liang was more familiar with these people. "We came back to celebrate the child's birthday. In a few days we'll go out for filming." Pei Liang sat down on a wooden stool and took a fruit plate from a student for Mao and the others. "What research have you been doing recently?" Pei Liang asked the students. The young man who was familiar with Pei Liang wiped his sweat and sat down. They studied the triangular distribution of the palmar skin pattern of the macaque population in this place, the intestinal parasite infection of the macaques on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain, and so on. As for me, I just sorted out some data based on the examination records of the monkeys in the mountain and the village. I made a summary of physiological indicators such as hematology and cardiopulmonary function, including blood routine, blood biochemistry, blood coagulation function, blood pressure, electrocardiogram, breathing, and so on. I found that there are differences between male and female macaques in red blood cell hemoglobin concentration, albumin, blood sugar, blood calcium, triglyceride, and so on. So it's just like that. Zheng Tan had lived in the Jiao family for a long time and had heard some terms a few times, so it was not impossible for him to understand. Mao was more interested in intestinal parasite infection. He had once read a book that said that cats could also have intestinal parasite infection, so he asked, "How do you test for intestinal parasite infection?" "Collect feces for testing," the student said matter-of-factly and enthusiastically explained to Mao in detail. Mao was speechless. He still had to pick up feces? According to them, it would be best if the feces were freshly excreted. If he wanted to take hundreds of samples, he would have to face hundreds of piles. These students were really intolerable. The base did not allow outsiders to enter. Pei Liang planned to bring Chi Dada alone tomorrow for a checkup. Chi Dada had been eating a lot lately, so Pei Liang was afraid that Chi Dada's intestines would have problems. They did not stay at the base for long. This was not a tourist area, and Zheng Tan had seen a few warning signs. Usually, tour groups would avoid going up the mountain. There was indeed a hotel on the mountain, and the owner of the hotel had a good relationship with Pei Liang. When he saw Chi Dada, his face was full of smiles. It seemed that Chi Dada had helped them make a lot of money, and the people here treated Chi Dada as if he was their ancestor. Pei Liang and Mao were fine, but Gong Qin's stamina was not good, so they decided to take a nap in the hotel on the mountain. Zheng Tan could not sleep, but he did not feel tired. Instead of staying in this hotel full of strangers and scrutinizing eyes, he would rather go out for a walk. "Don't go too far. Come back in 1 or 2 hours. If you get lost, I will not be able to explain it to your cat parents." Mao shouted at the black figure outside the window. Zheng Tan turned around and glanced at him, indicating that he understood. 5 minutes after Zheng Tan left the hotel, Chi Dada found an opportunity and jumped out of the window. Before Pei Liang could say anything, Chi Dada had already jumped out and ran far away. Pei Liang could not call it back. Once back in this familiar forest, Chi Dada's temper became wild. He was not as dependent on Pei Liang as he was outside. "Hey, what are you worried about? Chi Dada grew up in this mountain. He will be back after playing for a while," the hotel owner said. "I am not worried that it will get lost. I am worried that this guy is up to no good again." Pei Liang asked Mao to keep an eye on the black cat and to keep an eye on it. "Don't worry, I know. However, Senior Pei, let me give you a heads up. Don't underestimate that black coal. Even if Chi Dada is up to no good, it is hard to say who will be at a disadvantage." On the other side, Zheng Tan was paying attention to his surroundings as he walked. He had to be more alert on the mountain so that he would not be at a disadvantage. There were many animal scents on the mountain. Perhaps people would not see them normally, especially some animals that like to pee and mark the ground. As for the most obvious scent around, it was of course the monkeys. As he walked, Zheng Tan's ears twitched. He looked behind him. A figure flew over from the forest. In a few breaths, it stood on a tree 3 meters away from Zheng Tan. Chi Dada looked down at Zheng Tan and then let out a cry. "Looking for help?" Zheng Tan narrowed his eyes. Chapter 286. When Chi Dada appeared, Zheng Tan was already mentally prepared. When he heard some movements coming from afar, Zheng Tan didn't stand there and stare at Chi Dada. Outnumbered, he would be a fool if he didn't run. Chi Dada originally planned to make an even more flirtatious pose, but in the blink of an eye, he saw the black cat run away. In Chi Dada's impression, Zheng Tan was very fierce, very difficult to get along with, very bad-tempered, and would start a fight at the slightest provocation. Therefore, Qi always thought that Jiangtan would bravely fight with the little friends he summoned. However, the current situation made Qi stunned. 2 seconds later, Qi came back to his senses and hurriedly chased. Although his little friends hadn't arrived yet, it wasn't easy for that cat to come to his real territory. He wouldn't feel good if he didn't take revenge. Jiangtan ran very fast. At the same time, he also paid attention to the surrounding terrain so that he wouldn't forget the way. He couldn't run back now. Those monkeys were over there. Therefore, Jiangtan kept going forward. A large area of the mountain was covered in dense woods, and there were all kinds of shrubs below. Jiangtan ran on the ground, leaving the sounds behind him farther and farther away. Only Qi was a little closer. However, Qi didn't stay idle while chasing. He made a series of sounds, probably continuing to summon his little friends. Air Mao said that he didn't see many monkeys on the mountain, but now, Jiangtan fully realized that in this place, there were indeed many monkeys on the mountain. Although the pursuers behind didn't catch up, Jiangtan heard some movement in front. The surrounding monkeys that could hear Qi voice gathered here. Jiangtan's heart trembled. From the sound he could tell that there were many monkeys. There were probably 20 or 30 or even more. Jiangtan could deal with 2 or 3, but he wasn't sure if there were too many. Moreover, this was the monkeys' home ground. Some monkeys were already approaching from the side. A pine cone-like thing smashed at Jiangtan's feet. Jiangtan just glanced at it from the corner of his eyes and didn't pay much attention to it. He continued to run. One after another, some unknown objects were thrown over. These monkeys had probably thrown a lot of things on a daily basis, so their accuracy was not bad. If Jiangtan did not run and stayed in the same place, the monkeys would probably have a 90% hit rate. Jiangtan's body was also hit a few times. It didn't hurt, but it was very annoying. In addition, Qi gloating voice made Jiangtan very angry. With enemies in front, pursuers behind, and attacks from the side, Jiangtan leaped up and landed on a tree nearby. Instead of running forward, he used the momentum to turn around and run across the tree. A few monkeys that had picked up something from the side and were about to throw it at Jiangtan were too surprised to react. They maintained their throwing posture, but their eyes followed Jiangtan's figure. The moment Qi who was chasing closely behind, saw the figure dashing over from the tree, its screams came to an abrupt halt. It grabbed onto a branch to stop itself. It was surprised that the cat could jump so agilely on the tree like the monkeys. Moreover, when it saw the figure dashing over, Qi was inexplicably scared. However, when it saw that there were still a few of its companions around, Qi cowardice swelled up again. It shouted at Jiangtan. Whether it was a demonstration or cursing, Jiangtan expressed that he didn't understand at all. In the past, whenever Fu Lei got into a fight, he would target the person that he hated the most. Jiangtan planned to do the same. Now that he had no choice but to meet the group of monkeys, a group battle was unavoidable. All he wanted to do now was to give Boss Qi a good beating. Qi dodged Jiangtan's kick, but he didn't dodge Jiangtan's slap. As a result, he was directly slapped down the tree. After all, he was a monkey and had an advantage in his own territory. Qi grabbed a branch and landed steadily on the ground. He retreated, touched the shoulder that had just been slapped, and shouted at Jiangtan, who had landed 3 or 4 meters away. Then he picked up a pine cone that had been thrown by the other monkeys and threw it at Jiangtan. Jiangtan knew what Qi was going to do when he glanced at the ground next to him. He originally planned to dodge, but he didn't expect that there was a branch about 3 centimeters in diameter and half a meter long. He directly grabbed the branch with his 2 claws, aimed at the pine cone thrown at him and swung it. The pine cone was hit back by the branch and hit Qi forehead. Jiangtan wasn't in the zone when he held the branch, so he didn't control the strength of his swing well. When the pine cone hit back, it was a little too high. The reason it hit Qi forehead was because it was too engrossed in watching the pine cone being hit. When it fell from a high place, it forgot to react and was directly hit on the forehead by the falling pine cone. A few monkeys squatting on the trees saw this and shouted. A few of them seemed to be jumping happily, and one of them was even clapping. Jiangtan was speechless. Qi was hit, so why were these monkeys so excited? Qi was also dumbfounded. Although its companions had no knowledge, culture, and common sense, Qi thought that it was a high-level intellectual who had seen the world. It had seen many cats, but it had never seen a cat with all 4 limbs walking on 2 legs. Moreover, the black cat in front of it was hugging such a thick branch. Did a cat have such great strength? Qi suddenly had a bad feeling. There were several stations in this mountainous area to deal with unexpected situations. If tourists were to encounter accidents or other problems, they would be able to get help in time. In addition to helping tourists, these stations would also guard against poachers and prevent forest fires during the dry season. Of course, they would also pay attention to the monkeys in the mountains. At this moment, a staff member on duty at a nearby station was surprised to see the sound waveform of a certain area displayed on the screen. They had been working here for a few years and were able to analyze the sounds made by the monkeys and the emotions they expressed. Some people in the research base had even tutored them. Seeing the waveform, the staff member on duty quickly nudged another colleague who was taking a nap. Something's wrong. The person who had just woken up yawned but didn't dawdle. They were worried that someone would come over to attack the monkeys again. They couldn't accurately distinguish what kind of sound the monkeys were making from the distorted and noisy audio transmitted by the equipment. Even if it was a scream, there were several kinds. Generally speaking, if there were poachers or some large beast that could cause serious danger to the monkeys would make a scream with fear and vigilance. The information in their hands listed a kind of scream made by macaque monkeys when they were in a fierce conflict. When the monkeys made this kind of sound, they would confront each other, retreat, tremble, look around in panic, and be ready to escape at any time. If they encountered this kind of sound waveform, something must have happened. The staff on duty would immediately rush over, but now, those monkeys are excited? The sound and waveform made them very confused. In order to make an accurate judgment, the staff on duty took out a waveform chart that a professor who studied the local wild macaque monkeys had given them. It showed what kind of waveform corresponded to the emotions of the monkeys. Even if it couldn't be said to be 100% accurate, it had always been correct in the past few years. It had a very important reference value. Yes, those monkeys are indeed excited. Do you want to go and take a look? No need. Those monkeys probably found something fun again. I'll go and take a look. It's safer. The staff on duty printed an oscilloscope chart displayed on the equipment as a record and said, "Forget it, I'll go with you. If something really happens, I can help." Sigh, it's not easy to serve monkeys. Jianghu didn't know that someone had noticed him. He just knocked back the fruit that Chi Dada threw over. This time he didn't hit Chi Dada, mainly because the guy was prepared and dodged quickly. Moreover, Jianghu couldn't control the direction of the knock. At most, he could knock the thing in the direction of the target, but he might not have the luck and accuracy of the first time. Of course, for the surrounding monkeys, accuracy wasn't important. What was important was that Jianghu knocked the thing out. Jianghu now finally understood what the monkeys were happy about. He found a few familiar monkeys. Perhaps to people, monkeys looked the same, but Jianghu could still distinguish some differences. Those familiar monkeys were the ones that Jianghu had seen at the base when he followed Air Mao and the others up the mountain. At that time, those monkeys were watching the students at the base play football. It was said that there were also many monkeys watching the students play badminton and fitness ball. Sometimes they would even cheer. Just like when Jianghu knocked back the pine cone that Chi Dada threw over, those monkeys shouted happily. This made Jianghu very speechless. He was prepared for a tough battle, but he didn't expect such a situation. Also, Jianghu thought that these monkeys were too dangerous. After all, this was a tourist area. Although these monkeys were wild, they had a lot of contact with people and were more gentle. Even if they were mischievous and occasionally played pranks, they wouldn't attack people or other animals. There were many people in the village who raised cats. Although they were summoned by Chi Dada, they didn't have much hostility toward Jianghu. In addition, Jianghu waved the branch very well, which was similar to the students at the base playing badminton. Therefore, this group of monkeys instantly changed from fighters to amusing. What should he say? What could he say? He looked at Chi Dada and then at the surrounding monkeys. Alas, to be more artistic, it was called one who is close to ink. To put it bluntly, it was called birds of a feather flock together. Otherwise, why would the friends of the amusing monkeys all be amusing? The amusing monkeys were much happier. Suddenly, a monkey found some movement not far away and called out a few times. The other monkeys also looked in that direction. It was the two guards on duty. Jianghu also realized that someone was coming. He threw away the branch in his hand and ran away. After Jianghu left, an adult monkey that often came to the base to watch came down from the tree and picked up the branch. Immediately, a monkey beside him threw a pine cone. The monkey holding the wooden stick pouted its mouth and swung the stick. Although it took some effort and the stick wasn't swung in the direction of Chi Dada, the pine cone was magically hit and flew straight to Chi Dada. It hit the unprepared Chi Dada's leg. The monkeys around them slapped the branches and legs as they jumped up and down and shouted happily. Chi Dada. He wanted to cry. On the other side, Jianghu, who had run away, wanted to go back directly. However, he smelled a scent. It was a little familiar but not completely familiar. Chapter 287. Zheng Tan felt that the smell was familiar because he had smelled it many times in the east courtyard. He had even smelled it a few days ago. Following the smell, Zheng Tan soon arrived at a steep slope. Usually, even if there were tour groups passing by here, they wouldn't come close. Or maybe they would just come close to take a few cool photos from afar. They wouldn't go down. It was too dangerous for people. If they didn't pay attention, they would roll down. Even if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured. However, for Zheng Tan this was nothing. He had even climbed walls in the past few years as a cat. Why would he be afraid of this kind of steep slope? Standing on top, Zheng Tan looked down. He could see clumps of grass and leaves. They grew a little densely. At first glance, people who didn't understand would think that they were weeds. If Zheng Tan hadn't smelled the fragrance, he wouldn't have been able to find it. Without the fragrance, even if he saw it, he might not have thought of Old Man Land's favorite flowers. However, why did he smell it carefully and feel that it was a little different from Old Man Land's flowers? Puzzled, Zheng Tan went down. Although the slope was steep and there were many rocks, Zheng Tan could easily climb down. Old Man Lan loved orchids, and he was also famous for cultivating some of the more expensive varieties of orchids. Those who knew Old Man Lan would know that the old man's favorite wasn't those expensive flowers that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The old man's favorite was the relatively cheap iron bone that many orchids had cultivated before. Just like Old Man Lan's name. Everyone in the courtyard knew that Professor Lan was good at raising flowers, but now many people had forgotten Professor Lan's name, Lan Tai. Maybe it was because of the name or maybe it was because of other reasons, but Old Man Lan preferred Lan Tai. Other than some areas in the south that were suitable for growing orchids, many orchids in the country had the same feeling. Lan Tai was diligent and lazy. The leaves grew fast but the flowers rarely bloomed. Some people raised them for a few years without seeing them bloom. However, Old Man Lan was really good at raising orchids. Zheng Tan could smell the fragrance of Lan Tai every year. Maybe these flowers didn't bloom in the same pot, but it didn't affect Zheng Tan's familiarity with the smell. Zheng Tan looked at the grass at the bottom of the slope and found the source of the fragrance. Somewhere in the bushes, 5 white flowers bloomed from an upright flower pot. Looking at the appearance of the flowers, they were similar to the ones Old Man Lan grew. Apart from the slight difference in color, the 5 white flowers had a jade-like texture. They grew better than the flowers at Old Man Lan's place. The fragrance was also different from the ones at Old Man Lan's place. It was quite comfortable to smell them. Zheng Tan didn't know much about orchids. Even though he had seen a lot of them, he didn't pay much attention to them. He felt that the leaves of orchids were all the same, so he could only judge from the flower in front of him that it was the same type as the one Old Man Lan raised. If Old Man Lan was here, he would be able to deduce what kind of flower it would bloom based on the leaf shape, leaf pant and leaf texture. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan didn't know anything. He didn't understand, nor did he care much about it. He had once despised Old Man Lan's obsession with orchids. Wasn't it just flowers? Why did he have to go to such lengths? Zheng Tan stared at the flower in front of him, trying to figure out what was so attractive about it. 1 minute passed, 5 minutes passed, half an hour passed, another gust of wind blew by, and some fine stones fell from the top of the steep slope, landing on Zheng Tan's head and beside his feet. Zheng Tan came back to his senses. Unknowingly, he had been staring at the orchids in front of him for a long time. This wasn't normal. Zheng Tan usually didn't have much interest in flowers. He had even looked at the pots of orchids that Old Man Lan sold at a high price. However, he had never been in such a daze while looking at flowers. Zheng Tan took 2 steps back and looked at the flowers in front of him again. This time he didn't stare at them carefully. His gaze moved to the leaves beside the flowers. Zheng Tan walked up and sniffed. He pressed his nose against the leaves and sniffed them carefully. Although the leaves looked the same, the smell of the leaves seemed to be slightly different from Old Man Lan's. Zheng Tan had seen the sheriff nibbling on the leaves of the orchids at Tsinghua University. He had also sniffed the flowers and leaves carefully, so he remembered the smell of the leaves. After sniffing, Zheng Tan squatted in place and thought. He felt that there was something strange about this flower. Could it be a new species? Or could it be one of those flowers that Zheng Tan had never seen or smelled before? Should he dig some up for Old Man Lan to study? However, he remembered that Old Man Lan said that this flower liked to live in groups and had developed roots. What if the roots were all connected together? Zheng Tan didn't have the energy to dig it out bit by bit. Looking at the area where the flowers were, there was too much grass around it. It would probably be difficult to dig it out. Zheng Tan thought it was troublesome. Even if he couldn't dig out the big ones, he could dig out some small and scattered ones. Zheng Tan walked around the large clump of flowers. He walked to a spot and pressed his nose against the leaves to sniff. He really did find a lot of problems. The smell of the leaves here wasn't exactly the same. Some smelled like the leaves at Old Man Land's place and some smelled like the leaves beside the flowers just now. Therefore, if Zheng Tan wanted to dig some up for Old Man Lan to study, he had to find something similar to the flowers just now. Looking around, Zheng Tan found a rusty iron fork. There were also some instant noodle boxes and other trash around. They were probably left here by tourists during the Golden Week. Zheng Tan didn't have the mood to look down on those who left trash everywhere. He started digging for the sprouts. For someone like Zheng Tan who didn't pay attention to flowers and plants, digging up grass was a torment. If Old Man Lan saw how roughly Zheng Tan dug up the grass, he would definitely raise his eyebrows and yell, "What nonsense!" While Zheng Tan was working hard on the sprouts, the two people who went to look for the monkeys were talking on the phone. "I told you not to worry. When I came over, those monkeys were having fun on their own again. It's really fine. Chidada is here. He's having fun with the other monkeys." Chidada looked at the person on the phone with accusation in his eyes. "Which I saw him having fun." Unfortunately, the person on the phone couldn't understand Chidada's gaze at all. He continued chatting with the person on the phone. "Cat? I didn't see the black cat. I'll be careful. I'll inform you if I see it." At the hotel on the mountain, the hotel owner hung up the phone and told Pei Liang what he heard on the phone. Chidada didn't cause any trouble? That's surprising. Pei Liang knew his monkeys very well. But now that they said they didn't see the cat, it was strange. They probably didn't catch it. That black coal is very slippery. Air Mao wasn't worried anymore. "Let's go take a look." Pei Liang decided to go take a look himself. "Okay, I've rested enough anyway." Air Mao also got up. After leaving the hotel, Pei Liang brought Air Mao to Chidada. Zheng Tan looked at the two connected sprouts that he had dug up. He had taken them from the big pile. There were only 5 leaves. Together with the 2 new leaves at the bottom, they could barely count as 7 leaves. The roots of the 2 sprouts were broken. Looking at their pitiful state, he didn't know if these 2 sprouts would die. Since he had already dug them out, it was a pity to leave them here. He found a vine and carried the sprouts on his back. Zheng Tan rushed up from the bottom of the slope. When he climbed up the slope, a leaf was broken. It couldn't be helped. The leaf was too long. It was 30 to 40 centimeters long. Zheng Tan didn't pay attention when he was climbing up the slope. He was lucky enough to break such a leaf. After going up, Zheng Tan turned back to look at the bottom of the slope. Because of the angle, he couldn't see the flowers that were blooming below. He could only smell the fragrance from below from the occasional changes in the mountain wind. The changes in the direction of the mountain, coupled with Zheng Tan's cat nose that was more sensitive than a human's, allowed him to find this place. In addition, the flowers here didn't bloom frequently. Therefore, even if people knew that there were orchids here, they didn't see them bloom. They thought it was the same as the orchids that many people in the village raised and didn't have a high price. They didn't think it was worthwhile to take the risk of climbing up the slope to dig them up. Zheng Tan also didn't think it was valuable. In addition, he really didn't appreciate flowers. He didn't feel guilty about torturing the sprouts like this. He carried them on his back and left. After identifying the direction and listening to the movements of the monkeys, Zheng Tan went in that direction. Just as Zheng Tan was about to return to the place where the monkeys were playing baseball, he heard human voices. Among them was Air Mao's noisy voice. Zheng Tan took down the sprouts on his back and put them aside. He shook off the vines and waited there. After Air Mao and the others found Chidada, they quickly found Zheng Tan. "Hey Black Coal, where did you pull the grass from?" Air Mao asked as he came up and flipped the 2 sprouts of grass that had been tormented. "Let's go. It's getting late. We'll go down the mountain and go back." Pei Liang comforted Chidada. He knew that this guy had probably been wronged. Fortunately, he didn't see any injuries on his body. "Okay." Air Mao responded and got up to leave. Then he found that his trousers were hooked and there was a hole in it. He lowered his head and looked at the cat's claws that had torn his trousers. Air Mao turned around and looked at Zheng Tan. "What's wrong with you?" Zheng Tan looked at the 2 sprouts. "Bring them?" Air Mao picked up the 2 sprouts. "They won't survive, right?" No matter what, it wasn't troublesome to bring 2 sprouts. Gong Qin even found a bag and wrapped the roots of the sprouts. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, it looked better this way. It was also convenient to bring them along so that they wouldn't accidentally destroy the roots. After they went down the mountain, an old man from Pei Liang's family took care of the 2 sprouts of Zheng Tan. He thought that Air Mao had found them from the mountain. He even used a small flower pot. Can they survive? Mao asked the old man who helped to take care of the black rice when he went downstairs. They should be able to. This thing is easy to take care of. The old man didn't care. Do you think there's anything special about this grass? Nothing special. It's just a relatively common orchid. Many people here grow it. There are many in our yard, the old man said. They were in a tourist area. There were always people moving around. There were also many people who went up the mountain and went deeper. They had never heard of any rare species of orchids being found. Mao looked at the place where the old man was pointing. There were quite a lot of orchids. It looked about the same. He didn't understand why the cat would bring the grass back. Was it to eat it? Zheng Tan stayed at Pei Liang's house for 4 days. Every day he went to check on the orchids that were taken care of by the old man. It looked like they were alive. It was worth his effort to dig them up. Chapter 288. After Zheng Tan came back, he quickly forgot about the orchids on the balcony. At first he didn't know how to give the orchids to Old Man Lan, but after a while he forgot about it. Usually only Jiao Ma would water the small pot of orchids and take care of them. Until one day Old Man Lan came to ask about it. Old Man Lan bumped into Gong Qin when he was taking a stroll after dinner. While they were chatting, Gong Qin told him about the things that happened during her trip. To her, it was quite interesting to see a cat plucking an orchid and letting it come back. However, under Mao's instructions, she didn't mention it outside. She only mentioned it in front of Old Man Lan because the two of them were talking about flowers and plants, and accidentally let it slip. Hence, out of curiosity, Old Man Lan went straight to the 5th floor. At that moment, only Jiao Ma was at home in the Jiao family. Little Pomelo was called over by her classmates to help with the competition questions. Jiao Yuan was playing basketball with his friends. Jiao Pa was still busy. Jiao Ma saw Professor Lan panting heavily and quickly poured him a glass of water. She was worried that something might happen to the old man. What's wrong, Professor Lan? After getting to know him better, Jiao Ma wasn't as afraid of Professor Lan as before. She spoke more casually, but when she saw Professor Lan in this state, she couldn't help but worry. The first thing that came to her mind was, did my cat get into trouble? Did it nibble on some expensive flower? If Zheng Tan knew what Jiao Ma was thinking, he would probably die of frustration. It was all because of the sheriff. Climbing up to the 5th floor in one breath and in a hurry at that. With Old Man Lan's physique, it was inevitable that he would be panting from exhaustion and his throat would hurt. After drinking some water, he felt much better. Without resting, he asked directly, "Charcoal brought back a pot of orchids a few days ago?" Jiao Ma didn't expect this. She immediately felt relieved. She brought Old Man Lan to the balcony to see the pot of orchids. "This is the pot." Jiao Ma pointed it out to Old Man Lan. Zheng Tan accompanied little Pomelo out of the house and took a stroll outside. As soon as he entered the house, he heard Old Man Lan's irritable voice. He suddenly remembered the tragic state of the pot of orchids on the balcony. Based on his understanding of Old Man Lan, that smelly old man would definitely flip out. Therefore, Zheng Tan hesitated whether he should leave the house and go out for a walk. But then he remembered that Jiao Ma was the only one at home, and he wasn't sure if she could handle Old Man Lan's bad temper. Forget it, he had to face it eventually. Zheng Tan braced himself and walked into the room. He poked his head out to take a look at the door and was caught by Old Man Lan, who had just turned around. "Black charcoal. Get over here." Old Man Lan roared. Jiao Ma's heart was in her throat again. She couldn't help but worry. Zheng Tan slowly walked to the balcony. "Did you gnaw on this leaf?" "No, there's no bite mark." "Did you break this leaf?" "Aya, how can you do this? This can't go on." It wasn't clear whether he was criticizing Zheng Tan or the person who planted the flowers. Jiao Ma stood awkwardly at the side. In fact, she really wanted to say, "Isn't it just a pot of ordinary orchids? Is there a need to make such a big fuss?" But when she thought of Old Man Lan's temper, she held herself back. Zheng Tan felt that Old Man Lan was suddenly possessed by mania. His words were illogical. All he did was circle around the pot of orchids. His words and actions revealed his heartache for the pot of orchids. It was as if a piece of his flesh had been dug out. Zheng Tan sneered in his heart. Although Old Man Lan was heartbroken over the pot of orchids that the sheriff had gnawed on, he didn't seem to be this heartbroken. It was obvious how important iron was to Old Man Lan. When Old Man Lan's mania subsided, the old man seemed to have made a decision. "I'll take care of this pot of orchids for you for a while before bringing it back," Old Man Lan said to Jiao Ma. After that he looked at Zheng Tan. Jiao Ma also looked at Zheng Tan. Then she said to Old Man Lan, "No problem, you can take it. I'll carry it down for you." "It's fine. I can still carry such a small pot of orchids." Old Man Lan blocked Jiao Ma's hand and carried the pot himself. When he left, he even snorted at Jing Tan. When Jiao Pa came back at night and found out about this, he didn't have any objections to Old Man Lan moving the pot of orchids away. After all, he didn't know how to take care of flowers. Taking care of flowers was also a skill. I'm just worried that Black Charcoal will throw a tantrum. Didn't Air Mouse say that Black Charcoal found this pot of orchids and brought it back? Jiao Ma said. Don't worry. Black Charcoal won't throw a tantrum. You know, if a cat really wants to protect its food, no one can easily take it away from its mouth. Similarly, if a cat really cares about the pot of orchids and wants to keep it at home, Black Charcoal will definitely protect it like its own private stash. Obviously, Jiao Pa knew Jing Tan better than Old Man Lan. After Old Man Lan moved the pot of orchids downstairs, Jing Tan rarely saw Old Man Lan for the next few days. He didn't see Old Man Lan coming downstairs to chat with his old friends when he went out for a walk after dinner. Jing Tan happened to hear a few old professors talking about Old Man Lan. They said that Old Man Lan had recently become obsessed with orchids. He was only interested in a pot of orchids that were only worth a few dozen RMB or less. When he came back from his walk and went upstairs, Jing Tan saw that the door of Old Man Lan's house was open, so he walked in. In the house, old Madame Zhai was sweeping the floor. When she saw Jing Tan, she immediately smiled and waved at Jing Tan, indicating that Jing Tan should go in and play. With old Madame Zhai around, Old Man Lan wouldn't get mad. Therefore, Jing Tan didn't have to worry that Old Man Lan would fly into a rage if he provoked him. Old Man Lan was in the study room, wearing reading glasses and flipping through a book. At the same time, he was writing something in a notebook. He was mumbling something in a low voice. Jing Tan didn't hear what he was saying clearly. He didn't understand the meaning of the words that he heard. After old Madame Zhai finished sweeping the floor, she sat on the sofa to rest. When she saw Jing Tan standing at the door of the study room and looking in, she whispered to Jing Tan, telling him not to disturb Old Man Lan. Then she patted the sofa next to her. Jing Tan jumped onto the sofa and sat next to old Madame Zhai, listening to her nagging in a low voice. Sigh, Black Charcoal, what kind of orchid did you bring back? Old Man Lan has been researching it for a few days. Recently, he has been talking about it in his sleep, even in his dreams. He stays in the study room all day long and looks for information. He even forgets to eat. Every time, I have to wake him up and drag him over to eat. I also have to urge him to sleep. Old Madame Zhai wasn't blaming Jing Tan. She was just expressing her feelings. Anyway, similar situations had happened many times in the past. As an old couple for decades, old Madame Zhai knew Old Man Lan quite well. Jing Tan's heart moved. Hearing old Madame Zhai's words, the orchid was indeed different. Jing Tan could notice the difference because he saw the flower and smelled the scent. The scent on the leaves was also one of the ways to identify the difference. However, could a person distinguish and determine the difference between leaves just by smell? Based on Jing Tan's understanding of these old science and technology professors, they should be looking for more direct evidence. Therefore, the biggest possibility was that Old Man Lan saw the difference from the leaves of the grass. Or he saw the difference in the roots when he changed the flower pot? Anyway, Jing Tan didn't have such ability. Even the few old people in Pei Liang's house didn't notice it. He could only say that this was a real expert. Jing Tan was listening to old Madame Zhai's words when he saw 3 old men coming in. They were the few old professors who lived in the same quad and often chatted with Old Man Lan. Old Lan, have you found anything? A loud old man shouted toward the study room. What are you shouting for? Old Man Lan took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He stood up and walked to the living room. When he saw Jing Tan lying on the sofa, he raised his eyebrows. He didn't say anything and directly asked the old men who came in, if you have something to say, say it. If not, hurry up and leave. Don't disturb me. The 3 old men were already used to Old Man Lan's way of speaking. They weren't angry and even smiled at Jing Tan. Black Charcoal, hurry up and eat Old Man Lan's orchid pot. I'll give you a bowl of small yellow croaker for every leaf you eat. The other 2 old men didn't leave him behind. I'll give you 2 bowls. Including me, I'll give you 2 bowls for every leaf you eat. That'll make it 5 bowls. Black Charcoal, go. Jing Tan. Go your ass. One of the old men wandered around and looked at the orchid pot. He then looked at the other pots of iron and shook his head. I really don't know what you're thinking about. Aren't they all the same? Anyway, they all look the same to me, another old man said. Hey, will it bloom next year? Then we'll be able to see the difference, the third old man asked. Old Man Lan glanced at them. Next year? Dream on. It'll take at least 3 to 4 years for this pot of flower to bloom, maybe even longer. Hearing this, Jing Tan withered instantly. He was still full of anticipation. If he had known this would happen, he would have dug up the one that had already bloomed. Just to save some effort, he would have to wait for a long time. He didn't know how long it would take, and it might take 8 to 10 years before it bloomed. Who would remember this pot of orchid by then? However, Jing Tan's withered mood came and went quickly. He wasn't particularly interested in this anyway. He was just curious about the flower and felt that there was something unusual about it. Who cares? He'll continue to give Old Man Lan a headache. No matter how those old professors who were experts in their own field but were illiterate in the field of orchids insulted Old Man Lan only had a sour expression on his face. He didn't really care about what these illiterates said. That would be asking for trouble. Old Man Lan also couldn't ask Jing Tan anything. He knew that he couldn't get anything out of a cat, so he went to the opposite door to look for Mao a few times to ask about the environment in which the flower grew. Unfortunately, Mao didn't know anything. Old Man Lan didn't find much useful information after flipping through the files at home for a few days. Now he just hoped that these 2 seedlings would bloom and he would be closer to the truth. After discovering the suspicious points on the leaves of the orchid, Old Man Lan decided to raise these 2 seedlings for a few more years until they bloomed. Yesterday he even went to discuss it with Professor Jiao. Professor Jiao waved his hand and said, "You don't have to feel burdened to continue raising them. It's a waste to leave them at home." Jing Tan didn't want to stay on the sofa and listen to these old men's nonsense anymore. He went out and prepared to go downstairs for a walk. After a few steps, he heard a click from the door on the first floor. Then 2 people came up. One was Mao and the other sounded very familiar. Soon, Jing Tan came face to face with the people upstairs. "Oh, isn't this that Brother Beast? Why did Brother Beast come all the way from Pearl City to Chuhua City?" However, Brother Beast didn't seem to be in a good state. When Jing Tan was looking at Qin Tao also saw Jing Tan. Chapter 289. Every time Qin Tao ran out, it was because he quarreled with his family. Last time he was kicked to Chuhua because of his temper. This time Qin Tao ran out on his own. Because of this, his parents were so angry that they broke several phones. Now that Qin Tao had changed to a new card in Chuhua City, it was to avoid being held accountable. As for coming to Chuhua, one was to see Mao's girlfriend, and the other was to relax. In Qin Tao's own words, he was unhappy, so he came to chat with his brothers. When he came to Chuhua, Qin Tao went straight to Mao. He didn't even go to his uncle's place. Some relatives got along well, while others were at odds with each other. To save time, Qin Tao didn't want to see any of them. When he saw Jing Tan, Qin Tao was very happy. When he went upstairs, he called Jing Tan over for dinner. He bought a lot of food before he came. Now, Mao's study room was cleaned out, and there was a single bed. When Qin Tao saw it, he winked at Mao. The 2 of them are sleeping in separate rooms. Mao gave him the middle finger. "It's for black rice." "As if I'd believe you. Do you want me to take you in? I'll ask Black Rice to make room for you." "No need. I have a house in Chuhua. Besides, I have someone to accompany me at night. There are many little fairies who want to accompany me." Qin Tao didn't want to talk about his family. Mao asked him if he had any trouble, but Qin Tao didn't want to talk about it. So, Mao just talked about the fun of traveling a while ago to liven up the atmosphere. Jing Tan was bored and watched Black Rice play with toys. Black Rice had gained a lot of weight. If Black Rice had a belly like before, people would suspect that it was pregnant again. Speaking of kittens, when Mao brought Black Rice to the pet center for regular checkups, someone tried to persuade him to sterilize Black Rice. However, Mao refused. Since he didn't want to sterilize Black Rice, Mao turned his attention to Peanut Candy. Unfortunately, not only did he fail to cut off Peanut Candy's penis, he even got scratched by Peanut Candy's paw. Thus, the conflict between man and cat escalated, and they didn't get along when they met. The sound of the lighter hitting the ground scared Black Rice so much that it jumped up from the sofa and ran into the room to hide next to Gong Qin. It then looked at the people in the living room cautiously. Jing Tan looked over. The lighter that was thrown on the ground was Qin Tao's. This guy wanted to smoke just now, but he couldn't ignite the lighter after trying a few times. In a fit of anger, he threw it directly. However, the quality of the lighter was pretty good. Even after throwing it so hard, he didn't see any parts falling off. They probably couldn't hit it because they ran out of gas. However, even if there was no oil, Qin Tao wouldn't throw the lighter away in anger. Looking at Mao's shocked face, he obviously didn't expect Qin Tao to have such a reaction. Is this guy suffering from mania? When Jing Tan saw Brother Beast for the first time today, he felt that there was something wrong with this guy. He could feel that this person's aura wasn't very comfortable. Zhang Tan's impression of Brother Beast had always been that he didn't do his job properly, but at least he wasn't manic. Just like when Zhang Tan first met Brother Beast, he didn't get angry even though Brother Beast had tricked him into a pile of bird poop due to his stupid tailing skills. Also, when he went to normal university, Brother Beast was beaten up like a pig's head, but he wasn't this manic either. Some people were like a volcano erupting when they were angry, and their actions were obvious. But some people looked very calm when they were angry. Zhang Tan remembered that when Brother Beast was tricked into leaving in a smashed car after being beaten up, his face was also relatively calm. Even if this kind of person wasn't very smart, he knew how to restrain himself. He didn't seem like the kind of person who was easily impulsive. So, when he saw Brother Beast fly into a rage because his hand was caught, he was very surprised. Did this guy's menopause come early, or did it happen a few days every month? Mao and Qin Tao grew up together and knew each other very well. He never knew that Qin Tao was the kind of person who would fly into a rage over something so trivial. Because of their background, people like them knew how to restrain themselves, especially in front of their elders. After all, their future was closely related to their elders' impression of them. Moreover, the higher you went, the more you had to know how to restrain yourself and disguise yourself. Mao waved his hand at Gong Qin, indicating that she didn't need to worry. Then he said to Qin Tao, "Beast, what's wrong with you?" Qin Tao scratched his head in annoyance. "Nothing, I've been in a bad mood recently." He probably felt that he shouldn't be like this, so he turned to look at Gong Qin, who was comforting Black Rice in the room, and forced a smile. "Sorry, I didn't control my emotions well." "Are you really okay?" Mao asked. "I'm fine." Seeing that Qin Tao really didn't want to talk about it, Mao didn't ask anymore. Although he didn't pay much attention to Qin Tao's situation, according to his previous understanding, Qin Tao's mood should be affected by his family matters. He suppressed it for too long, so his emotions were unstable. There were many people in Qin Tao's family who didn't like him, especially people like Qin Tao, who many people thought was a good-for-nothing playboy. "It's fine if you don't want to talk about it. I'll take you out tonight to relax." Mao looked at Zhang Tan again. "Black charcoal, let's go out and play tonight." Zhang Tan was studying Hei's toy mouse. Once the furry mouse was wound up, it kept rolling around. It made Zhang Tan itch to slap it or press on its neck. It was rare for Hei to have so much fun playing with it. Hearing Mao's words, Zhang Tan glanced over. Going out to play tonight, it was most likely going to triumph. He had nothing to do at night anyway, so it didn't matter if he went out to play. Gong Qin didn't go with them this time. She stayed at home to play with Black Rice and let the two men have a good talk. After the Jiao family finished dinner, Mao went upstairs to find Zhang Tan. Jiao didn't say anything when she heard that they were going to triumph. She was already used to this kind of thing. Therefore, the two men walked to Triumph leisurely. They didn't drive since it wasn't too far away. Moreover, they would definitely drink, which would make it difficult to drive. Hearing that Zhang Tan also had a private room in Triumph, Qin Tao said that he would go to Zhang Tan's room to play and experience the fun of the cat room. However, Qin Tao's good mood disappeared when he arrived at Hengwu Plaza. "I was wondering who it was, so it's my cousin." A well-dressed, handsome young man came over with a beauty in his arms. Qin Tao's cousin and Qin Tao didn't have a good relationship. Usually they would mock and ridicule each other. Today he brought a female student from a nearby high school to buy things here. He didn't expect to meet Qin Tao, so he immediately blurted out those sarcastic words. If it was the old Qin Tao, he would probably still smile and mock back. But now Qin Tao's mood was not right. His originally smiling face immediately became gloomy. Seeing Qin Tao like this, the handsome young man still didn't intend to let him go. "I say, cousin, you can't survive in Pearl City, so why did you come here?" "Oh, right, I forgot that you are still in the reflection period. I advise you to go to the hospital to have your brain checked. Mental illness is not a minor illness. Don't go crazy. When it's grandfather's birthday, there will be a lot of big shots. Don't make a fool of yourself like you did at second uncle's place. It's not a big deal if you lose face, but don't make everyone lose face with you." "What the f***ck are you talking about? Are you courting death?" Qin Tao rolled up his sleeves and wanted to beat him up, but he was stopped by Mao. Mao knew that Qin Tao's cousin's IQ wasn't high. He might not be better than others when it came to playing mind games. He was just asking for a beating. But this kind of person was easier to deal with. He wasn't like those people who hid everything deep. Thus, there was no need to take this kind of person seriously. It was just a matter of talking. Why did he have to make a move? If he made a move, he would be in a weak position. In that case, it would give others an excuse to criticize Qin Tao. "What's wrong? Did I say something wrong?" You don't want to admit that you made a fool of yourself. Is your brain broken? Did your illness worsen? Did you take your medicine on time today? Qin Tao's cousin added. But when he saw that Qin Tao's expression wasn't right, he was worried that Qin Tao had gone crazy again. He still had a look of disdain on his face. Then, he raised his chin and was about to leave with the beauty in his arms. Who knew that he stepped on something and slipped, falling face first to the ground. Qin Tao's cousin wasn't short, nor was he thin. When he fell, the beauty in his arms wanted to pull him up. Unfortunately, her delicate body was limited. In addition, the nearly 10 centimeters high heels weren't strong enough. The two of them fell to the ground together and were in a very sorry state. Some of the surrounding crowd saw this. The adults were fine, but the children didn't know what it meant to offend people. They directly laughed out loud. Qin Tao, who was being pulled by Air Mao like a fire-breathing dragon, was itching to rush out and fight. When he saw this, his anger instantly disappeared. He laughed out loud, laughing until his face was a little distorted. Jing Tan at the side looked like an outsider. In fact, he just saw a child running by with a box of marbles. The box wasn't closed tightly and one of the marbles fell out. The marbles rolled to Jing Tan's feet. Jing Tan casually pushed it at Qin Tao's cousin's feet. It was just a test. The result showed that Jing Tan's luck wasn't bad. Or it could be said that Qin Tao's cousin's luck was too bad. The poor girl in his arms was implicated by Qin Tao. She was still wearing a miniskirt. Compared to the result of Zhuo Mao's trick, Qin Tao's cousin was considered lucky. Even if he fell, it was only a scratch. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like Zhang Dong who was hurt by Zhuo Mao. After the two people got up and left, Qin Tao was still squatting there laughing until tears came out of his eyes. Seeing Qin Tao like this, Jing Tan's beard trembled. This person was really like a crazy person. Didn't he see the child next to him retreat like he saw Godzilla? Looking at the guy who was squatting on the ground laughing, Air Mao's eyes were filled with worry. You beast, there's something wrong with you. Air Mao said seriously. What's wrong? I just wanted to laugh when I saw that guy. That guy was asking for a beating. If it wasn't for my grandfather's birthday and I didn't want to cause trouble, I would have already beaten him into a pig's head. But you almost hit him just now. Air Mao looked at Qin Tao. Brother, what's wrong with you? Forget it, this isn't the place to talk. Let's go to Triumph first. This time, Air Mao really wanted to have a good chat with Qin Tao. Pushing the conflicted Qin Tao towards Triumph, Air Mao gave Jing Tan a thumbs up. Obviously, Jing Tan's small movements just now were all seen by Air Mao. Looking at Qin Tao's back, Jing Tan thought to himself, this guy can't really have a mental problem, right? In the past, this guy was quite normal. Although he was a little stupid, but his temperament shouldn't have changed so much. He also didn't hear Air Mao say that something big happened to Qin Tao that provoked him. Could it be that long-term stress caused his personality to be seriously deformed, causing him to be easily happy and angry? Chapter 290. Jing Tan's private room was not used much, but someone would clean it every day. Sometimes they would find some new decorations. Jing Tan was not interested in those little things, so he did not pay much attention to them. Air Mao, on the other hand, was pinching this and that, muttering that it would go to the pet center to see if there were any similar toys for Black Rice. After walking around once, Qin Tao said, coming here to play also has a different kind of fun. Unfortunately, there are only 2 men in this room. Oh, 3 men. Black Charcoal is one of them. Unfortunately, cats are very territorial and will not allow strangers to enter, Air Mao said like a cat expert. Jing Tan complained in his heart. He really did not care about calling Mainyo over to liven up the atmosphere, really. After ordering some things, Air Mao did not beat around the bush. He had to find out what happened to Qin Tao. You know, even if you don't say it now, I think I will find out soon, Air Mao said. In order to calm Qin Tao down, Air Mao did not order any alcohol. There were only some tea and ice water on the coffee table. After drinking a glass of ice water, Qin Tao pinched his eyebrows, sighed, and briefly explained his situation. The symptoms started 2 months ago or maybe even longer. Qin Tao only realized that something was wrong about 2 months ago. He knew that his temperament was changing. He was easily angry and impulsive. Sometimes he would get angry because of small things. Because it was difficult to control his emotions, he fought more and more with people. Many times before his brain could react, his fists had already been swung. When he thought about what he said, he always felt that his brain must have gone haywire. Because of Qin Tao's behavior, his family became more and more disappointed in him. Qin Tao did not give many people the impression that he was not very optimistic. Now, with this more negative side, his life became more difficult. The reflection period, that Qin Tao's cousin talked about originated from a dinner party held by one of Qin Tao's elders. Some friends and famous people in the industry were invited, and some people brought their unmarried children for a walk to see if they liked each other. Originally, there were also some people who went after Qin Tao. Unfortunately, because Qin Tao had a dispute with someone at the banquet, Qin Tao beat the other party up and sent him to the hospital. If it weren't for someone stopping the fight at that time, the other party would probably be in an even more miserable state, or even have his life in danger. This made Qin Tao's family even more disappointed. Many people who had brought their daughters over had blacklisted Qin Tao. Such a person who seemed to have a bad temper and was violent was too dangerous. There were many famous people watching at the banquet, and it was precisely because of Qin Tao's matter that the elder couldn't let go of his face and became very angry afterwards. Even Qin Tao's parents were scolded, so Qin Tao was ordered to reflect properly. For a period of time, some people who didn't like Qin Tao spread rumors that Qin Tao was taking drugs. Even though Qin Tao's father had dealt with the news in some people's hearts, they still felt that Qin Tao was either mentally ill or on drugs. Qin Tao's father even got someone to do a drug test for Qin Tao, and the test results were negative. Although Qin Tao's innocence was cleared, Qin Tao felt that his self-esteem was insulted. At this age he was forced to do a drug test, and he was so angry that he smashed everything in the house that could be smashed. Qin Tao's father even planned to lock Qin Tao up for a thorough examination, but Qin Tao escaped when he heard the news. He turned around and reflected, and returned to Chuhua City. It wasn't that Qin Tao didn't suspect that someone was trying to harm him, but he didn't find any evidence. Probably because of the glass of ice water that calmed his mind, and because there was only Air Mao and Zheng Tan here, Qin Tao's heart wasn't so tense, and his mood relaxed a little. However, when he talked about those things, Zheng Tan could still hear the suppressed emotions in Qin Tao's words. When you did the drug test at that time, didn't they find anything else? Air Mao asked. Qin Tao shook his head. I also took blood and sent it for a test. They said that my bodily functions were a little messed up, but this could also be caused by emotions. But you still suspect that someone is trying to harm you? Air Mao said. It was a statement, not a question. Indeed, I'm such an optimistic and carefree person. How could my personality change so drastically for no reason? Although I like to play and play like crazy, it's not like I don't have vigilance. At this point, Qin Tao paused and glanced to the side. Zheng Tan looked at him quietly, silently mocking Qin Tao's, not like I don't have vigilance. Back at normal university, who was the one who was beaten up like a pig because of a phone call? Ahem, most of the time my vigilance is still very strong. Qin Tao obviously remembered that incident and felt a little guilty. He changed his words and continued, at first, when I felt that there was something wrong with my mentality and emotions, I paid attention to what I usually ate, but I didn't find anything wrong. What I ate, others also ate. They also asked me to see a psychiatrist, but I know that I don't have that illness. I asked someone to check all the teacups and food and there was nothing wrong with them. Other than Air Mao, Qin Tao had other friends who helped him check. Those people were absolutely reliable and wouldn't betray Qin Tao. They even checked the teacups and food used by Qin Tao's girlfriend who had sex with him in Pearl City, and found nothing abnormal. Sometimes I feel that I have a psychological problem. Qin Tao rubbed his face hard and laughed at himself. If it was confirmed that Qin Tao had a mental problem, it might be more difficult for Qin Tao to survive in the future. After all, other than his parents, the elders in his family wouldn't give much help to a person with a mental problem. At most, they would give him some money out of pity. Talents with a bright future would be vigorously supported. Even if Qin Tao looked like a playboy before, he would at most be scolded a few times. However, if he had a mental problem, he would be directly banished to the cold palace, and would be carefully monitored. A person who wasn't mentally ill was treated like a mental patient. Not to mention his future, Qin Tao's self-esteem couldn't accept it. As for personal protection, in the eyes of some of Qin Tao's elders, a person who couldn't even protect himself would be pulled down even if they pushed him up. Therefore, even if they suspected that Qin Tao had been set up, they wouldn't intervene. They could provide money and people. If you had money and people, but you didn't know how to use it and couldn't find anything, what would you be if you weren't a good for nothing? If I can't find out before the old man's birthday, I'll be in trouble. Qin Tao was annoyed. Zheng Tan felt that Qin Tao was quite sad. There were few trustworthy and smart friends in the place where he mingled. As for Air Mao and his other trustworthy friends with good IQ, they were in different places. Although they occasionally chatted on the phone, Air Mao's brother was very busy. Air Mao had been busy with his love affairs for the past 2 months, and Qin Tao didn't mention it when he called, so Mao and the others didn't know. You beast. Mao looked at Qin Tao. What? Take off your clothes. Jing Tan and Qin Tao, what's with the look in your eyes? I just want to see if there are any suspicious marks on your body. Mao was so angry that he laughed. No needle marks. Qin Tao knew what Mao was looking for. I know you have needles just in case. Since they didn't find anything wrong with his food and drink, what about the injection? However, Qin Tao actually hated needles. Very few people knew about this. Ever since he was young, Qin Tao had always gone to the hospital because of injuries from fighting. For common colds he would avoid injections if he could. When this guy was asleep, no matter how careful you were with injections, he would immediately wake up and punch you. However, if you were to use other things like a stick to hit him, this guy would not open his eyes if he could. The tall and mighty man couldn't say that he was afraid of needles. When he went to school to get vaccinated, Qin Tao would hold his breath and pretend to talk to others to distract himself. He would never look at the cold and slender needle in the syringe. Every time after the injection, Qin Tao would be depressed for a long time. Now many people didn't mention it. Even the cousin who didn't get along with Qin Tao didn't know that Qin Tao hated needles. Otherwise there would be another thing to mock Qin Tao. It can't be an injection, otherwise I would have felt it. Even if I missed it once, I wouldn't miss it every time. Qin Tao said with certainty. If it wasn't those abnormal masters, the needle would inevitably penetrate the blood vessels or nerves. Qin Tao was very sensitive to needles. Mao once laughed at Qin Tao. In the past, when they went to a club for acupuncture, the master there repeatedly promised that it would never hurt. But Qin Tao jumped up and ran away after 2 needles. Moreover, Qin Tao also said that the spearhead had been there for a long time. This was a long-term process. That was to say, if someone really wanted to use this method to harm him, it wouldn't be as simple as 1 or 2 needles. So I'm annoyed. Now I gradually can't control my emotions. In the beginning I could suppress my emotions by self-suggestion, but now I can't suppress it at all. I can become irritable once the fire ignites. Qin Tao said as he poured another glass of ice water. Qin Tao's IQ was not high. Although he was at the bottom of the class like Mao was strong in the wrong way, and Qin Tao was an out-and-out foppish person. It was hard for him to hold back until now to tell Mao. Forget it. If you can't figure it out for the time being, then don't think about it. I'll find someone to check it out. Mao said. Qin Tao directly spent the night in Mao's private room and didn't go to the hotel. The next day when Jing Tan passed by the 3rd floor, the door was closed. Mao probably went out to check on Qin Tao. Although Jing Tan wanted to help, he couldn't do anything now. During the day when there was no one at home, Jing Tan secretly surfed the internet at home if he didn't want to go out for a walk. Or he would go to some of the colored magazines hidden by Jiao Yuan. On this day, after Jing Tan finished reading the magazines hidden by Jiao Yuan, he glanced at a stack of other magazines on the table. These were subscribed to by Jiao Pa. Usually, Jiao Yuan and little Pamela would also read them. Jing Tan was suddenly interested and flipped through the top magazine. As he flipped through, Jing Tan paused. It was a debate between experts. The so-called debate was a professional and civilized quarrel between the two sides with reasons and evidence. Will the revolution in the field of hypodermic injection finally lead to victory? Needleless injection, also known as jet injection, referred to the use of mechanical devices to generate an instantaneous high pressure to push the medicine to form a high-pressure jet. It passed through the skin at high speed and directly diffused into the subcutaneous or muscle tissue. The jet was extremely fast, some even faster than the speed of sound. Because it was so fast, people would not feel pain. The injection time was only 0.3 seconds or even less, and the depth of penetration into the body was limited. It would not penetrate the blood vessels or nerves, which was difficult to avoid with traditional needles, and the stimulation to the nerve endings was very small. The revolution of medical injection technology had evolved this kind of needleless syringe from the Big Brother to the size of an ordinary pen. However, the price was not acceptable to the public, and there were even fewer of them in the country. Chapter 291. Jing Tan didn't conclude that the needleless syringe had anything to do with Qin Tao's poisoning just because of this. He flipped through the arguments of the experts and found that some of them had come up with all kinds of negative evidence. The needleless syringe was injected by pressure. It didn't have the slender needle of an ordinary syringe. However, not all injectors felt nothing. The feeling of injection varied from person to person. Some people didn't feel anything, while others felt like they were flicked by someone's hand. The effect of the injection was also different. 30% of the injectors didn't leave any traces, 50% had red spots on their body after the injection, and 20% had bleeding after the injection. Perhaps these data weren't so accurate, but at least it showed that there might be some connection. If Qin Tao had found similar traces on his body, then the possibility was high. Zheng Tan spent the whole day at home studying the magazines in Jiaoyuan. After flipping through several magazines, only 2 of them mentioned needleless injections. Zheng Tan looked at them carefully and speculated with his low IQ. It was indeed possible. If only he could confirm those doubts from Qin Tao. Science magazines were indeed good things. Perhaps many of the things in the magazines were flashy in the eyes of many people, or the relevant knowledge was a little obscure, but Zheng Tan had learned a lot from these magazines. Some of them were from his own reading, and most of them were from the mouths of Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo. Thinking too far ahead, Zheng Tan pulled his thoughts back and pondered how to send this unconfirmed clue to Mao and Qin Tao. In fact, Zheng Tan wanted to directly throw the magazine in front of Qin Tao and Mao and loudly say, "Look, I found a suspected clue." Unfortunately, Zheng Tan couldn't. After thinking about it, Zheng Tan put away the magazine in Jiao Yuan and ran to the small forest on the edge of the community. He turned on his phone. Zheng Tan had heard Qin Tao's phone number before. After coming to Chuhua, Qin Tao changed his number. When he called someone in triumph, the other party couldn't see the caller ID, so Qin Tao told him the number. Zheng Tan didn't know if his memory was correct, so he decided to give it a try. When the phone was turned on, it was the same as usual. There were harassing messages and missed calls from Lu Ba, but it was much better than before. Zheng Tan waited for the various notifications on his phone to stop before he entered the number he had memorized. Zheng Tan remembered one of the numbers wrongly. Originally, Zheng Tan had planned to change the sender of the message to Mao if Qin Tao's number was not correct. Unexpectedly, it really worked. After trying 5 times, the person who answered the phone was finally Qin Tao. When Qin Tao shouted, "Hello," he seemed a little impatient and could not hide his irritation. After confirming it, Zheng Tan hung up directly. He did not care about Qin Tao's reaction on the other side and directly began to edit the message. With his paw on the button, Zheng Tan stopped again. How should he write? Zheng Tan poked his head out of the tree hole and looked around to see if he could find some advertising slogans. Occasionally, people would come by to post advertisements for fitness clubs or opticians. Zheng Tan planned to use them as a reference. Unexpectedly, when he looked around, Zheng Tan saw an advertisement pasted on a tree. It looked like a new one. Zheng Tan did not come over much these days, so he did not know. He carefully looked at the advertising slogans. XX Hospital, 3-minute dreamy painless abortion, gives you the safest guarantee. After taking a look, Zheng Tan shrank back and started to edit the message with his paw in the tree hole. Qin Tao, who was secretly discussing the results of the investigation with Mao, heard his phone ring. This ringtone was the sound of a message. Qin Tao took out his phone and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. It was the number that did not ring just now. Qin Tao frowned and opened the message. The 3rd generation of SB needleless syringe, absolutely imported. 0.3 seconds dreamy painless injection, gives you the safest guarantee. Qin Tao was speechless. Why did this sound so familiar? When he first came over, a flyer was stuffed into his hands on the street. There seemed to be similar words. Wait a minute. Needleless injection. Mao saw that Qin Tao's expression began to change after receiving the message. It changed from a strange expression to a serious one, and then to a murderous one. He asked, "Beast, what's wrong?" Qin Tao passed the phone to Mao. After reading the content of the message, Mao glanced at the phone number and raised his eyebrows. For Xianxia. Needleless injection, I know a little about this. Mao slapped his forehead. If he did not see this message, he would have forgotten about this thing. I heard about it once before, but I didn't pay much attention to it at that time because of some things. This thing appeared quite early. I heard that in the year 2000, some foreign soldiers carried this type of needleless syringe with them. Their ampoules contained anti-nerve gas, biochemical weapons, and other related drugs to deal with some violations of the rules on the battlefield. However, this type of syringe is still relatively expensive even though the cost has been reduced a lot. Especially the better quality needleless syringe, it is impossible for an ordinary person to use it. It is very difficult to popularize it, and there are very few people in the country who use it. In foreign countries, patients with diseases such as diabetes often need to inject insulin, interferon, and other drugs on their own, so they use it more often. Mao told him what he knew and did some research. High-pressure needleless injection and professional disinfectant ensure a greater degree of sterility. If not done properly, it may cause damage to the skin to avoid infection. The injection site may be infected? Qin Tao thought about it. He once saw some signs on his back when he looked in the mirror. At that time he did not pay much attention to it and only thought that it was an insect bite. Later the signs disappeared and he never saw it again. Now that he thought about it, the signs did look like an infection. This kind of thing is small in size and easy to carry. Even patients with impaired vision can use it. It doesn't require much acupuncture skills. After Zheng Tan sent the text message, he was afraid that the other side would call to order, so he turned off his phone and returned to the courtyard. At night, when he saw that there were people in Air Mao's house, Zheng Tan went to take a walk. There were only Qin Tao and Air Mao and they were discussing something. Air Mao's investigation speed was very fast, and Qin Tao's side was not idle either. Zheng Tan guessed from the words in their conversation that these two should have gained a lot. The suspects behind Qin Tao's back were also circled. The girlfriend who had sex, the caregiver who he thought he could trust, and some people who had a conflict of interest with Qin Tao. Qin Tao would never believe that the first two were not instructed by someone. As for who gave the idea, Qin Tao had some suspects in his heart. Those bastards. Qin Tao controlled his emotions, but he could not help but have blue veins on his forehead. Compared to the manic Qin Tao, this guy was now considered calm, otherwise he would have flipped the table. Looking at the information in his hand, Qin Tao laughed self-deprecatingly. 3 feet of ice was not formed in a day. Zheng Tan carefully pondered this sentence. Did this mean that Qin Tao had realized his stupidity for a long time? Otherwise, how could he have been schemed against by the people around him without realizing it? Those people did this directly to cripple Qin Tao. When those who could support him were disappointed, if Qin Tao still courted death, his future would be clouded and would never be clear again. He did not know if Qin Tao would change after this incident. Zheng Tan could not watch Air Mao and Qin Tao every day to see the progress of the investigation. He could only speculate how things were going by the expressions and aura of Air Mao and Qin Tao when he occasionally saw them. Looking at the recent performance of these two people, the progress should be smooth. On this day, Zheng Tan went to the kindergarten to watch the children in Zhuo Kitten's class show off their skills. During the talent show class, some children who were 3 years old or younger stood in front of the classroom one by one to show off their skills. There were quite a lot of children who memorized the 3-character classic and ancient poems at such a young age. Zheng Tan did not know if it was because children nowadays were precocious or because of education, but they were much better than he was when he was young. Although he could not remember what he was like when he was young, he heard people say that he could not compare to the children here. As for Zhuo Kitten, this little guy did not seem to be interested in showing off his skills at all. When Zheng Tan did not come, he held his chin in a daze. When Zheng Tan came closer, he walked to the window where Zheng Tan was. Sometimes he would whisper to Zheng Tan. After the talent show class, it was free time. The children mostly went to the slide and other places. Zhuo Kitten followed Zheng Tan and talked to him. He talked non-stop, and Zheng Tan was only responsible for listening. A man and a cat stood in the corner. Suddenly they heard a voice. "Hey, Black Charcoal. Whose kid is this? Are you two familiar with each other?" Qin Tao was in a better mood now. He had found someone to share and found some things. The questions and frustrations that had been bottled up in his heart for a long time now had an outlet. He did not have to worry about holding it in until he went crazy. Now that he saw Zheng Tan, he was still in the mood to joke. After Qin Tao walked over, he sat on the edge of the flower bed next to the fence and looked at the child standing next to Zheng Tan in the courtyard. Seeing that the child was not afraid of him, Qin Tao had a rare thought of teasing him. He knew that his temperament had changed greatly after he was hit and it was hard to control. Many children and animals were more sensitive to the inexplicable irritable aura around him. They would avoid it if they could, and if they could not avoid it, they would be a little timid. But the child in front of him was not. "Little guy, what's your name?" Qin Tao asked. "Kitten." "Oh, that's a good name, but it's not as nice as my name." Zheng Tan looked at Qin Tao from the corner of his eyes. This man was almost 30 years old, but he let the 3-year-old Zhuo Kitten call him brother. Usually when these children saw Air Mao, they would directly call him uncle. Qin Tao crossed his legs and waited for Zhuo Kitten to take the initiative to ask for his name. Unfortunately, Zhuo Kitten did not show any interest. "You're not afraid of me?" Qin Tao asked again. Zhuo Kitten shook her head. "What? Your brother Black's friend." "I'm not afraid," Zhuo Kitten said. After listening for a long time and understanding the meaning of Zhuo Kitten's words, Qin Tao was even more curious, but he did not ask again. "I'm being bullied. Can you help me scold the bad guys? If you scold me, I'll buy you a bag of lollipops," Qin Tao said as he took out a cigarette from his pocket. After lighting it, he blew smoke rings. Zhuo Kitten gently bit her finger. "Scold what?" Qin Tao, come take a deep breath and repeat after me, they're all a bunch of bastards. Chapter 292. When Qin Tao scolded, even though his words were filled with strong emotions, his voice was not loud. When Zhuo Xiaomao shouted, even though it did not contain much emotion, he shouted at the top of his lungs. Because of this, the other children and the teachers all heard it. Qin Tao was thinking about why the words the child shouted sounded a little strange. When he looked up, he saw 3 young female teachers coming over. If this was at any other time, Qin Tao would be very happy to see this. Kindergarten teachers were too loving and worthy of deep communication. However, the situation was not right now. Qin Tao was not so stupid that he could not distinguish the situation. Looking at the 3 female teachers whose faces were full of anger and thinking about the little brat's words, a bad premonition arose. Teacher Xiao Bai originally saw Zhuo Kitten talking to her brother Black as usual, so she did not interfere. They were already used to this kind of situation, and the child's guardian also had a tacit attitude. Qin Tao's appearance made the teachers wary. Seeing that Zhuo Kitten and the black cat beside her did not do anything, they just watched. However, they did not expect to hear Zhuo Kitten shout such a thing. They thought that with Zhuo Kitten's obedience, she would definitely not know this kind of swear words. It was most likely that the strange man who taught her this, so they ran over angrily. Teacher Xiao Bai did not wrongly accuse people when the matter was not clear. She even asked Zhuo Kitten what happened just now. Zhuo Kitten very honestly and very carefully repeated Qin Tao's words just now. After hearing this, the 3 teachers were furious. How could this be? How could he say such things in front of the children? The 3 female teachers in charge of watching the children were like hens protecting their chicks. They looked like they wanted to teach Qin Tao a lesson. Seeing that the situation was not good, Qin Tao immediately slipped away. After Qin Tao ran away, the 3 teachers even told the security guard that if the man was seen on the surveillance camera approaching the kindergarten, he would be immediately expelled. It was better not to let such a dangerous person get close to the children. If he learned any bad habits, it would be troublesome. Children at this age were full of curiosity and had a strong ability to imitate and learn. The parents trusted them and sent their children here, so they had to take responsibility. Therefore they had to guard against him. Looking at Qin Tao's back, Zheng Tan shook his beard. Regardless of whether or not he was tricked, Qin Tao was indeed an idiot. Zhuo Kitten was pulled over by the 3 teachers to persuade him to forget what he had just said and to stay away from such dangerous people. Zheng Tan did not go over, nor did he stay at the kindergarten. He was prepared to find a place to sleep. Zheng Tan's favorite place was a place not far from the east courtyard. It was beside the small road that led to the east courtyard and was not far from the main road. Standing at a high place, he could see the cars and pedestrians on the main road of the campus. He could also see the buildings of the east courtyard. Zheng Tan chose a Chinese parasol tree that was suitable for sleeping and climbed up. He lay on the branch and took a short nap. When he woke up, he smelled smoke. He lowered his head and saw a middle-aged man sitting on the edge of the flower bed. He looked like he had some background. The professional suit he was wearing was expensive, and he looked like he was someone with a high position. While Zheng Tan was observing the person below seemed to have sensed something and raised his head to look at Zheng Tan. He saw the black cat lying on the tree staring at him, but he didn't think much of it. After a glance, he lowered his head and continued to smoke, frowning in thought. But in less than 2 minutes, he looked up again and saw the black cat yawning while continuing to stare at him. The middle-aged man wiped his face. He did not feel anything on his face. Why was the black cat staring at him? He wanted to ignore it, but the presence of the cat was too strong. He felt a little strange. He was already full of worries and was more upset. Now he could not calm down to think about things. Zheng Tan stared at the person. He felt that the person looked familiar, so he looked at him carefully. When the person raised his head, Zheng Tan remembered who he looked like. The way he was frowning was very similar to Qin Tao's. Could it be Qin Tao's father? Or Qin Tao's relative? He was rich, looked like Qin Tao, and appeared at a time when Qin Tao was in trouble. Zheng Tan could not help but suspect the relationship between this person and Qin Tao. Because of this, Zheng Tan kept staring at the person, wanting to be sure. Just as the middle-aged man was being stared at, a car passed by on the side road and slowly came to a stop. The car window opened and Fang Xiaokang's face was revealed. "Hey, third brother Qin, aren't you in Pearl City? Why are you in Chuhua?" Fang Xiaokang asked. He just felt that the person on the side of the road looked like someone. When he got closer, it was true. The 2 of them were the 3rd in the generation in the family. Their families had some friendship. However, Fang Xiaokang was younger, so Fang Xiaokang always called him third brother Qin. Qin? Could it be? Zheng Tan thought. Oh, it's third brother Fang. The man looked at Fang Xiaokang and was not very surprised. He knew that Fang Xiaokang also had some assets in Chuhua. That little bastard came to hide in Chuhua. I came over to tie him up, the man said. Fang Xiaokang understood. Although he did not take the initiative to investigate those matters, he had heard about it. He knew that the little bastard of Qinsan's family had caused some trouble. He did not ask what the matter was. He only said, "Be gentle with the child. Don't always beat him." Qin Tao's father was a capable man when he was in the army. Later he relied on his family's connections to do business. Unfortunately, he was powerless when it came to educating his child. Every time he thought about Qin Tao's childhood, Qin Tao's father would have a headache. The boy is different from the girl. He won't be obedient unless I beat him, Qin Tao's father said. You beat him for so many years. Has he been obedient? Fang Xiaokang asked. Qin Tao's father did not say anything. He just kept smoking. After a while, he did not want to continue the topic of how to educate the child. Qin Tao's father asked Fang Xiaokang, "What are you doing here? Looking for someone? Looking for an expert?" Fang Xiaokang shook his head. It's about the child. I need to find someone to fix something. Fang Xiaokang did not want to say much about this. He was full of tears when he thought about it. Back then, due to Fang Mingming's request, Fang Xiaokang had asked Cheng Zhong to make a cat carriage for Demi. Although Demi was much smarter than other cats, it was not in a special situation like Zheng Tan's. The intelligence gap was still there. Therefore, Demi's cat carriage was later changed into a children's carriage. The cat was squatting in the carriage, the remote control was in the hands of the person, and the person controlled the remote control to make the carriage carry the cat. At first, Fang Xiaokang saw that Fang Mingming and Demi were having so much fun. He felt quite proud that he had made a good toy for his daughter. However, when he saw Demi sitting in the carriage like a master, while his precious daughter was running behind the cat carriage, panting, he was immediately unhappy. His heart ached. Unfortunately, no matter how he persuaded Fang Mingming, she would not listen. The little girl even thought that it was quite fun and she could even exercise by running. The third master Fang regretted getting the cat carriage. Unfortunately, he had asked Cheng Zhong to make Demi's cat carriage of good quality. It did not break even after running in the pond a few times. Therefore, Fang Xiaokang loosened a more important screw when Fang Xiaokang was not paying attention. The next time Demi's cat carriage started running, it stopped moving in less than 2 minutes. Even if Fang Xiaokang put the screw back in after that, it would not help. Originally, Fang Xiaokang was quite happy. With the cat carriage broken, his daughter did not have to run behind the cat carriage all day. However, for the next few days, Fang Mingming pestered the third master Fang to fix it. The third master Fang said that it was fine and that he would fix it when he was free. It was obviously perfunctory. However, the third master Fang did not expect that in addition to the pressure from his daughter, there was also the resentment from Demi. Demi was still very obedient. It did not make a fuss or scratch people. However, it would always appear silently beside Fang Xiaokang and look at him quietly. When it was time to eat, Demi, who was not picky about food, would quietly squat at the side and stare at Fang Xiaokang until Fang Xiaokang's appetite decreased. At night, when Fang Xiaokang woke up to go to the toilet, he saw Demi squatting in front of the door and looking at him. The reflection of the cat's eyes was like 2 light bulbs in the dark. At first sight, Fang Xiaokang was so shocked that his sleepiness dissipated. When he came out of the toilet, he found Demi squatting at the door of the toilet and looking at him in the same way. On the weekend morning, Fang Xiaokang rarely slept in, so he lazed in bed. His wife woke up early to buy groceries, so the door was not closed. Fang Xiaokang felt that something was wrong around him. He opened his eyes slightly and found Demi squatting at the head of the bed, looking at him quietly. I can't live like this anymore. It was rare for the third master Fang to have time to go home to accompany his wife and children. However, he encountered this kind of situation. The third master Fang felt that Demi's gaze was terrifying. He really didn't know where Demi learned this from. In the end, Fang Xiaokang, under the pressure of his daughter and Demi, brought the broken cat cart to Chuhua City. While he was dealing with the matters here, he also brought the cat cart over to fix it. Now, Fang Xiaokang took the broken cat cart to find Cheng Zhong. He would return to Beijing after it was fixed. Otherwise, he would not be able to eat or sleep well when he returned. Hearing Fang Xiaokang's answer, Qin Tao's father made a sound of acknowledgement and was not interested in asking more. He threw the cigarette butt into the trash can at the side, then exhaled a long breath and looked up at the black cat on the tree. Fang Xiaokang was only paying attention to Qin Tao's father just now. Only now did he see Zheng Tan. Yo, where's black charcoal? You're sleeping here? That's great. Since you're not at home, I'll go directly to the Institute of Biological Sciences and give it to your father. Every time Fang Xiaokang came here, he would bring some small gifts or Beijing specialties. If Zheng Tan was at home, he would directly send it home. If not, he would send it to Jiaopa Fangsan. Do you know this cat? Qin Tao's father asked. Yes, I do. It's a cat owned by a professor at the Institute of Biological Sciences. We have some friendship. Qin Tao's father only thought that Fang Xiaokang's friendship referred to the friendship between Fang San and Professor Jiao. He did not think of the cat at all. Oh right, brother Qin, you came here to find Qin Tao. That kid should be with Air Mao, right? If you don't know the way, you can ask this cat for help. It knows the way. Since he had found this place, how could Qin Tao's father not know the way? He had investigated Air Mao's residence thoroughly. It was just a matter of face and his temperament that he had not thought of a way to find Qin Tao. Fang Xiaokang knew in his heart that he was just giving Qin Tao an idea to give him an easy way out. Black Charcoal, take this uncle to Air Mao's place and help him. I have to hurry and find someone. It's best if we can fix it before they go on vacation. After saying that, Fang Xiaokang closed the window and drove away. Zheng Tan gave Fang Xiaokang the middle finger in his heart. He then jumped down from the tree, looked at Qin Tao's father and walked towards the courtyard. When Qin Tao's father heard Fang Xiaokang call him uncle, he was not very happy. Fang San always had a sharp tongue, but could this cat lead the way? Chapter 293. Zheng Tan brought Qin Tao's father to the eastern courtyard. He knew that there were other people following them. When they turned the corner, Zheng Tan caught a glimpse of Qin Tao's father making a hand gesture to those people, probably telling them not to follow. When they entered the courtyard, the security guard stopped Qin Tao's father and asked him what was going on. I'm here to look for someone. A friend asked that cat to lead the way. Qin Tao's father pointed at the black cat in front of him. The security guard had a look of realization. Oh, Black Charcoal's guest. Then he didn't say anything else. Qin Tao's father looked at the black cat in front of him that didn't even stop walking. He thought to himself, could a cat be so persuasive? This was the first time he had seen it. Looking at the old houses in the courtyard, Qin Tao's father didn't understand. He heard that the second son of the Wang family was renting a house here. The house was so old and small, how could he live comfortably? If it was his son, he definitely wouldn't live here. Although he had always doubted Fang Xiaokang's words and doubted that the black cat could cooperate and lead the way, it really wasn't wrong on the way here. When they reached Building B, Qin Tao's father didn't have time to think about what to do. He saw the cat that led the way in front of him jump up and rub against the security guard. With a click, the door opened. Qin Tao's father. Before the door closed, Qin Tao's father hurried into the building, went upstairs and stopped in front of Air Mao's door on the third floor. Zheng Tan looked at Qin Tao's father. He wasn't stupid and knew that this person should know the place. Otherwise, why would he stop here after going up to the third floor? But this person stood in front of the door and didn't knock or make a sound. He looked very conflicted. Qin Tao really didn't know what this person was thinking. Air Mao's door wasn't usually closed. But recently, after Qin Tao came over, the two of them had something to discuss in private, so it was closed. After waiting for a long time and seeing that Qin Tao's father didn't move, Zheng Tan couldn't help it. Wasn't it just knocking on the door? Was there a need to be so conflicted? How indecisive. Thus, just as Qin Tao's father was thinking about what kind of tone he should use when they meet later to avoid a fight, he saw the black cat jump up and slap the security door, making a bang sound. Father Qin's heart was immediately in his throat, but he no longer looked conflicted on the surface. Instead, he pulled a long face as if he was here to collect a debt. This made Zheng Tan quite speechless. In fact, Mr. Qin didn't deliberately put on a look of wanting to collect a debt. It was just a reflex. Perhaps he didn't even know what kind of expression he had on his face. In the room, Air Mao was talking to Qin Tao about the results of further investigation and countermeasures. Hearing the door open, he went to open the door with slippers and a particularly childish cartoon cotton pajamas with a bird's nest hairstyle. Usually it would be the black cat who knocked on the door in this way, so Air Mao didn't think too much about it. When the door opened and he saw the person at the door, Air Mao forcefully swallowed the words that he wanted to say to Zheng Tan. His face twitched and he thought to himself, it's over. That's stupid. Qin Tao originally wanted to ask Air Mao why that stupid cat was here, but when he looked up and saw his father standing at the door, he changed the word cat to goods before he could finish his sentence. He even said to Father Qin in a very bad tone, "What are you doing here? Why are you so free? Is your company bankrupt?" Air Mao stood at the door and covered his face. Although he wanted to have a good talk with Qin Tao, Father Qin's face immediately darkened when he heard that. He said sternly, "Are you done? If you're done then go back." Zheng Tan stood behind Air Mao and saw the father and son arguing. Just when Air Mao and Zheng Tan thought that the two were going to start fighting, one was thinking about how to stop them and the other was thinking about escaping immediately. Father Qin was silent for a while. Then he asked Qin Tao to go out and talk. At first, Qin Tao didn't want to go out. He suspected that if he went out, he would be tied up by his father's bodyguards. Although he already had the intention to go back, he definitely didn't want to go back in such a humiliating way. After confronting Father Qin for 3 minutes, Qin Tao still followed them out. There were many things that couldn't be avoided even if one wanted to. If they really wanted to tie someone up, hiding here would still bring them back. After the father and son went downstairs, Air Mao said to Zheng Tan, "Black Coal, please go and take a look. If you see that something is wrong, come and find me immediately." Air Mao didn't dare to casually follow them. When Qin Tao's father left, he gave Air Mao a warning look, telling Air Mao not to interfere. Based on Air Mao's understanding of Qin Tao's father, there was an 80% chance that he would beat him up. When it came to fighting, Qin Tao wasn't as good as his father. Although Qin Tao looked strong, it was all from training in the gym. It was all for the sake of picking up girls. It was all for show. On the other hand, Father Qin used to be a real fighter. Therefore, since young, Qin Tao couldn't resist his father even if he wanted to. Thinking about Qin Tao, who was probably going to suffer another tragedy, Air Mao shook his head and went back to the house to see if there were any relevant drugs. Zheng Tan was already curious. After hearing Air Mao's words, he immediately followed. The father and son walked along the path that Zheng Tan had met Father Qin. Neither of them spoke. The bodyguards following them were also stopped by Father Qin. They didn't continue to follow and left some space for the father and son to talk in private. After discovering this, Qin Tao breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that he didn't have to be tied up for the time being. The two of them kept silent and walked forward one after the other. Zheng Tan followed behind and wondered if the two of them had forgotten where they were going. They walked until they reached the side of a forest. At this time there was no one else here. He could see if there were other people nearby. Qin Tao didn't want to walk anymore and stopped by a tree. If you want to say something, just say it. It's tiring to walk. In order to get rid of the effects of the drugs as much as possible, Qin Tao cooperated with the people that Air Mao found to treat him for a few days. He got tired easily, but his mood was much better. He wasn't as irritable as before. Father Qin didn't know the reason. He was just dissatisfied with Qin Tao's poor physical strength. He thought that Qin Tao's performance was the result of excessive indulgence. The words that came out of his mouth weren't very nice. Therefore, Zheng Tan saw the two of them start to quarrel again. There were no outsiders around, so the two of them quarreled whenever they wanted to. They didn't have to worry about anything. Zheng Tan squatted on a tree not far away and watched the two of them fight. After a few words, Qin Tao fought back and accused his father of following him. Otherwise, how could he have found Air Mao? Father Qin denied it as he beat him up. He didn't follow him. He was only brought there by a cat. Just as Air Mao expected, Qin Tao was basically being beaten up by his father. There was no other way. There was a difference in strength. However, Zheng Tan saw that although Qin Tao's father seemed to be beating him fiercely, every hit only hurt a little. He didn't really break Qin Tao's bones or suffer internal injuries. He didn't know if Qin Tao's father had the principle of not hitting a child in the face. There really wasn't any trace of being beaten on Qin Tao's face. Zheng Tan looked at the father and son and thought, this should be considered domestic violence, right? Qin Tao probably suffered domestic violence since he was young. How pitiful. When Qin Tao's father was beating him, he hesitated because Qin Tao said that he had found the culprit. He was pushed hard by Qin Tao. When he stepped back, he coincidentally stepped on a protruding lawn tile. He twisted his leg and fell to the ground. Qin Tao panted, his face full of anger. Father Qin didn't get up from the ground. He just sat there with a dark face. The scene quieted down again. Only the sound of Qin Tao's heavy breathing could be heard. Father Qin knew that Qin Tao was telling the truth when he said that he had found the culprit. Although Qin Tao was angry now, he wasn't in a manic state like before. It was just that he couldn't bring himself to lose face and twisted his leg. He couldn't get up, so he just sat there with a cold face. Just when Zheng Tan thought that the situation would continue like this, Qin Tao moved. He walked to Father Qin, who was sitting on the ground, turned his back to his father and squatted down. Come up. Father Qin obviously didn't expect Qin Tao to do this. He was stunned for a moment. Hurry up, the bell has rung. There will be students coming over later. Are you still going to sit there and wait for them to laugh at you? Qin Tao said impatiently. Father Qin's face was full of suspicion. His first reaction was that this kid was up to something. But when he looked at Qin Tao in front of him, he still got up. He supported himself with the leg that wasn't twisted and then leaned on Qin Tao's back. F***ck. What did you eat? You're so heavy. Qin Tao cursed as he got up. He started to walk with unsteady steps. Can you do it? Father Qin asked. Cut the crap. Don't fall when you can't carry me. People will laugh at you. You're still afraid of losing face? Didn't you say that you've lost all your face because of me? Qin Tao sneered. Right, let's make a deal. I'll carry you out today. You don't have to send people to watch me. You're so stupid. How can I be at ease if I don't arrange some people for you? You see, that time when you sent people away something happened and you still blame me? I sent people to protect you, and you said in public that I interfered with your private life and violated your privacy. You didn't find the reason why you were set up and you slandered me. You don't know how to appreciate good intentions. If you don't have the intelligence, don't talk about self-esteem. The business world is like a battlefield and benefits are like a sharp blade. Don't think that I'm just saying it. You should learn from your mistakes. How can you be so stupid? If you were half as smart as Wang Erxiao, I wouldn't bother with your trivial matters. Father Qin still wasn't appeased. He slapped Qin Tao's head. You're so stupid. Jing Tan saw it clearly. Although Father Qin's movements were vigorous, he didn't use much strength when he slapped Qin Tao's head. As for the Wang Erxiao that Father Qin mentioned, he seemed to be referring to Air Mao. Qin Tao staggered as he spoke while panting. I'm warning you. If you slap my head again, I'll leave you here. Really, the older you get, the more annoying you are. You're even more annoying when you're old. That won't happen. When I'm old, I definitely won't be as annoying as you are. You won't understand until you're my age. You won't know what it's like to be old until you're old. You should let Grandpa hear what you just said. I wonder if Grandpa will whip you out. Hey, I suddenly remembered that you can call someone to come and carry you. I didn't bring my phone. Bullshit. I saw it just now. In the winter, the leaves on some deciduous trees had withered and become sparse. There were also some evergreen trees in the forest. A small path passed through the intertwined yellow and green forest. Zheng Tan lay on a tree and watched Qin Tao carry his father on his back and stagger forward along the green lawn tiles. Suddenly, Zheng Tan felt that Qin Tao wasn't pitiful anymore. Instead, he felt a little envious. Beep beep beep. The familiar sound of a horn drew Zheng Tan's attention. He looked over. Professor Jiao, who had just finished reporting his account at the finance department and was about to take the shortcut home, passed by on his scooter. He glanced around and saw the black cat on the tree. Black charcoal, what are you looking at? Chapter 294. It was said that doing the same thing every day at the same routine would make time pass very quickly. Jing Tan thought so too. Eating, sleeping, walking, and occasionally watching the fun and eavesdropping on some gossip. When he looked at the calendar again, he realized that the days had passed without him noticing. Zheng Tan lay on top of a tall sycamore tree on the main road of the school. The dense leaves blocked the sunlight from above. It wasn't hot and the breeze made him sleepy. From the new year to the start of school until the summer break, half a year had passed in the blink of an eye. Speaking of which, many things had happened in the past half a year. Er Mao and Gong Qing got married. Although they bought another house in Chuhua City, they still lived in the courtyard most of the time. Black rice had always been brought along. Even though many people in Er Mao's family objected, Gong Qin and Er Mao didn't mind. Now, wherever Er Mao and his wife went, black rice followed. The good thing was that black rice didn't go out much. Whether it was in the courtyard or in the house Er Mao bought, it was still used to it and didn't make a fuss. Little Pomelo participated in the preliminary round of the Cup of Hope in mid-March. Then she entered the finals in April and won the first prize. Little Pomelo put the medal and certificate in a drawer. She didn't take them out to show off. There were many children in the courtyard who had won similar prizes. Even if it wasn't the Cup of Hope, there were other competitions. Jiao Yuan and the others had also won some competitions, but they weren't in the mathematics category. There were students from the 4th grade to the 6th grade who participated in similar competitions. The 4th grade students' main purpose was to train and prepare for other examinations in the future. The 5th grade students' goal was slightly higher. As for the 6th grade students like Little Pomelo, most of their participation in the competition was combined with the junior high school entrance examination. In the recruitment of some key high schools, medals from competitions such as the Cup of Hope were considered as important stepping stones. A medal from a competition would undoubtedly give one a huge advantage in the junior high school entrance examination. It was also because of this that many parents began to enroll their children in all kinds of tutoring classes when they were still in 2nd or 3rd grade, regardless of whether their children were willing or not. Jiao Pa, Jiao Ma, and Jiao Yuan did not spend much time teaching their children. Whether it was Jiao Yuan or little Pomelo, the two children were very hard-working. When Jiao Yuan won the award, many schools called to recruit him. Jiao Yuan felt that those schools were too far away, too troublesome, and did not have much freedom. Therefore he, Suin, and the others all chose the nearest school. This time it was the same for little Pomelo. Speaking of little Pomelo entering middle school, it was time to talk about Jiao Yuan entering high school. In the blink of an eye, the two children who were still in elementary school when Zheng Tan came were now in middle school. Jiao Yuan and the rest sent their friends to Tsinghua University-affiliated high school. However, they would have to stay on campus in the future. The affiliated high school was a little far from here. By then, Zheng Tan would no longer hear the voices of Jiao Yuan and the others who were going through puberty. For little Pomelo and Jiao Yuan, this was a significant summer break. Jiao Pa had already made arrangements for this summer break. Zheng Tan eavesdropped on Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma's conversation one night. They were talking about the summer break. During this holiday, Jiao Pa would bring Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo to Nanhua City and Nanqing to play. Since the second half of last year, Yuan Zi had been flying back and forth between Nanhua City and Tsinghua City. He had decided to open a branch company in Nanhua City. Now that he had a foundation and confidence, he could return to Nanhua City and make use of the connections left behind by his old man. It wouldn't be too difficult to set up a branch company, but it would be difficult to travel back and forth. After the new year, Yuan Zi came to visit. Zheng Tan noticed that Yuan Zi had lost a lot of weight and was also a lot darker. However, he was in good spirits and was full of fighting spirit. After the new year, every time he flew to Nanhua City, he would go to various colleges and universities to recruit talents. He heard that he had signed a lot of good seedlings for this year's graduation season. This time, Jiao Pa went to Nanhua City not only to check on the situation of the branch, but also to run a few projects with Yuan Zi. He also wanted to visit a few teachers from the past. All these years, Jiao Pa had only contacted them via email or phone. He did not visit them personally. This time he also wanted to visit a few of them. They were all good friends with Yuan Zi's father. They were old professors who took good care of Jiao Pa and Yuan Zi. Of course, there were also some classmates that he had not seen for a few years, so he wanted to visit them. When Zheng Tan knew that he had to go to Nanhua City and Nanqing, he felt very complicated. He thought that he would never go there again. He did not expect that he would have the opportunity to go there again. When he went there, he was completely passive. There were all kinds of dangers and he had to wander around. He was almost chopped up and made into soup. This time it was different. He went there with the Jiao family for fun. When he thought about it, Zheng Tan was looking forward to it. He jumped down from the tree and ran towards the courtyard. Zheng Tan saw that in the shade of the courtyard, a few children were surrounding a middle-aged teacher. They were asking him something. Among the children standing there were little Pomelo, her classmates Xianxia and Xianxia. They were probably discussing the questions they encountered during the competition. Zheng Tan knew the teacher. He taught mathematics and liked to give lessons to the children in the courtyard. Sometimes, when he was enjoying the shade in the courtyard, he would discuss with the middle school students the various solutions to certain questions in a competition. Many of the solutions were difficult to come up with, and the children learned a lot from his lectures. However, when many of the children in the courtyard were asked if they would choose mathematics in the future, they would basically say, no. The reason was that there was no Nobel Prize for mathematics. Zheng Tan had once heard the children talk about the reason. The Nobel Prize had been awarded for physics, chemistry, physiology, medicine, and other fields, but there was no award for mathematics, which was an important subject. There were several rumors about this, but the children in the courtyard were more inclined to the first one. That was, Nobel had been poached by a mathematician, and Nobel's love life had been thwarted. Although this explanation wasn't considered credible, it would always be brought up first every time it was mentioned. Everyone had a gossipy heart. When they saw Zheng Tan, little Pomelo greeted the others and went home with Zheng Tan. Now that many schools were on holiday, they had not yet left for Nanhua City. The main reason was because of the Jiao Pa. Since they were going to be away for a month, the Jiao Pa had to arrange things here first. He had more and more graduate students and doctoral students under him. The projects and tasks on hand had to be assigned. Many of the graduate students did not have summer holidays, but the Jiao Pa was not very strict. As long as they were efficient, had a reasonable schedule, and completed the tasks on time, they could still have a holiday if they wanted to. However, since it was summer, Most students preferred to stay in the air-conditioned study room and do experiments in the lab. Then they would go to the study room of their research group to enjoy the air conditioning and surf the net. They would also throw a watermelon into the ice machine and wait for the ice to be served. Xian and the others were like that. Before Jiangtan left with the Jiao family, he met Zhuo Mao. That little brat would be brought around to play during the holidays. This time he followed Zheng and the others to the north to avoid the summer heat. Zheng brought a few students to a research institute in the north for a project exchange. Zhuo Mao simply followed them to play. In the middle of July, the Jiaopa arranged the things at hand and drove the family to Nanhua City. Jiangtan moved his neck. He was not used to wearing the cat tag all day long. But in Nanhua City and other places he had to be careful. On the way he saw a few restaurants that served cat and dog meat. Not only Jiangtan but the rest of the Jiao family also reminded Jiangtan a few times. In the past they always told Jiangtan not to cause trouble wherever he went. This time they told Jiangtan not to wander around. Yuan Zi had a duplex apartment in Nanhua City. But after he went to Chuhua City to develop his business, he rented out the apartment. Last year he came back and renovated the apartment. He wanted to live in it. After he opened a branch office here, he would definitely travel frequently. This way he would have a place to stay. There are a lot of empty rooms. You guys can stay as you see fit. Yuan Zi gave a bunch of keys to the Jiaopa. His wife and children did not come with him. Living alone was quite empty and lonely. But now there were more people. When Yuan Zi and the Jiaopa went to discuss the branch office here, the Jiaoma brought the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo to tidy up the room. Zheng Tan walked around the house and found a black cat statue in the place where the God of Wealth statue was supposed to be. What was even worse was that the cat had a cat tag around its neck. The cat tag had the words black charcoal engraved on it. Every time Yuan Zi went to the Jiao family and saw Zheng Tan, he would worship the statue. At first, Zheng Tan would throw a tantrum and want to kick Yuan Zi. But after a while he became numb to it and ignored it. But when he thought about Yuan Zi burning incense and worshipping the cat statue, Zheng Tan felt uncomfortable. He could only sigh. There were so many funny people. After dinner, Yuan Zi and the Jiaopa drove to the University of Nanhua. Today they had an appointment with two of their old classmates. They were both teachers at the University of Nanhua. After the sun went down, there was a road near the University of Nanhua near the river. In the evening there were many people there. Many universities gave people the feeling that they were hidden in the city. Chuhua University was like this, and so was the University of Nanhua. The campus was very quiet. But when they came out they could see the bustling city at night. Jiaopa and a few of his old classmates were chatting. They expressed their thoughts about being teachers over the years. They also asked Yuan Zi to talk about what it was like to be a boss. Nowadays the pressure on the teachers is increasing. Research funding and teaching work are like the sword of Damocles hanging over every teacher's head. The pressure of survival makes ordinary teachers like us work hard every day to survive. Snatching class hours, competing for projects, writing papers, and guarding against some people's dirty tricks. It's so tiring. No wonder people say that if you can focus on your own experiments when you're a student, you won't have the chance to do so when you're a teacher, said one of Jiaopa's classmates. Zheng Tan and the Jiaoma stayed not far away. They were enjoying the river breeze and looking at the night scenery. He could hear the Jiaopa and the others talking. It seemed that the two Jiaopa's classmates were only associate professors now. They had achieved a lot, but unfortunately they failed several times when they applied for the position of professor. One of them even said that if old Master Yuan was still alive, they might have been promoted a long time ago. It wasn't easy for anyone. Everyone had their own difficulties. In comparison, Jiaopa and Yuan Zi were doing better. One of them was promoted to professor, and his research was progressing smoothly. The other started a company and made a lot of money. While he was thinking, Zheng Tan suddenly felt something hit his head. It didn't hurt. It was just a softball-shaped toy. Zheng Tan looked around. His gaze stopped on a 5 or 6-year-old boy. The boy was holding a bag. Inside the bag were a few egg-sized ball-shaped toys. There were all kinds of cartoon characters printed on them. They were similar to the ball that hit Zheng Tan. Chapter 295. Zheng Tan hated dealing with children this age the most. It was impossible to reason with them. Even if you could, Zheng Tan couldn't. If you didn't cooperate with them or retaliate, they would cry in front of you and call for their parents. In comparison, Zheng Tan felt that Zhuo Kitten was easier to deal with. Although Zheng Tan found it troublesome, he wasn't the kind of person who would sit there and wait to be hit. When the kid reached into the bag, Zheng Tan was prepared to be thrown. Sure enough, a round object was thrown at him. The throw was quite accurate. It seemed that the kid played with this kind of thing a lot. Zheng Tan raised his hand and swatted the small ball that was about to hit his head back. Then he looked at the kid not far away. After the ball was swatted away, the kid didn't cry. Instead, his eyes lit up and he became more energetic. He reached into the bag and threw another ball at Zhang Ziyan. After swatting away 3 balls in a row, Zheng Tan didn't want to play with the kid anymore. Jiama brought the 2 kids to watch Zheng Tan play with the ball. Just now they wanted to go over and stop the kid, but seeing that the ball was very soft and didn't hurt when hit, and that their cat was playing with it so happily, they didn't stop him. Now, seeing that their cat was completely uninterested, the kid obviously wasn't done playing. Jiama was afraid that the kid would come over and provoke their cat, so she got up from the stone bench next to her and prepared to talk to the kid. Before Jiama could walk over, someone called the kid's name. It seemed to be the kid's parents. A couple walked over. The woman went to pull the kid who was about to walk over to Zheng Tan. The man looked at Zheng Tan and paused. Then his gaze swept over to Jiama and her group. He seemed a little confused and unsure. He went forward and asked, "Are you from Professor Jiao's family?" Jiama looked at the person in front of her. He was a little unfamiliar. Even if she had seen him before, she wouldn't have any impression of him. However, seeing that this person didn't seem difficult to get along with, she smiled politely and replied. When the man heard this, he knew that he was not mistaken. The smile on his face deepened. "It really is you." Zheng Tan thought the man looked familiar, but he couldn't recall who he was. Now that he heard the man introduce himself to Jiaoma, he remembered that he had met this man named Zheng Xian when he went back to his hometown in Jiaopa for Chinese New Year. This man even gave Jiaopa a business card. Zheng Tan remembered this man because he worked in Nanqing and also because he had the same surname as Zheng Tan. Now that he thought about it, it was fate that brought them together. Zheng Xian brought his wife and child to Nanhua City to attend a relative's wedding. He didn't expect to bump into someone from the Jiao family. Every year he would go back to his hometown to pay his respects. Except for that one time when he bumped into someone from the Jiao family, he always came and went in a hurry. He didn't bring the elderly or children with him. However, he had heard about the Jiao family. After all, Professor Jiao was one of the more frequently praised by the elderly in that area. In the hearts of some of the more traditional elders, a university professor had a higher status than some businessmen. Therefore, whenever there was a famous person in the surrounding villages, Zheng Xian would hear about Professor Jiao. It was just that he had never met him. Zheng Xian had a good memory. Even if he didn't remember what the people from the Jiao family looked like, he still remembered the special black cat that always hung out with the Jiao family. One of the reasons why his child especially liked to play with cats after returning to Nanqing was because the black cat in the Jiao family left an impression on his child. From Jiaoma, Zheng Xian knew that Professor Jiao was also nearby. Zheng Xian decided to stay here for a while and wait for Professor Jiao to come back so that they could chat. After all, they were from the same hometown. In Nanhua City, it wasn't difficult to meet people from the same hometown. However, it wasn't so easy to meet people from the same hometown who had some social status. Since they all knew each other and were from the same hometown, Zheng Xian asked his wife and children to come over and sit for a while. Zheng Xian's son, the little kid who threw the ball at Zheng Tan, kept staring at Zheng Tan. It seemed like he was constantly thinking of taking the ball out of the bag to play with Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan ignored him. He didn't even look at the little kid. With Jiao Ma, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo here, he wasn't afraid that the kid would throw things at him. Not long after, the Jiao Pa and the others walked over while chatting. Zheng Tan didn't expect that Yuan Zi and Zheng Xian also knew each other. As soon as they met, they greeted each other with Mr. Yuan and Mr. Zheng. Knowing that Zheng Xian and the Jiao Pa were from the same hometown, Yuan Zi was happy. With this level of relationship and seeing that Zheng Xian didn't have any intention of alienating him, there should still be room for negotiation for the business deal that didn't go through last week. Thinking about this, Yuan Zi looked at the black cat that was squatting by the river and enjoying the night view. Just now, Zheng Xian had said that they were going to go back directly. However, when they turned around, they realized that their child had run away. When they came over, they realized that their child was playing with the Jiao family's cat. Only then did they recognize the Jiao family. Thinking about this, Yuan Zi sighed in his heart. He was indeed a lucky star. Therefore, when Yuan Zi was happy, he started shaking. His intermittent amnesia acted up, and he forgot Zheng Tan's name. When he introduced Zheng Tan to his former university classmates, he said, "This is Ming Sheng's moneymaker." This made the Jiao Pa's university classmates think that Zheng Tan's name was Moneymaker. They even said that this name was more down to earth. Compared to the various foreign pet names around, the name Moneymaker did sound more local. However, after listening to the Jiao Pa's explanation, they realized that Jing Tan's real cat name was. The two people looked at Jing Tan and said, "Oh, Black Charcoal's name is more down to earth." Knowing that the Jiaopa and Yuan Ziyi would be staying in Nanhua City for a while, the two university classmates weren't in a hurry. They even invited a few classmates who worked here to gather. After they left, Yuan Ziyi started to discuss the business deal that they didn't manage to complete last time with Xianxia. Coincidentally, the Jiaopa was also here. The Jiaopa also had shares in the company so he could give more suggestions. This time, Xianxia's tone was much more casual. It wasn't as formal and businesslike as it was when he talked to Yuan Ziyi last time. It was obvious that he had an attitude of, "This matter is negotiable." This surprised the Jiaopa a little. After all, for many businessmen, friendship was friendship, business was business. It was very separate. Today, Xianxia showed this attitude in order to get acquainted with the Jiaopa and Yuan Ziyi. Although Xianxia came from a humble background, he was still quite capable to be able to work his way up to where he was now. When he first met the Jiao family, Xianxia worked for them in a high-ranking position. Later he became his own boss. His company was in Nanqing. After 2 years the company had been running quite well. Otherwise Yuan Ziyi wouldn't have approached him. He also had his own way of dealing with people. "I'm going back to Nanqing tomorrow. I can't leave the company. Why don't Professor Jiao and Mr. Yuan come to Nanqing for a meal?" Xianxia said. "Sure, we'll make a trip to Nanqing next week. I just don't know if Mr. Zheng will be free then," Yuan Ziyi said with a smile. "You have to make time even if you don't have time. I'll wait for you in Nanqing then." Xianxia's phone rang. He didn't continue chatting with the Jiaopa and the others. After saying goodbye he took out his phone to talk to someone. At the same time he also called his wife and children to leave. Jing Tan had been listening since they talked about Nanqing. When he heard Xianxia mention the place where his company was, Jing Tan was very familiar with it. It was an area filled with commercial office buildings. Jing Tan used to go there often in the past because Jing Tan's father's company was also in that area. Therefore Jing Tan decided to be thick-skinned and go there with the Jiaopa and Yuan Ziyi when the time came. Jiao Ma and the two children wouldn't stay in Nanqing for long. After playing in Nanhua City for a few days, Jing Tan was absent-minded. Jiao Ma thought that Jing Tan was not acclimatized to the place. Little did she know that Jing Tan was already very familiar with this place. Although he used to live in Nanqing, he had been to Nanhua City many times. How could he not be acclimatized? It was just that Jing Tan's heart was always thinking about going to Nanqing. Every day he counted the days with his fingers. Finally, it was the day of departure. Jing Tan was so excited the night before that he didn't sleep. He didn't sleep in the car either. He just looked at the familiar scenery outside the window. The last time he came to Nanqing as a cat, Jing Tan was a vagrant. He secretly took a pickup truck and sneaked out of the car. He couldn't see the light of day. He was so dirty that he didn't have a good place to take a bath. He took a cold bath in a fish pond in the neighborhood. At that time he didn't have an ID card. Jing Tan even snatched a noble and elegant Persian cat's cat tag and wore it himself. Thinking back to his vagrant life, he was really careful at every step. He was really frightened by the experience and knowledge of the cat meat restaurants. At that time Jing Tan was almost chopped up and made into soup. But now Jing Tan appeared in this city openly. Looking at the streets of Nanqing, Jing Tan suddenly wanted to shout, "I'm back." Unfortunately he couldn't. In Nanqing they could only stay in a hotel. Jing Tan started his days of hiding in the backpack again. Fortunately he only had to do it twice a day. On the second day of their arrival in Nanqing, Jiaoma took the two children to find a classmate that she had contacted. She asked Jing Tan to come with her. Jing Tan turned his head and didn't want to go. He pretended not to hear Jiaoma's words and stayed in Yuan Ziyi's car. The Jiaopa's car might be driven by Jiao Ma, but Yuan Ziyi would definitely drive to Xianxia's company. So Jing Tan lay in Yuan Ziyi's car. "Oh, it doesn't want to go. Later it can follow us to eat a big meal. Nanqing is not so bad that there's no restaurant for pets." Yuan Ziyi didn't care. Besides, he was quite happy about this situation. It meant that he might be lucky today. The Jiaoma had no choice and the Jiaopa didn't say anything, so they let Jing Tan do what he wanted. Xianxia didn't have any objection to the Jiaopa taking Jing Tan. After the three finished talking, it was time for dinner. After looking at his watch, Xianxia said to the Jiaopa and Yuan Ziyi, "Today I'll take you to a good place. The dishes there will definitely make you forget to go back. Oh, you can also bring pets there. It's okay as long as you take care of them." Xianxia took the Jiaopa and the others to a restaurant with a quaint architectural style, not a five-star hotel or a high-end Western restaurant. Xianxia's car was in front, and he took them to the parking lot. Guqin House. Yuanzi pointed to the 3 words at the door of the restaurant and said to the Jiaopa next to him, "Am I right?" "Yes, it's Guqin House," the Jiaopa replied. Xianxia smiled. Many people think that Guqin House is a place to learn Guqin when they hear it. In addition, this place looks very stylish, so most people who come here for the first time will misunderstand. In fact, this is a place to eat. As for the name, Guqin is actually the name of the proprietress here. I heard that her ancestors were imperial chefs and have ancestral secret recipes. Anyway, I think the stir-fried cabbage here is better than other places. After eating it, I feel that other places don't taste the same. This place is often full. Every time you have to book a few days in advance. Fortunately, I know the owner here and asked him to save a seat for me. Xianxia took the Jiaopa and Yuanzi inside and recommended the food here. Chapter 296. Although the Guqin House was a shop where pets could be brought in, it was also particular. Only people who booked a separate private room upstairs could bring in pets. Otherwise, there were so many tables downstairs and so many guests. If you brought in a pet, even if some people didn't mind, more guests would still have opinions. There would be people who would question the hygiene. Even if many areas were blocked by screens, the effect was limited after all. Therefore, Xianxia took Jiaopa and Yuanzi directly upstairs and went to the reserved private room. It was difficult to book a seat in the Guqin House. It could be imagined how difficult it was to book a private room. Of course, the cost of a private room was many times higher than the lobby below. Because I know them, I can enjoy a discount every time I come here. After a pause, Xianxia said with some pride, "It is also more preferential than the members." The people in the private room next door were quarreling for some reason. The noise was very loud and they couldn't hear it clearly. However, this also showed that the soundproofing effect here was good. When the window was pulled, the door was closed and the air conditioner was turned on. As long as they didn't yell, the people next door couldn't hear it. The bamboo-like menu was delivered. Xianxia introduced the signature dishes and specialties here to Jiaopa and Yuanzi. As for Zheng Tan, he sat on a small chair next to the window and looked at the people coming and going downstairs outside the window. The quarrel next door became more intense. A Guqin House dining bowl was thrown out and fell to the ground on the first floor, breaking into pieces. Zheng Tan remembered this place. His father often came here before. Every time he came, he would not be alone. Sometimes he would bring several lovers, and sometimes he would come with some acquaintances from the mall. Of course, the former was mostly the case. The integrity was just like the ceramic bowl thrown out by the guests in the private room next door and smashed to the ground. It was broken into pieces. Zheng Tan also came here twice. One time was to eat here, and the other time was to slap his father's little lover. Complaining about his father's glorious deeds in his heart, Zheng Tan thought about the time when he came here to catch the adulterers. Suddenly his eyelids twitched. Zheng Tan remembered why he felt strange when he came here and heard the name of the Guqin House. He had a deep impression of this place, not because his father and his lovers often came here for dinner. After all, his father had many places to show his lovers how romantic they were. Lovers with different temperaments and styles would be brought to different places to have fun. Zheng Tan had a deep impression of this place because he remembered what he had seen when he came to quarrel with his father. It wasn't anything good and he couldn't remember the exact time. Forget it, let's not think about it anymore. Zheng Tan felt that his luck would not be so good. It was rare for him to come here, so how could he coincidentally encounter such a thing? Yawning, Zheng Tan leaned against the window and continued to look down. His ears were also listening to the Jiaopa's conversation. Xianxia was lamenting that there were many rich young people in South City. As the saying went, young people were rich. Regardless of whether they were rich because they had a gold-like father or not, the truth was the truth. The 3 people at the table had also reached a certain age and had more experience. When they talked about it, they were quite emotional. They were just chatting and laughing. They did not have too much sour grapes. Xianxia, who had low academic qualifications, had struggled from the bottom when he first came to South City. He had seen many kinds of people. Speaking of which, when he was young, he had also envied those young people who were surrounded by luxury cars and beautiful women. At that time, he and some people who came to work in a group stood by the roadside, wearing street stalls and smoking cheap cigarettes. Watching those young people who enjoyed a high-end lifestyle drive by in luxury cars, envy was certain, and jealousy was also certain. Speaking of the phrase, young people are rich, at that time, they only had one thought when they went south. Youth had long become a thing of the past. Wealth was in the future. But now, Xianxia was obviously a positive example of inspirational success. He had obtained his education through some means. Money he was earning it and the momentum was good. When people experienced some things and reached a certain height, their vision was different, and their state of mind was also different. Zheng Tan was recalling his prodigal life in the past with Zheng Xian's words. Suddenly he caught a glimpse of familiar figures on the first floor. A middle-aged man who was Zheng Tan's biological father. A hot girl who was Zheng Tan's biological father's lover. Although he knew what his biological father was like and had seen a lot of it before, he still could not help but be angry when he saw this scene. Downstairs, Zheng Tan's father walked into the Guqin house with the girl in his arms. Zheng Tan leaned his head against the window and stared at the two people angrily until they disappeared. Moneymaker, what are you looking at? Yuan Zi elbowed the Jiaopa, pointed his chin in the direction of Zheng Tan, and then got up to look out the window. The Jiaopa and Zheng Xian also looked downstairs curiously, but at this time, Zheng Tan's father had already entered the store with his lover. When the Jiaopa and the others came over, they only saw a big black dog coming out of an SUV downstairs. Oh, are you looking at it? That's Chairman Shu's beloved dog, a Great Dane named Mars, Zheng Xian explained. At the same time, he also talked about Chairman Shu and some of his business dealings with Chairman Shu. That's not right. Yuan Zi's focus was not on Chairman Shu and how awesome his company was, but on the Great Dane. My friend also has a Great Dane, but it doesn't look like this. How is it different? The Jiaopa had some understanding of cats because he had a cat at home. As for dog breeds, he only knew a little about them. Zheng Tan's attention was also diverted by their conversation, and he looked at the Great Dane. Unfortunately, he didn't know much about dogs, and the only breeds he was familiar with were the ones he had seen before, such as the Saint Bernard Hua Xianwu, the Bullhead Terrier Niu Zhuangzhuang, the Chihuahua that always barked at the sheriff, and the three bloodline Sahara. He might have seen the Great Dane before, but Zheng Tan didn't pay attention and didn't have an impression of it. Staring at the Great Dane downstairs, Yuan Zi clapped his hands. I know it's the ears. I knew it. My friend's Great Dane has erect ears and it looks energetic and powerful. This one is different. Look at its neck, it's a little short. Oh. Zheng Xian suddenly understood. Because he had business dealings with Chairman Shu, he had spent time to understand him. He knew that Chairman Shu liked dogs, so he had done some research on dogs. Now that he heard from Yuan Zi, Zheng Xian also knew the reason. That's because Chairman Shu's Great Dane hasn't had ear-clipping surgery, Zheng Xian explained. Ear-clipping surgery? Well, it's just like how some dogs have their tails clipped. Many people also consider bringing their dogs to have their ears trimmed because of certain breeds of dogs. Originally, the ears of Great Danes are drooping. After the ears are clipped, they will grow into something like a erect shape. So, Co Yuan, your friend's Great Dane should have had their ears clipped before. Tail clipping and ear clipping were very common among dogs. Some were done for the needs of the dog breed, such as to facilitate fighting or hunting. Many modern dog breeds had their tails clipped and ears clipped for aesthetic reasons. Sometimes, after getting used to seeing dogs with cropped ears and tails, people would habitually think that these dogs looked like that. For example, in the eyes of some laymen, a Doberman with drooping ears and a long tail was not a proper Doberman. If you suddenly saw a Doberman with a drooping ear and a long tail on the street and told them that this was a purebred dog, they would definitely say, "Nonsense, are you kidding me?" Some breeders who had not had such surgery were too embarrassed to upload photos on the internet because they would be criticized. If they took the dog out for a walk, they would be pointed at, which was quite embarrassing. Now, some countries have banned this kind of surgery for dogs, but there are no restrictions in China. Now, there are many people in China who are arguing about this kind of surgery. One side says that cutting ears and tails is for the good of the dog, to prevent ear mites and other ear diseases, and to improve hearing, etc. The other side cites some examples to refute, saying that it is not humane. In short, there is a lot of debate. Chairman Shu is the latter kind of person, so he did not have ear-clipping surgery for his Great Dane. Zheng Xian did not finish his words. Many people had advised Chairman Shu to have his Great Dane's ears clipped, but they were all scolded away by Chairman Shu. Because of this reason, many people had been scolded by Chairman Shu, but Zheng Xian could not say it here. Every time he thought about it, he felt it was very funny. Chairman Shu was really interesting. Listening to Zheng Xian's words, Zheng Tan was glad that he did not become a dog breed that needed to have its tail clipped and ears clipped. Sure enough, being a local still had its advantages. The dishes in the Guqin house were really good. No wonder Zheng Xian praised it so much. The owner of the Guqin house knew that Zheng Xian had brought a friend over, so he specially sent a bowl of noodle soup. He did not know how it was made, but it was really memorable. It was worthy of the 3 or 4 digits price on the menu. The food was really good, but unfortunately, Zheng Tan was a little absent-minded while eating. He was thinking about which private room his irresponsible father was having dinner with his little lover. He wondered if he should go there to have a look and make things worse. After eating and drinking, the three people chatted for a while before they were ready to leave. Zheng Tan stayed in the backpack of the Jiaopa. When he went out of the private room, Zheng Tan saw people coming out of the opposite private room. It was his father and his little lover. Zheng Tan took a deep breath and held his breath so that he did not rush out and slap the two people. However, he stared at the two people in a bad way, so when the two people went out and met Zheng Tan's cat eyes, their hearts jumped. However, they knew that pets could be brought in here, and they had seen several people bring cats and dogs with them, so they did not say anything. Zheng Tan's father's little lover could not stand the look. She held Zheng Tan's father's arm and urged him to leave quickly. Zheng Tan's father also felt a little cold in his heart. He always felt that the black cat's eyes were very strange, which made him feel guilty. Urged by the little lover in his arms, he did not want to stay here any longer, so he quickly strode away. Zheng Xian was pulled aside by the owner of the Guqin house and said a few words. It could be seen that this person had a good relationship with Zheng Xian. He also gave Father Jiao and Yuan Zi a VIP card each. Because of the delay, the three people of Jiaopa walked behind Zheng Tan's father. The private room that Zheng Xian booked was 212, which was still some distance from the stairs. When he was walking towards the stairs, a person came up the stairs. Seeing this person, Zheng Xian frowned but did not say anything. Obviously he knew this person, but he did not greet him. Jiaopa's eyes paused on the person. Although the person looked very calm on the surface, perhaps it was intuition, he always felt that there was something wrong with this person. Chapter 297. The man didn't look at Zheng Xian and the Jiaopa and walked straight ahead. After passing by the man, Zheng Xian looked back and was about to leave with the Jiaopa and Yuan Zi downstairs. Zheng Tan stayed in the backpack on the Jiaopa's back. He kept looking at the man and saw the man walk to the door of room 215. The door of the room opened and a woman in her 30s came out. The woman was smiling at first, but after seeing the man at the door, her smile immediately faded. She frowned and asked, "Why are you here? Have you settled the matter over there?" Before the woman could finish her words, the man at the door grabbed her by the throat and pressed her against the wall. "Even you want to betray me?" The man almost shouted. Zheng Tan felt that the man's mood was a little strange. He was too calm just now, but now it seemed that all his anger had burst out. It was terrifying. Someone from room 215 also came out and tried to persuade the man. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Instead, he was kicked to the side by the man. Even the waiter who came to persuade him was slapped to the ground. At this time, the people around realized that something was wrong. Some came up to stop it, while others quickly hid in the room to take refuge. The sound insulation of the Guqin house's private rooms was really good. So much so that an unexpected incident happened in the corridor, but many people in the private rooms didn't know what happened. Several young men went up to stop the man who seemed to have gone crazy, but they didn't expect the man to pull out a folding knife. A folding knife more than 20 centimeters long. Zheng Tan didn't think that this guy usually carried it with him. He probably already had the idea of doing something here when he came here. When people went crazy, they could do anything. One of the first two people to stop the fight had his arm cut, and the other was stabbed in the shoulder. This was the result of their quick movements and dodging in time. Otherwise, their injuries would have been more serious. When they heard the quarrel, Yuan Zi and the others stopped and turned to look. Yuan Zi and the Jiaopa wanted to go over to help, but they were stopped by Zheng Xian. Zheng Xian knew the man's background. He used to be a gangster with some ability. Later, he made a fortune because of some things. His business was doing well, but recently he was cheated by his competitors. His company went bankrupt and he became paranoid. People like the Jiaopa and Yuan Zi who didn't have much fighting power were looking for trouble. Moreover, the other party's mood was not right. Zheng Xian guessed that the man was probably going to go all out and didn't care about anything else. It was better not to go. Zheng Xian pulled Yuan Zi and the Jiaopa to the edge of the stairs and prepared to go downstairs. He didn't pay attention to the situation over there. He only knew that there was a fight over there based on the sound. There were also several guards of the Guqin house on the second floor. Zheng Xian and the other two didn't see the situation over there, but Zheng Tan had been paying attention. Although the guards of the Guqin house were not masters of fighting, the three of them barely had the upper hand against one person. Of course, this didn't mean that the guards here were weak. After all, they had some considerations and were somewhat restrained. The other party was completely crazy, stabbing whoever he saw. A guard found an opportunity to kick the knife in the man's hand. The man reacted quickly and dodged a little. However, his arm was hit. His hand was numb and the knife flew out. The knife flew through the gap between Yuan Ziyi and the Jiaopa. Zheng Tan originally stretched his neck to look over there. When the knife flew past him, it almost brushed his ear. Zheng Tan could feel the cold metal trembling from the few hairs on the tip of his ear. Because of the knife that was thrown over, the three people who had just stepped down the stairs paused. The cold sweat on Yuan Ziyi's forehead came down. Looking at the traces left by the folding knife on the handrail of the stairs, one could imagine what would have happened if the knife had been thrown over. F***ck. Yuan Ziyi cursed. His voice was still trembling. He didn't know whether to say that he was unlucky or lucky. The Jiaopa was about to comfort Yuan Ziyi when he found that his back was light. He didn't have time to say more to Yuan Ziyi. He turned around and saw his cat running straight to the scuffle over there at a fast speed. Black charcoal. After Zheng Tan recovered from the fact that the knife had almost cut off his ear, the anger that had been suppressed because of his father suddenly flared up. Without thinking about anything else, he jumped out of his backpack and rushed over with a belly full of anger. He didn't even care about the Jiaopa's shout. Chairman Shu, who was eating with his friends in room 216, rinsed his mouth with mouthwash. He opened the door and was about to go to the washroom. He didn't expect to see a man covered in blood being kicked in the back by a black cat. Pooh. He was so agitated that he spat out the mouthwash that he was rinsing. If it were a normal person, they would probably scream and close the door to escape or suspect that they had opened the door the wrong way. After all, they didn't know what was happening outside the room. There was even blues music playing in the room to adjust the atmosphere. The room was full of harmony. Who would have thought that they would see such a bloody and violent scene as soon as they opened the door? However, as Jing Xian said, Chairman Shu was quite an interesting person. He was a bit different. Therefore, when the people in the other rooms screamed and closed the door to escape, Chairman Shu was shocked. He rolled up his sleeves and shouted, "Mars, go!" Mars wasn't the only one who went. Chairman Shu also planned to go personally. It seemed that he and his pet would work together to get rid of this person. Unfortunately, before Chairman Shu's feet could completely step out of the room, and before Mars could rush out, the person who had been kicked to the ground by Zheng Tan was already subdued. There were also security guards below. From what they said, the police were probably arriving soon. The person and the dog that were about to go up didn't even have the chance to use their strength. After that kick, Zheng Tan felt much better. Seeing that the person was subdued by the security guards, he knew that the situation was under control. He prepared to go back to the Jiaopa. As soon as he turned around, Zheng Tan saw a black dog's face. That dog's face was half the length of Zheng Tan's body. Zheng Tan, the Jiaopa had already run over here. There was still worry on his face. He didn't expect that his cat would be so bold to rush up. When he saw his cat rushing over, his heart was almost in his throat. Now that the matter was resolved, the Jiaopa looked at the cat running towards him and wanted to go back and teach it a lesson. Unexpectedly, the Jiaopa, who was ready to welcome his cat running over and jumping into his arms, found that he was wrong, very wrong. Zheng Tan ran directly past the Jiaopa and was quite fast. He went straight to the stairs and then ran downstairs to the door of the Guqin house. He didn't pay attention to the Jiaopa, who had already stretched out his arms. The Jiaopa, on the other side, Yuan Ziyi saw this and shouted, "Ming Xing, hurry, your moneymaker was scared away by that dog." Originally, Mars was going to sniff Zheng Tan out of curiosity and greet him like a dog. He didn't expect Zheng Tan to run away directly. He tilted his head and looked at the owner, Chairman Shu, who was standing next to him. He seemed to be very confused. The fight didn't happen and he didn't get any credit. Instead, he was accused of scaring away the cat. However, Chairman Shu couldn't refute. What Yuan Ziyi said was also what everyone thought. Otherwise, why would the cat suddenly turn around and run away? In fact, Yuan Ziyi and the others guessed wrong. The reason why Zheng Tan immediately turned around and ran was not that he was afraid of the big dog. He was very clear about whether the animals that approached him had good intentions or bad intentions. The big dog named Mars had good intentions in its eyes. It must have seen a lot of other animals and got along well with cats. He wasn't afraid that the Jiaopa would blame him, but he remembered something. He remembered that when he quarreled with his father at the Guqin house, he also encountered this kind of thing. However, when he came over that time, there were already a lot of police cars and ambulances at the entrance of the Guqin house. The people who were carried out had a lot of blood on them. The adults and children were still in shock. If this incident was the one he encountered back then at this time, Zheng Tan, who lived in this time and space, should also be driving over. It was very likely that he was at the entrance of the Guqin house at this time. Thinking of this, Zheng Tan didn't have the mind to care about anything else. He ran out directly. When Zheng Tan came to the door, there were already police cars there. There were a lot of people around. Jing Tan's father was shouting something in one direction. His expression was very bad. Yes, he must be here. Jing Tan ran over there. Because there were too many people around, Jing Tan directly jumped from a parked car next to him and then looked for the figure in the familiar body. He found the car, but unfortunately when Jing Tan looked over, he only saw the door that was forcefully closed. It was that car. That was a car that Jing Tan's father bought for Jing Tan on his birthday. It wasn't that he cherished his son so much. He just wanted to shut Jing Tan's mouth and let Jing Tan mind his own business. Usually this car was driven by a special driver. After all, Jing Tan was still a minor like Jiao Yuan at this time. Seeing the car drive away, Jing Tan immediately chased after it. He wanted to shout, King wait for me, but unfortunately he couldn't shout. He could only chase in that direction. When Jiao Pa came out of the Guqin house and squeezed through the crowd to look out, he saw his cat crossing the road in front of the Guqin house. There were a lot of cars coming and going on the road. Jiao Pa was so shocked that his face turned pale and he broke out in a cold sweat. After seeing Jing Tan safely pass by, his hanging heart was still not at ease. Moreover, he soon found that he couldn't find the black cat. Jing Tan ran. He couldn't see the person in the driver's seat in the car. When he was about to catch up, the car that had already driven past the intersection and onto a wider street accelerated, widening the distance between the two. Jing Tan couldn't pin his hopes on the cars on the road that he didn't know where to go. He could only rely on himself. While running on the sidewalk next to him, he recalled where he went after quarreling with his father at the Guqin house, but he didn't have any impression at the moment. He also thought about where he would go when he was in a bad mood. In order to catch up with the car that was getting farther and farther away, Jing Tan also took a shortcut. He used to drive around here often and was familiar with the terrain here. So, even if he hadn't been here in recent years, he could still remember some things. Coming out of the intersection of a small road, Jing Tan just saw the familiar car passing by. He didn't have time to rest and continued to chase. Jing Tan didn't know what kind of mentality he had. He just wanted to see it with his own eyes. Fake? Real? Dream? Not a dream.